26. Elegant Lady of the Night. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Sebastian suddenly woke up. He found himself standing in a majestic and solemn ancient castle, surrounded by eerie and deep crimson mist. Looking down, he was wearing his favorite black tailcoat instead of being naked like before he fell asleep. A dream? Sebastian almost instantly made this judgment. Very few extraordinary individuals dream, unless their spiritual senses perceive something. Most extraordinary individuals don't dream at all. At least, they don't dream actively. If they enter a dream without reason, it only means one thing. He has been summoned. Sebastian's expression became serious almost instantly. He pulled up his left sleeve and looked at his wrist. There, a familiar and hideous grimace-like face, as if both crying and smiling, seemed to be alive, emitting a black-red mist. Sebastian's face immediately turned ugly. The power of the blood curse has erupted. Damn it, has the Adam cult found me so soon? These crazy bloodsuckers, is the White Witch not even kidding? I ran from Korea to the Crescent Kingdom, and they still won't let go. Not a bit of elegance like other bloodsuckers. Sebastian was full of resentment. He clenched his fists, raised his vigilance, and prepared to face the imminent dream attack at any moment, but suddenly he paused slightly and raised his left hand. In his hand, he still held the Crimson Remnant page that he had scrutinized in the bathtub. When did cursed pages enter the spiritual world? Sebastian was puzzled. At that moment, the surrounding crimson mist suddenly began to recede, and the scene in the castle gradually became clear. Sebastian found himself standing in a mysterious, dimly empty hall. In front of him were ascending stairs, and at the end of the stairs was a black and red throne, with a figure sitting quietly hidden by the crimson mist. With years of rich experience, he quickly judged that the figure should be a woman, with a pretty good figure, perfect even. The mysterious woman's face couldn't be clearly seen, only vaguely seen wearing a gorgeous black long dress. Her hair seemed to be silver, a pair of eyes with a hint of gold like stars in the darkness, piercing through layers of mist, quietly looking at him. Almost instantly, Sebastian had a feeling that everything about him was thoroughly seen through by the other party. He understood that the other party was his summoner. Not only that, but the one who could silently bring him into the dream. Must be a powerful being. Long years of life had already made him experience countless ups and downs. Although he was extremely nervous and doubtful at this moment, Sebastian still suppressed his nervousness and smiled gracefully. Beautiful and noble lady, may I know how to address you, and why you summoned me here? Just like Sebastian, who hid his nervousness in his heart, Charlotte, who sat high on the throne, was equally nervous. As the initiator, she did not expect that the weaker one she had selected after much consideration would turn out to be a powerful, extraordinary individual after being summoned. Although she didn't know the other party's rank, just standing there gave her great pressure, even more than the female knight Kara gave. This was an extraordinary individual of at least the second-tier silver moon, and it was even possible to reach the third-tier blazing sun. After realizing this fact, Charlotte instantly felt guilty. Rank distribution was like a pyramid. Extraordinary individuals who stepped into a rank and those who didn't were fundamentally different. And among the four major ranks, each rank up would cause a dramatic change in the strength of extraordinary individuals. If a first-tier extraordinary individual had power surpassing ordinary people, capable of breaking through enemy lines in wars, capturing enemy generals, and seizing flags, then, in the eyes of a second-tier extraordinary individual, the first-tier extraordinary individual was just a slightly stronger ordinary person. Although Charlotte had never seen Captain Kara take action, she had read a story in the church's archives. Once there was a fallen second-tier mage who directly used necromancy to easily destroy a town with a population of over 100,000, slaughtering over 100 first-tier extraordinary individuals who came to besiege him without knowing the difference. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. The second-tier silver moon was already in existence that ordinary people, using all means including magical artifacts, couldn't kill. As for the third tier of Blazing Sun, the book only had one sentence. Blazing Suns are legendary figures and walking disasters. Although Charlotte was the master of the spiritual world, she could clearly feel that her castle world was hard to maintain against the opponent's power. After the opponent came out, she felt the edge of the world trembling slightly, as if it could collapse at any moment. Maintaining the current level was already barely manageable. In other words, if the other party discovered her true strength, they could break free at any time and return to reality. And Charlotte couldn't even predict whether she would be backlashed if that happened. Ridiculous. She clearly chose a star with weak aura. Why did she summon a monster? Taking a deep breath, Charlotte raised her spirits. Although the summoned presence was a bit too strong, she didn't want to waste this opportunity. However, before Charlotte could say anything, the summoned one in front of her suddenly began to soliloquize. Phew, thankfully, she's wearing clothes and not naked. She should not be one of those crazy savages who worship nature like the Adam cult, let alone the White Witch. Charlotte. What does he genuinely mean by wearing clothes? What does he mean by being not naked? Charlotte had no idea what nonsense the other person was talking about. But the summoned one seemed to be a talkative chatterbox. Why isn't she talking? Who is she exactly? She can resonate with the blood curse left by the Adam cult. She must be a bloodborn, but which count or duke of the bloodborn is she? Or, is she some prince or archduke? She shouldn't be, right? Seeing Sebastian smiling and talking to himself, Charlotte suddenly realized something and gradually figured it out. Could it be, she heard the other party's thoughts? The summoned one's soliloquy continued. He smiled, graceful in posture, but his mind was quite active. How did she summon me? What's the medium? This is a huge hidden danger. Unfortunately, I know too little about high-ranked bloodborns. The cursed page came in with me. Could the medium be the cursed page? The cursed page? Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Her gaze fell on the other party's hand, but the other party's hand was behind him and couldn't be seen clearly. But even so, when her gaze fell, Charlotte still felt a slight movement in her hand holding the Gospel of Blood. Noble and beautiful lady, my name is Sebastian. How may I address you? And why did you summon me here? The summoned one repeated with a smile, bowing gracefully. This time, he placed the word noble in front. His name is Sebastian. Charlotte remembered this name. Combining the thoughts of the other party just now, Charlotte had an idea. She leaned back slightly, making a lazy and relaxed posture, and gently waved her hand. The crimson mist gathered in Charlotte's hand, condensing into a crystal goblet filled with red wine. She leaned against the throne, one hand resting leisurely on the throne, the other hand holding the wine glass, and casually smiled. You may call me Lady of the Night. Her voice was ethereal and mysteriously charming. Then, following the memory of her original body, she elegantly took a sip of red wine and then casually tossed it aside. The wine glass instantly turned into crimson mist and dissipated. The whole movement was smooth and natural. It possessed both the nobility of aristocrat and the mystery of the bloodborne. Sebastian's eyes almost stayed blank for a moment. Then, a brilliant light burst forth from his eyes. Elegant. Chapter 27. Who is she exactly? Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Indeed, only wine and goblets can create the most refined elegance. Different from those bastards of the Adam cult who cursed me, this is a truly noble and elegant blood aristocrat. Watching the mysterious woman on the throne who called herself a Lady of the Night, Sebastian couldn't help but cheer inwardly at every move she made, feeling that each gesture perfectly resonated with his pursuit of art. In fact, if it weren't for his fear of the unfathomable power he couldn't sense and the purpose behind her summoning him, he would have really wanted to become close friends with her. Lady of the Night, that shouldn't be her real name. She probably just chose it as a random alias to keep me from knowing who she really is. To be honest, that alias is even a bit tacky, nothing like the elegance she just displayed. So, maybe her real name is well known among the bloodborns? Surely it must be an elegant name. But I wonder if she knows anything about the curse magic on me. Sebastian's mental activity was as rich as ever. Of course, outwardly, he still maintained an elegant demeanor. But on the other hand, Charlotte was starting to lose her composure a bit. What the hell does he mean by tacky alias? She felt like veins were about to pop on her forehead. Of course, despite her subtle mood, Charlotte quickly moved past this meaningless detail and focused on the more critical issue. Wait, did he just say, curse magic? She knew about curse magic. She had seen descriptions of it in the library of the church hospital. It was a type of magic that was the opposite of blessing magic. Unlike regular magic, curse magic was harder to cast, but its effects lasted longer, some even affecting the victim's entire life and possibly their descendants. This type of magic usually targeted the victim's bloodline. Thinking of this, Charlotte couldn't help but look down at Sebastian again. She suddenly had a wild guess. Returning to the Gospel of Blood, Charlotte proactively shifted her focus to Sebastian using the power of her mental realm. The next moment, familiar words appeared in her field of vision. Gospel of Blood detects ongoing ritual. Name of ritual, blood curse. Caster, Anastasia White Vandrath. Recipient, Sebastian Flameheart. Effect of ritual, the blood curse of the Vandrath, one of the 6 major bloodborne clans, created by Prince Augustine, targets the bloodline. The recipient will bear ghostly markings, suffer intermittent blood burning, and gradually have their bloodline power devoured by the curse over time, leading to continuous weakening until death. Interception probability assessment, 0%. Proceed with interception? It really is curse magic. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly understood why, despite selecting one of the weakest stars, she had summoned a powerful transcendent. Because what she sensed wasn't the true aura of the other person, but the blood curse on them. This transcendent who called himself Sebastian wasn't a member of the Bloodborne at all. The reason she could summon him was that he had suffered from a blood curse and retained the power of the Bloodborne within him. Ridiculous. So, noble lady of the night, why have you summoned me here? Sebastian asked his question for the 3rd time. He really thinks of me as an old monster of the Bloodborne. Charlotte was sure of it. Having read his thoughts, she knew that as long as she played the role of the old monster, well, he would naturally return once the blood summoning expired. But she wasn't satisfied with just that now. Knowing that he possessed a page of the gospel and was burdened with an ongoing curse, she thought this might be a good opportunity. If she played her cards right, she could not only obtain a page of the gospel but also possibly gain the loyalty of a transcendent who might even reach 3rd-tier blazing sun in the future. Thinking of this, Charlotte smiled faintly. Her voice was still ethereal, echoing waves of ripples in the castle. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Don't worry, I just felt a familiar aura on you by chance, so I came to take a look. With that, she lazily leaned on the chair, one hand supporting her chin and the other playing with the armrest of the throne, her deep gaze appraising Sebastian, as she cast a meaningful sigh. Carrying something like that on you all the time must be uncomfortable, right? Upon hearing this, Sebastian's eyes almost lit up instantly, but outwardly, he still maintained his elegance, smiling as he probed. Lady of the night, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Charlotte smiled faintly. She lazily changed her posture, pausing for a bit of amusement, and leisurely said. Even for the bloodborne, blood burning is quite unbearable pain. Let alone, having the bloodline power being constantly consumed. Upon hearing these 2 sentences, Sebastian's body visibly trembled. He suddenly raised his head, his gaze fixed firmly on Charlotte on the throne, for the first time losing his elegance. Lady of the night, can you see the problem on me? Charlotte chuckled lightly, her ethereal voice somewhat elusive. It's just the blood curse of the Vandrath, a toy left by that guy Augustine. To me, this dirty thing is as bright as a star in the darkness. There is no way I can see it. She really can see the curse on me. No, she even understands it perfectly. Who is she really? Even the Bloodborne Count in the Northern Duchy couldn't detect the curse on me. How did she find out? Wait, did she just directly address some Bloodborne noble by name? Sebastian's heart suddenly raced. Can you solve my physical problem? Seeming to have thought of something, he asked excitedly. It's just curse magic. It seems to have been cast by that little guy. So solving the problem shouldn't be difficult. It just takes some time. Charlotte replied casually. She actually called the pure white witch a little guy? Who is she really? Wait, did she just say solving the problem isn't difficult? Sebastian's eyes almost lit up instantly, looking at Charlotte with hope and anticipation. However, Charlotte changed the subject. But why should I solve it? Sebastian was immediately taken aback. Looking at the smiling lady of the night, Sebastian suddenly felt a stroke of luck. Noble lady, what do you need me to do in exchange for your help in solving the curse for me? Sebastian elegantly bowed, asking respectfully and sincerely. Charlotte smiled faintly. She didn't directly propose signing a contract with him because she knew her current strength was too weak to handle the curse magic on him, so even signing a blood contract would be futile. Convincing him to sign a contract now would not only fail to gain his genuine loyalty but might also entangle her in an unresolvable mess. So, she chose another approach. I never said I wanted anything in exchange, I just said solving the problem isn't difficult. Sebastian was taken aback, but after a moment's thought, a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes again. Lady of the night, I am willing to pledge my loyalty to you. As long as you need it, I am willing to serve you. He answered without hesitation. Charlotte smiled faintly, a hint of joy flashing in her eyes. So, do you know what this is? Chapter 28, Sebastian, King of Brainstorming. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. She's collecting cursed pages? Is she crazy? How dare she collect such things? Sebastian widened his eyes. He stared at the golden eyes tinged with red in the mist, feeling as though the gaze, although directed at him, penetrated through him, actually looking at the cursed page hidden behind him. Those were not eyes engulfed by madness. Calm, profound, yet also beautiful, as if carrying a faint smile, as if possessing a kind of irresistible charm that kept one's gaze fixed. But Sebastian found it difficult to endure being looked at by those eyes for too long. The longer their gaze met, the more he felt as though the other could read his thoughts. And when he averted his gaze, it landed on the blood-red book beside her. His pupils froze instantly. Without the mist to obscure, he saw more clearly. Beneath the thick cover, there were clearly countless cursed pages collected. So many? She actually collected so many cursed pages? And she's not even a bit insane? Wait, what did she say earlier? She said, those were her things? Sebastian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Cursed pages carried the curse of the gods. Anyone who held them for a long time would fall into madness. Even the Bloodborns were not exempt. But this was said to be for mortals. What if the other was not a mortal? Thinking back to the other's disrespectful address to the Bloodborne nobility just now, Sebastian suddenly had a bold and crazy guess. Wait, could it be, Lady of the Night also be a Bloodbone noble who descended to the mortal realm? No, it's actually a god? This crazy idea surfaced, and Sebastian couldn't hold it back. Yes, the Bloodborne Count couldn't see through the curse on him, but the mythical Bloodborne nobles could. Ordinary Bloodborne couldn't withstand the pollution of cursed pages, but the gods among Bloodborns, the archdukes and princes, could. No wonder it didn't tell him its true name. For a god above, conversing with mortals was already the greatest gift. Let alone a Bloodborne being known for their arrogance. Tell its true name? Would one tell a mere ant their name? Thinking of his experience just before being summoned, and the cursed pages that could actually follow him into the dream world, Sebastian suddenly realized more details. Wait, a god's every move is never without purpose. Did this mysterious Lady of the Night summon me because it sensed the cursed pages on me? And the cursed pages, acknowledged as unable to enter the spiritual world, could follow me into the dream world, perhaps because the summoner is a god? The more Sebastian thought about it, the more he felt it was true. At the same time, he became more and more excited. A god, this is a god. And also the Bloodborne god is known for honoring contracts. Although the mystical Bloodborne nobles are considered as evil gods by the Holy Court, even the most evil Bloodborne archduke always keeps his word. No wonder the prophecy said that the opportunity to resolve the curse on me lies with the cursed pages. So that's it. The cursed pages are really just the opportunity. The Lady of the Night attracted by the cursed pages is probably my real hope. At this moment, Sebastian felt that he had figured out everything. More active thoughts and more ideas are followed closely. I must take the initiative. There are so many cursed pages in the other's hands, and the one in my hand is probably nothing in its eyes. It must have noticed the cursed page in my hand long ago. Instead of waiting for them to ask for it, I might as well offer it directly, leaving a wonderful impression. If it is pleased, it might not only be willing to lift the curse for me but also possibly bestow some blessings. That's the blessings of a god. And if I'm lucky enough to gain its favor, I won't be afraid of the Adam cult's pursuit at all. Oh no, let's forget about that for now. The internal struggle among Bloodborns is too brutal and intense. Dealing with one Adam cult is enough for me, and I don't want to get involved in the rest. Being caught in the struggle between gods and demigods could be fatal. I just need to solve the curse on me. Thinking of this, Sebastian no longer hesitated. He decisively took out the cursed page hidden behind him, held it up with both hands and offered it gracefully and politely with a respectful smile. You are collecting this, aren't you? Great and noble lady of the night, if I can exchange your precious promise to resolve the curse, humble Sebastian is willing to be your temporary servant walking on the ground, doing my best to find the lost pages for you. Sebastian's actions were respectful and elegant, and his deep voice was full of sincere respect. At the same time, every word he said, every word he spoke, was tasteful and carefully chosen, leaving no room for criticism. Charlotte, sitting high on the throne, was already stunned. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. She had prepared various excuses, but she didn't expect this extraordinary being named Sebastian to be so good at improvising. Before she could speak, he had already imagined everything. And it seemed that if she revealed her thoughts of not wanting to get involved in the internal struggles of the Bloodborns, even if she proposed to sign a blood contract with him now, he would probably agree. What kind of person did she summon? Charlotte's mood was quite complicated. However, this also saved her some effort. The signing of the contract could be postponed, as she was not prepared at the moment. Let him help her with something first, search for the lost pages of the gospel. Thinking of this, Charlotte straightened up slightly, smiled lightly, and said, You are interesting. I accept this promise. Having said that, she waved lightly, and the page in Sebastian's hand flew up towards her. The blood-red page seemed to have a life of its own, like a cheerful fairy, flying around Charlotte in circles before eagerly entering her disguised gospel of blood. It really is the master of cursed pages. Seeing this scene, Sebastian's heart skipped a beat, and his attitude became even more respectful. With the third page in hand, Charlotte was also delighted, but before she could continue speaking, she sensed the rapid collapse of the dream world from the edge. The summoning time limit was about to expire. Let's end it here today. Remember what you said. Charlotte gently closed the gospel of blood, and lazily leaned back on the throne, smiling slightly. Even the crimson mist couldn't hide the charm in that smile. Sebastian was slightly stunned, and then quickly bowed his head respectfully. He dared not meet the other's gaze a second time, afraid that his loss of composure would displease the god. The distorted and ink-like rendering appeared once again at the edge of the dream world, and the crimson mist re-emerged. Seeing the gradually blurring throne, Sebastian suddenly remembered something and hurriedly shouted. Your royal majesty, how can this humble Sebastian see your greatness again? In the crimson mist, a distant and ethereal voice came. When I think of you again, I will naturally summon you. Before that, strive to fulfill your promise. A light and playful voice with a hint of a smile sounded at the end. Don't disappoint me, Mr. Sebastian. With the last sound, the entire dream world also shattered. In a daze, Sebastian's vision plunged into darkness. In the mist-filled bathhouse, Sebastian slowly opened his eyes. What came into view was the magnificent ceiling of the bathroom adorned with religious murals. Beside him, the beautiful elf maid was still gently serving. He breathed a sigh of relief, regained his composure, and asked in a deep voice. How long have I slept? Master, it's been about 15 minutes. The maid answered respectfully. 15 minutes. Sebastian pondered. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he quickly raised his left hand. There was nothing in his hand. The cursed page was gone. It seems that it was really a summoning by God. Sebastian's gaze slightly condensed, and then he pondered. The mysterious lady of the night was undoubtedly a noble among the Bloodborns. But Sebastian, who knew a little about several Bloodborn nobles, could not judge which myth the other was. There was no way. The Bloodborn transformation magic had always been powerful, and the other was a god above, who knows whether there was deliberate disguise and whether the true form was male or female. But he seems to be the real master of the cursed pages. I have limited knowledge of the cursed pages, only knowing that they are very ancient. Once a divine artifact, but many Bloodborns are very secretive about them. If I can find out the true origin of the cursed pages, perhaps I can know the true identity of Lady of the Night. Which one of the 5 archdukes is it? Thinking of this, Sebastian immediately got up from the bath, causing ripples of water. Prepare a carriage for me. I want to go to the abandoned city district. He commanded the maid. Chapter 29. She is true ancestor of the Bloodborns. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. An abandoned city district was in the western part of Boulder City. Since the terrifying disaster of the Flame Demon 10 years ago, this area had been designated as a forbidden zone where ordinary people were not allowed to enter by the Holy Court. 10 years had passed, and the most powerful monsters had already been cleared out by the demon hunters and the Inquisitor. The terrifying memories had gradually faded from people's minds, existing only in the reminiscences of those who had experienced it. Although the corruption of the dark miasma still lingered in some unseen corners, with the continuous development of urban commerce and craftsmanship in recent years, the citizen class had grown stronger. Wanderers and free citizens flocked into the continuously expanding city. Now, this place had become a paradise in the shadow of Board City. At the northwest border of the abandoned city district, this was Board City's largest slum and the most densely populated area. Most of the people living here were the bottom-tier workers from various makeshift workshops in the western city district, servants of minor nobles and wealthy households, aspiring mercenaries eager for wealth, farmers and tenant farmers who had lost their land due to the enclosures by the nobles in recent years, as well as bandits, thieves, beggars, and the like. This was also the favorite place of the cultists. On the dirty and chaotic muddy streets, a luxurious carriage slowly passed by. Seeing the red rose pattern on the side of the carriage, the pedestrians on the street, with numb expressions, lowered their heads and hurriedly avoided to the sides, bowing and saluting. This was the carriage of the largest underground gang in Board City, the Rose Society. In the abandoned city district, the Rose Society was like a god, with influence almost equal to that of the Holy Court. The carriage stopped in front of a dilapidated shack. The door of the carriage opened, and 2 beautiful beast-eared maids stepped down, laying down a red carpet on the muddy ground all the way to the door of the shack. Sebastian, with a tall and slender body, dressed in a black tailcoat, wearing white gloves, and holding a magnificent noble cane, gracefully stepped down from the carriage. Approaching the shack, he reached out and gently knocked on the door. After a moment, the door creaked open, and a girl who looked about 14 or 15 cautiously stuck out her head. She had beautiful brown long hair and a pair of snow-white, turbulent eyes that completely belied her age. Her shabby maid outfit was filled with patches, and her strange reddish golden pupils were full of vigilance. Seeing the girl, Sebastian smiled slightly and conjured a rose. Good afternoon, Miss Lena. Do you remember me? Bang. The door was instantly slammed shut. Sebastian. He twitched the corner of his mouth, put down the rose, and knocked on the door again. Miss Lena, I came to visit Miss Anna. Please open the door. The door remained unmoved. Sebastian sighed. He cleared his throat and said loudly. Miss Anna, I am Sebastian, the president of the Rose Society, here to visit you for important matters. Silence. It wasn't until a moment later that the door opened again with a creak. A girl named Lena glanced at Sebastian warily, her reddish golden pupils still full of caution. Lena, let him in. An old voice came from inside the shack with a distant sigh. Lena glanced back and then nodded obediently, silently opening the door. Thank you, Miss Lena. Sebastian smiled brilliantly and elegantly entered the shack. Inside the shack, the light was dim. An elderly, emaciated woman was sitting on a recliner, dozing off. Sensing Sebastian's approach, she slowly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of pale and cloudy eyes. Lord Sebastian, I believe I have told you not to disturb this old woman again. The old woman's voice was old and calm, with a hint of resignation. But as soon as she finished speaking, she froze directly. She stared blankly at the top of Sebastian's head, and her cloudy eyes hid a glimmer of light. Gradually, her eyes widened, and she couldn't help but stand up from the recliner as if she had seen something unbelievable. Trembling, she reached out her withered arm towards Sebastian, as if trying to grasp something. Her voice suddenly started to tremble. Crimson. I see crimson like blood. The golden sun sets into the eternal darkness. A scarlet blood moon rises in dazzling brilliance. Roses hold up roses. The blood moon raises the throne. This is flame. This is flame. Flame burning, flame spreading, flames, consuming everything. And then, everything is reborn. The old woman's voice was hoarse and hysterical. Her mad appearance startled Lena and Sebastian. With her shouts, the light in the entire shack fluctuated, flickering between brightness and darkness, and a violent wind blew the wooden shack, making creaking sounds. Sebastian's expression almost instantly became solemn. He knew that the other party's foresight eye had seen another prophecy. The old woman's madness lasted for a long time. It wasn't until a long time later that everything returned to calm. She sat back down on the recliner, looking quite exhausted, and she seemed to have aged even more. After a moment, she raised her head again, her pale and cloudy eyes fixed on Sebastian. Lord Sebastian, can you tell me, what did you encounter? Why did your appearance once again trigger my foresight eye? Your fate seems to have undergone earth-shattering changes. I can no longer see your future. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. What have you encountered? Looking into the old woman's pale eyes, Sebastian's heart raced. He certainly knew what he had encountered, but he hadn't expected that his visit again would elicit such a big reaction from the other party. Taking a deep breath, he smiled and said, Miss Anna, I have come to thank you. Your previous prophecy came true. I really found an opportunity to lift the curse through the cursed pages. This is my reward. Please accept it. As he spoke, he took out a small and exquisite ring from his pocket and placed it respectfully in front of the old woman. However, the old woman didn't even look at the ring. She quietly looked at Sebastian, and a glimmer of light flashed in her pale eyes. After a moment, she suddenly said, So, everything originates from the opportunity you found? Sebastian smiled without saying a word. The old woman remained silent. After a long time, she let out a long sigh. Let it be. If you don't want to say anything, then don't say it. This old woman is getting old and can't stand any more fuss. Upon careful consideration, sometimes knowing less about certain things may lead to greater happiness. With that, she gestured for the girl Lena to accept the ring. Then, she calmly said, Enough about that. What do you want to ask me this time? Sebastian smiled. He sat down beside the old woman's recliner and conjured a goblet filled with red wine, elegantly taking a sip. Then, he smiled and said, This time, it's actually related to the last prophecy. I know that your knowledge is quite profound, especially in the field of the Bloodborns. I want to ask you about the origin of the cursed pages. Hearing Sebastian's words, the old woman looked at him meaningfully. Why do you ask these questions? Probably, out of curiosity about the origin of the cursed pages? Sebastian took a sip of wine and smiled. The old woman snorted, clearly not believing it. After a moment, she said, The cursed pages were once a divine artifact of the Bloodborns, or more accurately, when all the cursed pages were put together, they were a divine artifact of the Bloodborns. It was the oldest and most mysterious artifact of the Bloodborns. No one knows what the purpose of that artifact was, including the Bloodborns. All those who knew of its existence only knew that it contained all the legacies of the Bloodborns. Of course, after it was destroyed, the legacies were cursed. When touched by mortals, they would be contaminated, and even the gods would view it as ordinary things. The cursed pages were left with nothing but corruption and curses. And when the artifact was intact, it once had an ancient and resounding name. As she spoke, the old woman stared directly at Sebastian and said in a deep voice, The Gospel of Blood. The Gospel of Blood. Sebastian pondered the name. He straightened up, his expression solemn, and asked, So, who is its owner? Why do you ask about that? The old woman didn't answer directly but suddenly asked, Just curious. Sebastian lightly sipped the wine and smiled. The old woman snorted. After a moment, she said, The Gospel of Blood was once the most sacred artifact of the Bloodborns, and it belonged to the oldest and most sacred existence within the race. For example, the creator of the race. Or to be precise, the origin and ancestor of the race. As she spoke, the old woman looked at Sebastian deeply. Lord Sebastian. Now, do you know who the owner of the cursed pages is? Sebastian had no idea what the old woman was talking about. Because at this moment, all he could hear in his mind was a roaring voice. True ancestor. It's the true ancestor. The most sacred and ancient existence, the source of all Bloodborns. Lady of the Night is not a demigod and not a Bloodborn nobility. She is the owner of the Gospel of Blood. She is the true ancestor. She is a true god. She is a true divine being. Chapter 30. Sebastian's Life Goal. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Regarding the origin of the Bloodborn, there are various opinions on the Myria continent. Some say that it dates back to when the elves, fleeing their homeland, first set foot on the Myria continent 3,000 years ago, bringing with them the bloodline curse resulting from their intermarriage with humans. Others claim that it originated from a legion of immortals created by an ancient god during the forgotten war between gods and annal of history. However, regardless of the source, any origin story mentions a mysterious and grandiose presence. Described as the oldest entity, the source of all Bloodborns, a true myth. It is depicted as the progenitor of the Bloodborn, an entity revered by all Bloodborns as the true ancestor. No one knows what the true ancestor of the Bloodborns is called. Some say he is called Cain, some say she is Lilith, some say he is a brooding, elegant male, and others say she is a beautiful female whom even gods would admire. TN. I think I need to start typing in all capital for God's pronouns. Some even say that the true ancestor never had a name. IT is simply itself, IT is the true ancestor. During the era when the true ancestor walked on the mortal realm, Bloodborns held the pinnacle of secular power, and their influence could be found behind the scenes in almost every country. Until the Bloodborne Civil War. No one knows what exactly happened during the Bloodborne Civil War 2,000 years ago. Time can drown everything, turning history into stories, stories into legends, and eventually burying legends in the passages of time. People only know that since then, the Bloodborne began to decline. The true ancestor became a thing of the past, and the Bloodborne split into 6 major clans, beginning a long and brutal internal struggle. At the same time, the Holy Court, which ruled the entire continent right now, began to rise. Today, there are only 5 out of the 6 major Bloodborne clans left. During the 1,000-year Holy War, the Holy Court buried the past, wrote a new history, and Bloodborns were completely branded with the label of evil race and forced to survive by hiding in the darkness. The old woman spoke with a calm and weathered tone, recounting the secrets buried in history. Sebastian's expression gradually became solemn. So, where is the true ancestor of the Bloodborns? Where did he go? He asked. I don't know. The old woman shook her head. Some say he was betrayed by the Bloodborns and fell, some say he disappeared, and some say he grew weary of his divine status and exiled himself. However, there has always been an ancient prophecy among the Bloodborns. The old woman paused, her expression serious, and slowly said, When the progenitor returns, He will eventually reclaim his divine throne, and all traitors will receive their fair punishment. Sebastian's heart skipped a beat, then he fell silent. After a moment, he suddenly murmured softly. So, He will return someday? That's not for me to know. I'm just an old woman about to pass away. As for this ancient prophecy, frankly speaking, many bloodborns no longer believe in it. The old woman chuckled lightly, but then, her expression turned solemn again. However, even if a fallen myth returns, it won't be easy. In the process of reclaiming the divine throne, there will undoubtedly be various difficulties. A slight misstep could lead to failure. Of course, if he really returns, then, in this era when true gods are in retreat, it will surely stir up a storm that sweeps through the entire world. Some will benefit from it, and it's even possible that some will follow in his footsteps and ascend to the divine throne. Some will face destruction, even if they are lofty gods. Listening to the old woman's words, Sebastian's eyes flashed with determination. His hands subconsciously clenched and then relaxed, then clenched again, and his mood was like a tsunami, surging and turbulent, stirring up waves of shock and awe. The return of the god. It's very likely that Lady of the Night is a returning ancient god. Sebastian's heart was crying out, roaring, trembling. At the same time, there seemed to be some kind of thought churning in his heart, growing stronger and stronger. Everyone has ambitions and pursuits. The long lifespan had already robbed Sebastian of any life goals. Apart from the troubles brought by the Atom cult, he lived a monotonous life day after day. Boring, uninteresting, and tiresome. He had no interest in getting involved in the struggles of any power. In his view, even the demigods revered by mortals were nothing more than the afterglow of true gods behind the scenes. But now, things were different. He suddenly realized that he might have come into contact with the truly towering figures behind this world. To follow a demigod might make one a legend in epic tales. But to follow a true god might offer the chance to become a myth written on the walls. There's no denying that Sebastian was tempted. Myth, that's a myth. It means true eternity and the admiration of mortals. If the desire in his heart wasn't strong enough, it could only mean that the temptation presented to him wasn't strong enough. What temptation could be more enticing than following in the footsteps of a true god, witnessing their return to their divine throne, and witnessing their radiance shining upon the world once again? The gods never mistreated their followers. The stories of those who followed myths, demigods, and even true gods were not uncommon in the legends of the Miria world. The more Sebastian thought about it, the more tempted he became. He felt as if flames were burning deep within him, his heart pounding wildly. He seemed to see a path he had never considered before, one he had never dared to hope for. His expression kept changing, his breathing becoming increasingly rapid, his face gradually flushing, his gaze becoming brighter. After a long time, he gently closed his eyes, returning to calmness. When he opened his eyes again, those crimson pupils were filled with unprecedented determination. He made up his mind. He must seize this once-in-a-millennium opportunity, hitch a ride with Lady of the Night, and see the unseen sights from a higher vantage point. At this moment, Sebastian had never been so eagerly anticipating Lady of the Night's call. Sebastian, your eyes have changed. Seeing Sebastian's expression, the old woman looked surprised. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. I can sense that your heart no longer seems as confused as it used to. You seem to have found your path. Can you tell me what you're thinking? Sebastian's gaze fell slowly on the old woman. He was about to answer when he suddenly stopped. After a moment of hesitation, he smiled faintly. It's nothing, just some small thoughts. The change in his thoughts brought about a change in his way of thinking. After deciding to follow Lady of the Night, who was likely the resurrected true ancestor of the Bloodborns, Sebastian found that many of his thoughts had changed. For example, looking at the prophetess witch with her foresight eyes before him, he suddenly felt a sense of caution deep in his heart. I can't tell her about Lady of the Night's matters. At least, not now. She's too mysterious, and her abilities are too miraculous. Lady of the Night is hiding her identity, obviously not wanting more people to know about her return. As the chosen one of Lady of the Night, I have a responsibility and obligation to keep her secret. Even if I tell Anna about Lady of the Night's secret and invite her to join, that's something for later, and I'll need the permission of the Great Being. I am the chosen one of Lady of the Night, and only I can be the first companion of the Great Being to walk on the mortal realm. Sebastian was persuading himself like he was self-convincing. Perhaps he couldn't fully distinguish whether he was genuinely considering Lady of the Night's well-being or if he had some concerns about someone else taking the position closest to the god. The return of God must come with signs. Maybe I should investigate if there have been any related events on the Miria continent recently. I can't just rely on Lady of the Night's call again. I should actively seek her out, approach her, and offer my loyalty. I need to do it quickly. No, I must do it quickly. I am not a Bloodborn. If Lady of the Night finds someone she favors among the Bloodborns, I will lose my advantage. No, I have to go back quickly and investigate the news about the cursed pages, try to find more cursed pages as much as possible. Sebastian soon made up his mind, and after making up his mind, he couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up in one go, gracefully and lightly picked up the wine glass and smiled politely. Ms. Anna, thank you for clarifying my doubts. This is your reward for this time, please accept it. With that, he took out a gorgeous ring and placed it on the table. I suddenly remembered that there are other matters to attend to. I'll leave it here for today, and I'll visit again when I have time next. After speaking, Sebastian hastily bowed to the old woman and then left gracefully. Watching his departing figure, the old woman's gaze remained unchanged for a long time. After a long while, she sighed lightly, laughing and scolding. What an impolite old fox. But soon, she coughed violently, her aged face showing an unnatural paleness. Lena hurried over, her amber eyes filled with concern. Lena, I'm fine. The old woman waved her hand gently, her gaze full of affection as she looked at the girl. Suddenly, as if remembering something, she gently took the girl's hands, whispering softly. Lena, how long have you been with me? 10 years, right? The girl didn't speak but nodded obediently, her cute appearance evoking pity. It's been 10 years, huh? The old woman sighed with emotion. Time flies so fast, 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye, and you haven't changed at all, but I have grown old. Perhaps, this is the price of foresight, giving me miraculous power but taking away more of my hope. The old woman sighed deeply, as if lost in memories. After a long time, she held the girl's hands again. Lena. This time, her expression became unusually serious. If one day I'm no longer here, go and find Sebastian. Lena trembled slightly. She raised her head, and her big eyes instantly filled with mist, pleading and reluctant. The old woman paused for a moment, then smiled. What's with that expression? I'm not going to abandon you. She sighed lightly. It's just, I don't have much time left. I can't accompany you forever, nor can I protect you for a lifetime. But he's different. I don't know what he encountered, but I see a new prophecy in him. I see a possibility. That's not only his hope but also yours. He must have encountered something, and your destiny. Perhaps only that kind of power he encountered can change it. Lena. When I'm gone, go find him. I believe that the entity he encountered will not only change him but also bring you a new life. Man, this chapter makes me contemplate on my translation. I'm not sure if it was Sebastian that was fickle or the author. They started with respectful gods pronouns but then later went back to casual pronouns. Also, the race is translated entirely to vampire now. I'm not sure if I should keep the Bloodborn, and even if I change to vampire, IDK how to smoothly change it without giving an inconsistent translation feeling. If you pay attention at the start of the story, they're called Blood Demon, Bloodborn, Bloodkin, and there's no one calling it a vampire. Hence later on MC stated that the race is similar to vampires from Earthsmith. So by that point, it should have been only MC that knows the term vampire. Sigh, that is my rant for now. Chapter 31, Spirit Path, Majesty. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Achu. In the basement of Castell Estate, Charlotte sneezed and couldn't help but shrink her neck. Although it was June, the temperature in the basement was still a bit low, making her nose feel stuffed. The blood calling had ended. Charlotte glanced at the hourglass she had prepared in advance, estimating that about 15 minutes had passed. The cooldown of the blood calling has returned to 0%. It seems I'll have to attend more church services later. My body feels a bit cold. I must have just entered that magical world with my consciousness while my body remains outside. It was the right decision to perform the blood calling in the basement. During the summoning process, my external body will lack protection. Charlotte quickly deduced this conclusion. She dusted off her dress, stood up from the ground, but suddenly felt dizzy. It felt like she had just completed 100 obscure and difficult math problems. Charlotte felt her whole brain buzzing, dizzy, and confused. As a girl who had some understanding of the supernatural power, she knew that this was a sign of mental exhaustion. However, despite feeling particularly tired, Charlotte's mood was quite joyful. She had obtained the third page of the Gospel. Although she hadn't had time to see what the content of the additional page was on the Gospel of Blood in the dream world, at the moment of the dream's collapse, Charlotte did sense some additional information on the Gospel. After resting against the wall for a while and feeling that her mental strength had recovered slightly, Charlotte left the basement. After all, she had some unpleasant memories here, and she didn't want to linger for too long after she was done. Returning to the ground floor of the estate, the bright sunlight made the girl feel like she was back from another world. Leaning against the wall back to her bedroom, she collapsed onto the bed, not wanting to move at all. She subconsciously shook the silver bell on the bedside, wanting to have a maid bring up a glass of milk, but then suddenly realized that there were no longer any maids in the house. The vast manor still had only her alone, desolate, with only the chirping of birds in the garden. The thought of having to go through 2 corridors and then around a big circle to get milk from the pantry, a walk that would take a full 10 minutes, made her instantly lose motivation and feel like a slug. It's not good to have such a big house. It's so inconvenient to even want a glass of milk. Without maids, everything is so inconvenient. Charlotte shook her head, suddenly missing her petite and exquisite house from her previous life, where she didn't need to do more than a few steps to reach the refrigerator in the kitchen. With a sigh, she lay down on the bed and closed her eyes to rest her mental strength. And this rest lasted for about 2 hours. 2 hours passed, and most of the overused mental strength had recovered. Ensuring that she could communicate with the Gospel of Blood again, Charlotte couldn't wait to submerge into her consciousness. She really wanted to know what abilities the additional page of the Gospel had provided. The familiar crimson enveloped her vision, and the heavy Gospel reappeared. After flipping through the first 2 pages, the third page appeared in the Gospel. The page was still blank. However, when Charlotte's consciousness focused on it, familiar golden words slowly appeared. Gospel of Blood, Spirit Chapter. Darkness rises like a veil. Looking around, I perceive my awakening. Demand respect from opponents, majesty is my glory. Command obedience from enemies, domination is my scepter. Extend the limits of perception, illusion is my disguise. Spirit Chapter, Majesty, unlocked. Discovered spell, low-level Majesty magic. Low-level Majesty magic. Basic magic of the Path of Majesty, the common magic of the Spirit Path, can enhance one's majesty and intimidate or charm targets when facing the user. Do you want to inherit? Charlotte was quite accustomed to this kind of description, similar to a game system. The Gospel of Blood seemed to have the ability to adapt to the habits and cognition of its owner, so in her vision, it was presented as a system image like a cheat. After all, Charlotte had read many web novels in her previous life that featured systems. She had experimented and found that if she wanted to change the way the blood scripture was displayed, she could do so completely. Such as materializing parchment, changing it to a blackboard, or even turning it into a virtual character in her consciousness. Even a 2-dimensional anime girl would suffice. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. However, Charlotte preferred to let the Gospel simulate a system. This gave her the feeling of playing a game or being a protagonist in a novel. Different from the first 2 pages of the scripture, the new page belonged to a new chapter and did not possess special abilities like the Genesis and Divinity chapters but merely recorded a spell of Bloodborne. Low-level Majesty magic, Spirit Path? Charlotte pondered. It is said that there are 5 development directions for the Bloodborne, also known as the resonance of the 5 major bloodlines. This was determined by Charlotte after studying her personal information in the Genesis chapter several times. The 5 bloodline resonances are the darkness, wilderness, flesh and blood, spirit, and insight. Charlotte currently had only resonated with darkness path, mastering the basic blood magic of the darkness path, and was perfectly proficient. That is the ability to create blood servants and blood descendants. This was the basic ability of the Bloodborne, innate, and served as a solution for the difficulty of achieving natural reproduction of the Bloodborne. Bloodborns are known as dark creatures, and besides not dying naturally, the primary reason is the possession of this basic talent of the darkness path. Now, Charlotte finally had the opportunity to learn the second Bloodborne magic. Majesty magic. From the description, it's a magic that can enhance one's aura, which is very useful for me right now. Although it doesn't directly increase combat power, if used properly, it might be effective in future dealings with servants, nobles, and the church. Charlotte pondered. She was well aware that socializing as a noble was necessary, and it had to be done well. With this in mind, Charlotte didn't hesitate and made her choice immediately. Inherit. With the decision made, Charlotte felt a vast amount of information flooding into her mind. Dots of crimson light constructed in her mental world, constantly spreading and outlining, finally condensing into an illusory magic structure. At the same time, Charlotte felt her understanding of low-level Majesty magic soaring rapidly. It was like being fed a blueprint, knowing how to chant magic, how to evoke the magic structure in her mind, how to resonate with mental power, and successfully learning Majesty magic. Everything took shape in her mind. Inheritance successful. Low-level Majesty magic mastery, basic, 0-100s. After about a dozen seconds, the knowledge infusion ended. Charlotte had a feeling, if she wanted to, she could completely cast this magic now. Of course, not proficiently. She was just given a roadmap, but how to walk better and faster, and how to truly integrate everything required a lot of effort. She couldn't wait to find a target to try it out on. Looking around, Charlotte soon saw a chattering sparrow on the branch outside the window. She had an idea. Sitting up straight, she locked eyes with the sparrow on the branch, following the magic structure in her consciousness she had just inherited, and then silently recited the convoluted and mysterious incantation. Majesty. A subtle light flashed in Charlotte's pupils, feeling a mysterious power somehow added to her body and projected onto her eyes. Come here. She waved to the sparrow, her childish voice carrying a hint of majesty, quite commanding. The sparrow trembled slightly, then spread its wings and flew up, obediently landing on the girl's palm. Watching the sparrow on her palm, which seemed a little scared but also inexplicably dependent on her, Charlotte smiled slightly. At the same time, the information about low-level Majesty magic in her consciousness changed. After the basic description, 0-100s turned into 1-100th. However, just at this moment, Charlotte's consciousness suddenly stormed. The crimson light appeared again, and the familiar text gradually spread. Conditions met. Glorious Master of the Gospel, do you want to open the Inheritance Ascension Tree? Chapter 32, Charlotte's Advancement Method. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Inheritance Ascension Tree? Charlotte's heart stirred slightly. Open. She silently recited in her mind. Familiar power bloomed in the spiritual world, and Charlotte felt her vision rising again. She seemed to be in a starry sky, with a huge constellation stretching infinitely in front of her. No, rather than a constellation, it looked more like a skill tree styled after the games she played in her previous life, most likely another manifestation according to her habits by the Gospel. Most of the skill tree was buried in mist-like nebulae, faintly divided into 6 levels from near to far, like 6 ranks. But Charlotte could only clearly see the base part, unable to reach even the first level. The base part was divided into 5 major branches, corresponding to the resonances of the darkness, wilderness, flesh and blood, spirit, and insight path. Under each direction, there were 3 secondary branches. In other words, there were probably 15 branches of talent in the bloodline talent tree. Most of the bloodline directions and secondary branches were dim and obscured like distant constellations. Only the resonant branches of the darkness path and the spirit path were partially illuminated. Charlotte could clearly see that the darkness path had branched into 3 secondary branches, blood spirit, shadow, and necromancy. While the spirit path had branched into 3 secondary branches, majesty, domination, and illusion. In Charlotte's talent tree, both the blood spirit and majesty branches were already illuminated, recording the low-level blood embrace and low-level majesty magic she had learned. Charlotte looked up from the base and could see the just illuminated majesty branch extending upwards, forming a light path leading to the first level. Charlotte looked at that light path, and the information, entry, 1/100th, suddenly appeared in her field of vision. She instantly understood that this light path represented the mastery level, and once she completely mastered the low-level majesty magic, the light path would completely open the way to the first level. However, the blood spirit branch on the other side had no light path, even though the low-level blood embrace had been completely mastered by Charlotte. This secondary branch under the darkness path seemed to exist independently, although it was located within the constellation. It seemed to float outside the skill tree, not participating in the leveling up of skills. After a moment of contemplation, combined with the inherent abilities of the Bloodborn, Charlotte understood. The blood spirit branch is the innate talent branch of the Bloodborn, naturally mastered without the need for learning, so it exists independently outside of the inheritance tree. After I advance to the next rank, I will automatically master the next stage of blood spirit magic. But other branches require deep comprehension through learning, which is likely the advancement path of the Bloodborn. Learning magic, strengthening bloodline resonance, comprehending the path of the Bloodborn. Darkness, wilderness, flesh and blood, spirit, insight. These are the 5 paths of advancement for the Bloodborn. From the skill tree, any breakthrough in bloodline resonance can help me open the way to the next rank. In other words, for now, as long as I completely master a magic in the secondary branch, I can start to comprehend the corresponding bloodline resonance to open the passage to the next rank. For example, now, as long as I thoroughly master the low-level majesty magic, start by comprehending the spirit path, the light path will extend to the first level, and I should advance to the first tier starry sky. The Gospel is probably also the inheritance book of the Bloodborn. Looking at the inheritance ascension tree, Charlotte quickly figured out the method to advance to the first tier. So, for now, if I want to advance to the first tier as soon as possible, the fastest way is to practice the low-level majesty magic more and strengthen my understanding and comprehension of the spirit path. Of course, I can also choose other bloodline resonances, but that means I need to find other curse pages. The low-level majesty magic, I'm quite lucky. Literally speaking, this is probably the most suitable method for my advancement at the moment. I am a noble, I need socialization, I need to manage the family, and it's most suitable to practice majesty magic while socializing and managing the family. Especially in the next few days, there are likely to be various nobles visiting. All of this will help with my skill practice, helping me comprehend the bloodline resonance of the majesty branch of the spirit path. Intimidation, charm. Am I going further down into the path of drama and acting? Charlotte's expression was a bit strange, but at the same time, she felt a bit excited for some reason. Compared to fighting, she preferred to manipulate things behind the scenes. Playing tricks, setting traps, stabbing cold knives at critical moments. Thinking about how those who had always treated her as an innocent and cute lady finally realized who the real troublemaker was in the pit before their demise, imagining the surprise, frustration, and anger. She was a bit excited. There's no way. Who made her possess such a deceptive appearance? If she didn't use her advantages well, she felt she was not doing justice to her cute to the point of breaking the rules face. Before, Charlotte was worried that her face lacked intimidation, and sometimes it might have the opposite effect. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. But now, it was different. Majesty magic was here too. Ready, set, go. Charlotte quickly planned her agenda for the near future. Set a small goal first, practice the low-level majesty magic to perfection. And just then, the unique perception of the Bloodborn suddenly sensed movement outside the bedroom window. Charlotte's heart moved, and she exited the skill tree. She cast her gaze towards the windowsill, only to see the black cat Nice trying to move the window, attempting to open it to a size that even its size could climb through. Their eyes met in an instant. Charlotte. Nice. With a slight change in her girlish thoughts, Charlotte's gaze turned cold. Didn't I say that you should be using the front door from now on? The lingering effect of the low-level majesty magic added a powerful pressure to her icy gaze. Nice almost shivered instinctively, its fur bristling, and its tail unconsciously tucked between its legs. It gave an awkward smile, quickly retracted its claws, and was about to say something, but it forgot it was still in midair, directly missed a step, and fell from the second floor window with a bam. Meow. It screamed pitifully. Charlotte. That, cough, would you like some milk? That, cough, would you like to taste some fruit? In the splendid bedroom, the black cat Nice wore a flattering expression, carefully placing a delicately arranged fruit platter in front of Charlotte. Charlotte sat on the high-backed chair, holding the goblet that had just been served to her, and looked at the fawning black cat with a strange expression, murmuring in her heart. Really? Is the effect of the low-level majesty magic this strong? Nice's flattery continued. That, cough, are you tired? Do you need, cough, Nice to massage you? Standing on the stool brought over, its chubby cat face was full of smiles, its amber eyes filled with flattery that made Charlotte feel a bit chilly. Just imagining how a cat with a deep voice would massage someone, Charlotte felt even colder and got goosebumps. If you want to knead a mound, go find a mattress and knead slowly. I don't provide motherly services here. T.N. Degree. Nice. Its chubby cat face stiffened slightly, then it awkwardly put down its paw, but quickly put on a fawning smile again. That, esteemed and great. Miss Charlotte, do you need me to do anything for you? Huh? What did you call me? Charlotte raised her tone, lightly kicked Nice's stool, and looked straight at it. Nice's gaze dodged, and it reluctantly smiled. Master. Charlotte. Looking at the cat with an obviously unwilling expression, but forcibly pleasing herself, Charlotte couldn't help but feel a bit amused. This must not be the effect of the low-level majesty magic. Something's fishy here. What trouble did you cause? She picked up the goblet, took a sip of milk, and asked calmly. Nice felt a chill in its spine, couldn't help but shiver, and its fur stood on end. It's confirmed. The crossbow of the abductor is indeed from the Duke's mansion. Also, the homeless man who reported last night's news, he's dead. Chapter 33, Sudden Assassination. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Meow, do you know how that vagrant died? He drank himself to death. Can you believe it? A poor, destitute vagrant, dying from overdrinking in a tavern. Damn it, how is that any different from telling Master Cat he was silenced by someone? But, do you know what's even more outrageous? Meow, Master Cat went to the underground black market with a hand crossbow, only to discover private soldiers from the Duke's mansion clandestinely selling crossbows in the black market. The special mark on the crossbow hadn't been erased yet. Master Cat compared it quietly and found it was exactly the same as the one the kidnapper had. The black cat, Niece, was indignant. However, Charlotte's expression remained relatively calm as she listened. Aren't you surprised, Miss Charlotte? No, great master? Seeing Charlotte's pensive look, Nice's heart stirred. What should I be surprised about? Surprised about the vagrant's death, or that the crossbows came from the Duke's mansion? Charlotte replied lightly, taking a sip of milk. She was beginning to believe that her transformation into a Bloodborne had somewhat influenced her emotions. Upon hearing that someone had been silenced, her mood surprisingly remained calm, even though she had already had a vague expectation. Meow, I know you seem to anticipate something before asking me to investigate, but don't you find it eerie? Do you believe there are such coincidences in the world? Master Cat barely started looking for clues when the man died. Master Cat had just started investigating, and before he could even begin, clues about the Duke's mansion selling crossbows fell into his lap. And it just so happened that the special mark of the Duke's mansion hadn't been erased yet. Meow, do they think Master Cat is a fool? Nice grew angrier as he spoke, his cat-faced cheeks trembling slightly. So, what's your judgment? Charlotte finished the milk in her goblet and lightly tapped the cup. Nice immediately understood and quickly refilled it for her, then exclaimed. Conspiracy. This is a conspiracy. Someone is fabricating the illusion that the Duke's mansion kidnapped you. They're trying to frame and incite discord between you and the Duke's mansion. After saying this, Nice widened his amber eyes, looking toward Charlotte expectantly, like a cat seeking praise, only to find Charlotte still calm. His heart skipped a beat. Don't tell me you already guessed. Charlotte glanced at him without giving a direct answer. From the moment I was kidnapped to the abandoned mansion until the demon hunters arrived, how much time had passed in total? Probably, half an hour? How far is it from the abandoned mansion to the nearest demon hunter outpost? Judging by our return time, approximately 15 minutes if we hurry. After saying this, Nice stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened, and he suddenly realized. Charlotte just took another sip of milk, continuing. 15 minutes for a round trip is taking half an hour. However, this is the speed of hurrying back. You see, how could a messenger have possibly used such a short time to go to the demon hunter outpost to deliver the message? No hesitation, no delay, no time difference, and yet he ran so fast. And conveniently, Captain Kara and his team arrived at that demon hunter outpost at the same time. After hearing Charlotte's words, Nice's face turned ugly. Conspiracy, this is a conspiracy, it's a well-planned performance. No wonder the kidnapper was such an unreliable freelance mercenary. Probably, the mastermind behind the scenes never intended to successfully kidnap you. It's not certain. Charlotte shook her head. She touched the crossbow in her hand and said softly. Everyone thinks I'm just a powerless child, and no one knows that you've been secretly following behind the carriage. Perhaps, the kidnappers were prepared for both success and failure. If the kidnapping succeeded, that would be good. If it failed, it wouldn't matter. Perhaps they were just trying to create a time gap, but when they found out it couldn't succeed, they withdrew and didn't continue the contact. Low-level freelance mercenaries may be unreliable, but they wouldn't dirty their hands. These guys don't have the slickness of experienced mercenaries. They leave traces everywhere to avoid being used as pawns. Nice looked at the girl unexpectedly. You seem to know a lot about freelance mercenaries. It's fortunate. After meeting the Duke's son, I studied relevant books in the church hospital. Charlotte said indifferently. However, if that's the case, then it's interesting. Meow. The kidnapper's reaction was so swift. It seems there should be a mole in the rescue team. Nice narrowed his eyes slightly. Charlotte didn't confirm or deny, just lightly chuckled. Perhaps. The cat and the girl glanced at each other, not saying anything more, but a figure emerged in both their minds. Go investigate him. Charlotte said coldly. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. This might be a bit troublesome. After all, he's a nobleman. Nice scratched his head. Any problem? Charlotte glanced at it casually, a hint of her low-rank majesty magic flashing in her eyes. Meow, no. The black cat, intending to use the opportunity to sell some sympathy points in suffering, immediately shut up. However, soon, it became serious again. Miss Charlotte. Charlotte glanced at it askew, with a hint of authority. No, master. Nice quickly corrected himself. Speak. The girl nodded satisfactorily and took another sip of milk. Nice took a deep breath and looked at the seemingly innocent but extremely evil old monster in front of him seriously. Forgive me for being straightforward, but do you really plan to attend the Duke's mansion banquet a week from now? I know, great. Respected you, sooner or later, will regain what rightfully belongs to you and regain your former glory. But, you haven't fully recovered your strength yet. Regardless of the truth, this kidnapping is inevitably linked to the Duke's mansion. I think, it's better to be cautious. When did this guy become so concerned about my evil god recovering their strength again? Charlotte glanced at the black cat in surprise, feeling like he had misunderstood something again recently. No harm. Instead of waiting for them to act, it's better to take the initiative. After all, it's easier to dodge a bullet than to defend against a hidden arrow. Charlotte said. Easier to dodge a bullet, harder to defend against a hidden arrow. Nice chewed on these two sentences, feeling that the other party was indeed quite skilled, planning to remember them and show off elsewhere in the future. As the two were chatting, suddenly, the silver bell connecting the mansion's gate rang. Charlotte stood up and looked out the window, seeing 7 or 8 carriages at the gate, each bearing the emblem of the Castell family. Seeing the carriages filled with servants, she smiled faintly. Kasimodo is back. Let's go, tidy up and take a look. It seems he's brought quite a few new people. Master. In the mansion's hall, seeing Charlotte coming down from upstairs, Kasimodo, who was giving instructions to the new servants, brightened up. He bowed tremblingly to the girl, respectfully saying, Master, Kasimodo hasn't let you down. I've successfully recruited 20 new people. At the same time, the new servants behind Kasimodo, all wearing the Castell family uniform, also saluted Charlotte unevenly. Master. Kasimodo's face instantly turned embarrassed, and he lowered his head shamefully. Sorry, Master, they may be a little different from what you imagined. It's fine, it's good enough. Charlotte was quite satisfied. Although a bit disorderly, they were new recruits after all, so there was no need to demand too much. Are their backgrounds clear? Having already had her fill, the girl waved away the new milk offered by the lackey like Black Cat and asked. Clear, they're all clear. I've carefully checked them one by one and even searched their bodies. They're all very safe. Kasimodo said respectfully. After speaking, he hesitated for a moment and added. However, they were all temporary servants for small merchants and minor nobles in the past, completely inexperienced in working for large families. It may take some time for them to be competent in their jobs. No matter, take your time. Charlotte smiled. She stepped forward, passing by the new recruits, and carefully scrutinized each one. Some looked down in fear, some wore pleasing expressions, some showed curiosity, and some bowed respectfully. Charlotte's step suddenly stopped. She looked again at the newcomer who had just respectfully saluted her, seemingly lost in thought. It seemed that the newcomer noticed the new master's gaze. He quickly lowered his head and slightly bent his body, presenting an even more standard and respectful posture. Charlotte's smile suddenly disappeared. Look up. She commanded coldly. The servant hesitated for a moment, slowly raised his head, his face somewhat pale, appearing nervous. Charlotte looked at him quietly, a glimmer of light flashing in her eyes. The majesty surged instantly. With a soft laugh, the seemingly soft and feeble voice seemed to carry pressure deep into the soul. Your manners are good. Tell me, where did you learn them? Kasimodo and the new servants behind him all changed their colors. Under the gaze of the new master, sweat beads began to appear on the servant's forehead. He began to tremble all over, then suddenly gritted his teeth and pulled out a dagger gleaming with cold light from his chest, roaring towards Charlotte's chest. Demon of Castell, die. Chapter 34, Kneel Down. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Demon of Castell, die. A grim-faced servant brandished a dagger gleaming with cold light and thrust it towards Charlotte's chest. This scene happened so unexpectedly that everyone was stunned. Master, be careful. Kasimodo reacted the fastest. His face changed drastically as he threw himself forward, regardless of his own safety. However, he was too far from Charlotte. The servant's eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging on his forehead, and his pupils filled with hatred. He lunged forward and instantly reached Charlotte's face. He could see the almost imperceptible pores beneath the girl's delicate skin, the fine hairs on her fair and rosy cheeks. He could smell the faint scent emanating from her, like lavender, and feel the warm breath from her every inhalation. He could almost see his dagger piercing Charlotte's chest. He seemed to see blood splattering, and Charlotte falling in terror and despair. He laughed. A reckless laugh. In that grimace, there was the pleasure of revenge and the frenzied madness. But the next moment, his smile froze. The dagger in his hand was less than 3 centimeters away from Charlotte's chest. However, these 3 centimeters became an insurmountable gap. A slender arm gently lifted and stopped the dagger in his hand. The arm was so slender, so delicate, it seemed so fragile that it could be broken at any moment. But with such a slender arm, such a smooth and delicate palm, it firmly held the dagger in place. It was Charlotte's hand. She only extended 2 fingers. The servant's eyes widened instantly. Although it was only 2 fingers holding the weapon, he felt as if he had plunged into an unbreakable rock, unable to move it at all. Unable to penetrate, unable to withdraw. Moving his gaze away from the girl's gently undulating chest, his eyes slowly rose, and what he saw was a calm and beautiful face, and a pair of deep, insurmountable azure eyes. No panic, no fear, no astonishment, only calmness and maturity that did not match her youthful appearance. My dear Kasimodo, your search seems rather inadequate, doesn't it? Charlotte chuckled lightly, her smile as brilliant and charming as a blooming flower, seemingly ignoring the assassin in front of her. With a flick of her hand, the servant felt an irresistible force emanating from her palm. The dagger he tightly grasped through his hand, like a released arrow, flying out and embedding itself in the wooden door of the distant hall, swaying a few times before sticking firmly. The servant was knocked to the ground by the residual force, stumbling, with only one terrified voice echoing in his mind. Extraordinary, she's a noble with awakened bloodline power. His expression changed rapidly, from astonishment to fear, anger, until it turned into madness regardless of everything. He raised his head, his fierce gaze locked onto the standing girl, and after a hoarse roar, he attempted to charge at her again. Seeing the approaching servant, Charlotte's beautiful blue eyes shimmered with light, and she instantly released an intimidating posture using her majesty magic. Her gaze became cold and indifferent in an instant. A clear, ethereal, yet extremely majestic reprimand came out of her mouth. Kneel down. Boom. The servant that attempting another attack felt as if a thunderous roar shook his soul. The figure of the girl in front of him seemed to soar infinitely in an instant, as if she transformed into a towering king and an immortal god. The majestic reprimand echoed in his mind, like carrying an irresistible force, instantly shattering his recently gathered courage in his fragile heart. Unprecedented fear and awe instantly filled his brain, and the servant's face turned extremely pale in an instant, as if experiencing a tremendous mental shock. He stumbled, his legs almost uncontrollably losing strength. With a thud, he knelt down, and then directly lost his strength. He even lost the courage to stand up again. Thud. Thud. Not far away, Kasimodo and the other newcomers, who were still ordinary people and hadn't awakened yet, trembled, almost subconsciously kneeling down in a large group. Even Nice, the black cat on the stairs, under the majestic reprimand that seemed to have surpassed common suppression magic, felt a tremor in his heart and involuntarily prostrated himself. Wait, why is this cat's body also kneeling? It quickly realized and climbed up, but seeing a large group of servants kneeling in the hall and the only standing girl, it inexplicably felt a pressure that couldn't be described in words and obediently kneeled back down with its tail tucked. Charlotte's gaze swept slowly across the room, slightly frowning. Why are you all kneeling? Get up. After a moment of hesitation, dozens of newcomers looked at Kasimodo together. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Kasimodo stared straight at the girl, who, although still youthful in appearance, exuded the dignity and aura of a true noble family head, with an incredibly intense gaze. His expression changed from joy to sadness, from relief to guilt. But soon, the old servant regained his composure and tremblingly stood up. The remaining servants followed suit, all standing up and subconsciously moving away from the assassin. Why are you still standing there? Take down the assassin. If our great master gets injured, can you bear the responsibility? A hoarse and aggressive voice came over, and Nice, the black cat, bounced up and down, pointing excitedly at the assassin who was still trembling under the majesty magic. There was quite an atmosphere of bullying in his tone. A talking cat? Some newcomers who had never encountered extraordinary beings were obviously frightened. Of course, no one listened to a cat's command, but they subconsciously looked at Charlotte and Kasimodo. This made Nice, who was excited, gradually feel a strange embarrassment and almost began to look for a corner to hide. Charlotte glanced at it, suppressing the smile that was about to emerge, and then commanded Kasimodo. Lock him up in the dungeon. Kasimodo respectfully bowed his head and rallied the remaining newcomers to arrest the assassin, who had completely lost his resistance. Almost every noble estate had dungeons, and the Castell Manor was no exception. It was the darkest and most terrifying place in the family. After a busy period, it was already night. A weary Kasimodo entered the study and knelt in front of Charlotte, who was sitting at the desk. Master, Kasimodo is incompetent. I didn't even notice the assassin hidden among the servants. I'll dismiss them all and reselect. Charlotte put down the parchment recording the Castell family's assets in Boulder City, rubbed her slightly swollen temples, and then tapped the table in front of her. The black cat sitting on the table immediately understood and skillfully filled the empty cup with milk. Get up, you're not young anymore, and your knees aren't that good. Stop kneeling all the time. She gently sipped the milk, her beautiful face adorned with an innocent smile, completely different from the queen-like aura she exuded in the hall that afternoon. Listening to the girl's concerned words, the old servant's face was filled with infinite gratitude, with tears flashing in the corners of his eyes. As you command, master. He respectfully bowed, his voice choked, and his entire body trembled. No need to dismiss them all. Let Nice recheck later. Charlotte added after taking a sip of milk. She couldn't help but admit that the milk in this world was really delicious, rich and fragrant, and tasted wonderful. Charlotte didn't know if it was because this body itself liked milk, or if she herself had developed a taste for it after transmigrated, but now she couldn't go a day without it. Hearing the girl's words, Nice's ears stood up instantly. It cleared its throat, lifted its head proudly, and with a confident look. Kasimodo glanced at the black cat and bowed respectfully. Understood, as you command. Have you found out his background? Charlotte asked again. Kasimodo hesitated for a moment before answering. Charlotte found it strange. She looked at the old servant and quickly caught the fleeting hesitation on his face. Speak up, there's nothing you can't say. Charlotte said. Kasimodo sighed and replied. Master, he volunteered. Volunteered? Charlotte was puzzled. She frowned. What's going on? Seeing the girl's puzzled expression, Kasimodo sighed. Master, do you still remember the Flame Demon disaster 10 years ago? Chapter 35, Flame Demon Disaster in the Rumors. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Flame Demon, disaster? Charlotte's heart stirred. She seriously tried to recall, but couldn't make sense of it. The memories Charlotte inherited weren't very complete, especially her childhood memories. The memories from 10 years ago seemed like a dividing line. It was inevitable. Humans aren't machines. Memories naturally fade with time. Only the most profound impressions remain from experiences that happened long ago. It was the same in her previous life. As she grew older, her childhood memories faded even more. By the time Charlotte was ready to start a family and career, the only remaining childhood memories were that of the old willow tree in her grandmother's yard and the warm quilt carrying the scent of sunshine that her mother sunned out. This life was much the same. In Charlotte's inherited memories, impressions of her childhood were limited to fragmented experiences of visiting the Duke's mansion with her mother and father to see her Aunt Catherine. Apart from that, there were memories of running and laughing with childhood friends in the woods. Huh? Childhood friends? In a moment, fragments of new memories flashed through Charlotte's mind. It seemed like buried memories from the original owner, gradually surfacing as she delved deeper into her recollections. She seemed to see a familiar forest, beautiful gardens, and a splendid mansion. She saw young Charlotte happily running under the sun with two beautiful girls, playing hide and seek joyfully. But the next moment, the beautiful mansion turned into a sea of flames. She heard people shouting, crying in pain, screaming in agony. She seemed to see the entire sky turn crimson, saw her father and mother pat her little head, gently instructing her to hide and not run around, then drawing their wands, holding hands, and resolutely facing the distant towering figure shrouded in red. Huh? Was she crying? In a daze, Charlotte suddenly realized her vision was blurred. Those weren't her tears, they were Charlotte's. It was an instinctive reaction of this delicate body when painful memories resurfaced unwillingly. It seems you've remembered. Thinking about it, after experiencing such pain, even if you try to forget, how could you really forget? Seeing the tear-streaked girl, Kasimodo sighed softly. Charlotte. No, I haven't remembered. This is just the natural reaction of this body. She wanted to say. Fortunately, it seemed that memories had also been stirred up. Kasimodo soon began to speak to himself. 10 years ago, Count Broyce of the Board Duchy invited nobles to attend the coming-of-age ceremony of his twin daughters. Your parents, as a friend and colleague, were also invited. The family head, Madame, and you, as a friend of Count Broyce's daughter, all attended. However, what no one expected was that the coming-of-age ceremony was just a cover. The real purpose of Count Broyce was to communicate with the bloodborne Archduke and, using his daughter's body as a vessel, summon the most terrifying dark creature under the Archduke's command, the flame demon, Valoroka. He wanted to break through to the legendary realm and he wanted to gain the power of demons. He succeeded. The incarnation of the legendary demon descended, bringing endless calamity. Almost all the nobles who attended the coming-of-age ceremony perished, including your. Kasimodo's voice choked up, and he looked at the girl sorrowfully, not continuing. Charlotte knew he wanted to mention the original body owner's parents, perhaps inheriting the memories of the original owner. Inexplicably, a trace of sadness arose in her heart. Charlotte quickly suppressed this trace of sadness. The past is the past. If the original owner had any regrets, as the successor, she was willing to smooth them out for her. But what needs to be addressed now is the present and the future. Count Broyce. This name sounds somewhat familiar. Where have I heard it before? Charlotte frowned slightly. She soon remembered. This was the name of the owner of the abandoned mansion she was abducted to last night. But besides that, she felt like she had seen this surname somewhere after she transmigrated. But for a moment, she couldn't remember. But what does this have to do with the assassin from yesterday? The girl suppressed her doubts and continued to ask. This involves the secrets of the past. Although the news has been blocked by the Duke's mansion to minimize the adverse effects, many people still know about it, including me. Kasimodo sighed lightly, then continued. Count Broyce's summoning of the flame demon was conducted through a ritual called pure sacrifice. It's an evil sacrifice that requires the blood of an underage virgin. For this, he secretly abducted or kidnapped underage girls in the duchy over the past few years. It is said that there were more than 1,000, including some daughters of nobles. Some girls were even 4 or 5 years old. Beast. Charlotte said coldly. Kasimodo sighed. Who would argue with that? And it also includes the daughter of last night's assassin. He wasn't an ordinary assassin. He used to be a fallen noble without awakened powers. His 3 daughters were also kidnapped and eventually died in the evil sacrifice. His entire family was annihilated by Count Broyce more than a dozen years ago while tracing his daughter's whereabouts. Only he happened to be out at the time and survived. Charlotte was confused. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. But what does this have to do with him seeking revenge on me? Even if it's revenge, shouldn't he go to Count Broyce? Kasimodo shook his head. The Broyce family was wiped out on the night of the flame demon disaster. They brought it upon themselves. The entire family, hundreds of people, all died at the hands of the summoned flame demon incarnation, including the Count himself and his daughter. As for why the assassin came to kill you. Kasimodo paused, then smiled bitterly. Because you were the only survivor of that disaster and the only surviving girl among all those considered sacrifices. After that disaster, there was always a rumor in Board City that Count Castel, the vice commander of the Board Mage Corps, and his wife were actually in cahoots with Count Broyce. They held an evil sacrifice together, and the reason you survived was also because of this. Absurd. They were heroes who fought against the demon incarnations. Recalling certain broken images in her mind, Charlotte furrowed her brow. Yes, but so what? Kasimodo sighed. Rumors are easily spread and easily believed. When everyone spreads the same rumor, falsehood becomes truth in people's minds. Human nature is inherently evil. The Castel family is extremely wealthy and influential. For the public, what's more exciting than seeing a noble family's downfall, accusing a noble family of evil? In fact, if it weren't for Lady Catherine repeatedly dispelling rumors, and the Duke's strong support for the Castel family, the rumor from that year might have persisted until now. Kasimodo was indignant. Listening to his words, Charlotte's heart moved. So, the recent events at the mansion have revived this suppressed rumor? Exactly, and it's getting worse. Kasimodo sighed. Although the nobles know the truth is not like that, the public doesn't know it, and the assassin from last night doesn't know it either. He still believes that the Castel family and the Broyce family are in cahoots, and the resurgence of the rumor has completely ignited his anger. A grieving father who lost his daughter and family, driven mad with grief. Charlotte concluded in this way. After saying this, she rubbed her temples and sighed. So, someone is secretly spreading this rumor again? Kasimodo bowed. I believe so. He gritted his teeth and said. This is a conspiracy against you. Inheriting a title requires the blessing of the church. If rumors continue to spread, coupled with the actions of the old lady did, the Castel family is likely to be labeled as colluding with the blood demon cult in court. And once that happens, your inheritance rights to the territory and title will be greatly weakened, or even directly revoked. Charlotte fell silent. She hummed lightly after drinking the last sip of milk in her tall glass. So, the nobles of the duchy are also happy to see this rumor spread and have been secretly fanning the flames behind their backs, right? Kasimodo sighed. That's right. Once your inheritance rights are weakened, the Castel family will have to form alliances with other nobles to keep their titles and territories, thus strengthening their inheritance rights and seeking allies. And for those nobles who have ambitions for our family, this is the greatest opportunity. Charlotte laughed coldly after hearing this. Hey, I'm familiar with this. Marry me off and then make me stumble in the future, huh? Do they think I'm Mary of Burgundy? Kasimodo didn't quite understand. Mary of Burgundy? It doesn't matter, just a miserable female duke who owned a large piece of rich land and ended up losing it to someone else. Charlotte shook her head. Kasimodo scratched his head and thought for a long time, but couldn't remember any duchess surnamed Burgundy. But he understood the general meaning the master wanted to convey. In other words, it's another way of saying, eating a barren house. Well, if I, the sole heir, were to die now, who would inherit the title and territory of the Castel family? Charlotte motioned for Nice to refill her glass of milk and suddenly asked. Kasimodo hesitated for a moment, didn't answer directly, but swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and said. The Castel family is a branch of the Board family. Chapter 36, Game of Thrones. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. In the feudal era, there were generally 2 situations regarding the inheritance of territories after the extinction of a noble family line. One situation was that the territory was directly reclaimed by the lord, becoming a directly governed territory of the lord or being granted to other nobles. This situation was not particularly common, usually occurring when the lord was strong or when the extinct family had not formed alliances or side branches. The other situation, which was the most common, involved a fierce struggle, after which the territory was inherited by a marriage-related family or a side branch with a certain inheritance right of the extinct family. The Miria world was no exception. Moreover, because the Miria world possessed extraordinary powers, and marriages between extraordinary individuals could increase the probability of awakening extraordinary powers in their offspring, marriages among nobles in this world were even more frequent. Taking the Castell family as an example, if one were to trace it, nearly the entire Board Duchy, and even some other noble families outside the Board Duchy in the Crescent Kingdom, had married into the Castell family, whether near or distant relatives. In other words, if something were to happen to Charlotte, there would be plenty of families both within and outside the Board Duchy claiming weak rights to the inheritance of the Castell Count's territory. Of course, there is an order in having claim rights. Among all the inheritors, the Board family, which was both the lord and the main family and had also married into the past generations, was undoubtedly the first. Others were at most weak claims, but the Board family obtained a strong claim. In other words, once something happened to Charlotte, it was almost certain that Count Castell's territory would return back to the Duke. Having quickly caught up on the noble knowledge of this world, Charlotte soon understood all these ins and outs. How did that assassin bring in the weapon? She thought for a moment and asked again. This time, Quasimodo looked at the black cat, Niece, and Niece grinned, saying, "It was temporary space magic, and quite advanced at that. Your servants aren't extraordinary, so naturally, they couldn't see it." Temporary space magic? Was there an extraordinary person behind him? Charlotte's heart fluttered. Yeah, meow, but he wouldn't say, or maybe he couldn't remember. He seemed to have been subjected to a mental type forgetting curse, only remembering that he had a hidden weapon. Nice said, licking his paws. In his words, even if he was being used, as long as he could avenge his family, he would willingly do it. Nice paused for a moment, then continued. But if we trace it, we can still trace it back to the Duke's mansion, right? Charlotte took a sip of milk, squinting slightly. Nice grinned twice, tacitly acknowledging, clearly having discovered evidence. A fool who overestimates himself, used as a pawn by others. Charlotte's gaze turned cold as she added a new label to the assassin. Clearly, this was another attempt to frame her. Indeed, from the perspective of inheritance, if someone wished for Charlotte's demise, it was undoubtedly the Duke of Board on the surface. Such framing would be more easily believed by the public, but Charlotte didn't believe that the Duke of Board would be so foolish. Nobles had their own rules, and adhering to those rules was the most valued thing among all Miria nobles. In the game of power, many dirty deeds could be hidden in the shadows but not displayed openly. If the Duke of Bold had really attempted to assassinate her and the matter came to light, he would bear the charge of murder. And this wasn't just any ordinary murder charge. As beneficiaries under the extraordinary ruling system, Miria nobles had privileges. Emperor Charles I, the founding emperor of the Unit Empire that governed the Holy Court and established the current political structure of Miria, had once signed a sacred code, which clearly defined the various rights and obligations of the nobles. Murdering a noble, even a lower-ranking one, was not allowed in the political circle of Miria. Even the Holy Court regarded it as a crime, having the authority to administer punishment to the murderer and banish them from the church. The divine right of kings, the royal authority derived from divine power, was also needed for the nobles to control their land. It would be quite a spectacle by then. Once punished, the Duke of Board's control over the territory would even be weakened, not just their claim right. By then, it was certain that the inheritance right of the Castell Count's territory would not be obtained, and vassal nobles might even cause trouble. No one was a fool, and everyone was watching the Duke's mansion. It wasn't easy being a leader under the current feudal system. Each vassal noble was shrewd, playing tricks and deceits, obeying but disobeying in secret. Even the Castell family, praised by the Duke of Board as the backbone of the duchy, was accustomed to falsifying accounts to lower the declared income of the territory, thereby reducing the paid contract taxes. Not to mention other families. Most of the vassal nobles under the Duke of Board actually wished for the immediate weakening of the Duke's authority, so they could raise prices and reduce the contract tax rates in their vassal agreements. By then, even other lords and even the royal family of the Crescent Kingdom might be eager to fish out in muddy water. The king would certainly not miss such a good opportunity and would definitely use it as an excuse to weaken the Board family, even reclaiming some of the Duke's directly governed territories. Centralization of power had always been the dream of every feudal monarch. So, as long as the Duke of Board wasn't stupid, he wouldn't attempt to assassinate Charlotte. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. At least not with his own hands. If he did, it would have to be done sneakily, without leaving any evidence. Not to mention, that would be the lowest of the low methods. Thinking from another perspective, if Charlotte were the Duke of Board herself, wouldn't it be great to have a riding accident after the marriage? Even if not, the offspring would bear the name Board. The Duke's family was not without any other PLA, damn it. Suddenly, Charlotte had a thought, her expression turning somewhat ugly. At this moment, she suddenly remembered the rumors circulating like wildfire among the chattering believers when she was in the church hospital. Quasimodo, the Duke invited me to attend a banquet in a week and specifically reminded me that it was related to the future of the Castell family. What does that mean? She took a deep breath and asked. Related to the family's future? Quasimodo hesitated for a moment, looking puzzled. Seeing his clueless expression, Charlotte knew that her old servant was loyal but probably had almost zero political acumen. Do you think the Duke's residence intends to marry me? Charlotte voiced her speculation. Quasimodo frowned. Marriage? But the Duke doesn't lack male heirs. Wait, what about the illegitimate child? His eyes widened suddenly. Then, Charlotte saw her old servant, like an angry mother hen, suddenly becoming furious, his beard fluttering. Daydreaming, this is daydreaming. He actually wants to marry our noble Castell family with a filthy bastard child. Even if he's the Duke, he can't insult our master like this. Charlotte was startled by Quasimodo's reaction. The usually gentle old servant was now like a powder keg ignited, cursing the Duke's family from top to bottom, even though this was just Charlotte's speculation. Listening to the opponent's lack of noble etiquette and filthy curses, Charlotte gradually understood. Like Earth, no, worse than Earth. In this world, the status of noble illegitimate child was quite low. Not only did they lack inheritance rights, but they were also at the bottom of the noble hierarchy. No, not even as good as a baron at the bottom. At most, they were equivalent to a knight relying on extraordinary powers, but still, a knight with a stain. However, Quasimodo's reaction also relieved Charlotte. If even her own servant was so angry, then if the Duke proposed a marriage, she could firmly refuse it using the excuse of to not tarnish the family's honor. Quasimodo cursed for a long time, and as he cursed, seeming to tire or remember something, he suddenly stopped and asked. Wait, master, how old is the Duke's illegitimate child? What's his strength? Has he awakened his bloodline power? About 20 or so, and seems to be second tier. Charlotte said, raising her cup elegantly, bringing it to her lips as she spoke. 20 years old? Second tier? Quasimodo's eyes lit up instantly. He stood up, excitedly pressing down on the table. Master, we must capture him. We must find a way to capture him. Peeved. Charlotte choked, spraying milk all over Quasimodo's face. But Quasimodo didn't mind at all. Instead, he exclaimed excitedly. Second tier, he's second tier, such a young second tier silver moon. You should have said so earlier. Then there's no problem. No, it's not a problem at all. Rather, his illegitimate child status is actually a good thing. By combining with him, our family will gain a strong reinforcement with unlimited potential. Strength can overshadow the stain. Plus, illegitimate children cannot inherit territory. They must be adopted, and our Castell family can continue the bloodline. Not to mention, you have awakened your bloodline power today, and it's so powerful. With a strong alliance, we can definitely produce even stronger heirs. Obtaining a second-tier silver moon as an ally for free, and continuing the powerful bloodline. Master, this is a huge opportunity. Seeing Quasimodo getting more excited as he spoke, Charlotte's expression turned completely dark. She wished she could pick up a high-footed cup and smash it against his shiny forehead. Damn it, who the hell wants an heir? Screw you. I came back here, cross-dressing, acting cute, and playing along, all for the sake of enjoying myself as a lord in the future. Not to friggin' strip naked, close my eyes, and lie on the bed for others to enjoy. Marriage? Hell no. Chapter 37, Steward Needed. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Kasimodo obviously didn't notice his master's increasingly dark complexion, still eloquently expounding on the benefits of the alliance. It wasn't until Nice, who had already felt the chill, glanced at the gloomy Charlotte and shivered coldly, coughing lightly a few times to wake the old servant from his fantasy. Meow. After the alliance, will the great master be able to avoid further schemes? Nice cleared his throat, asking with a hint of meaning. Kasimodo was taken aback, his expression changing slightly, and he quickly fell silent. It was clear that he had also thought of incidents like the riding accident. So what if a bastard is married into the family? As long as the Castell family itself does not have enough strength to suppress them, even with the protection of the sacred code, it is still prey in the eyes of others. Putting hope on someone else is equivalent to entrusting one's life to others. Sorry, master, I thought about it too simply. Kasimodo bowed his head, his old face showing guilt. Looking at the slightly relieved Charlotte, Nice secretly shook his head. Really, this old servant doesn't know what he's thinking. He actually wants such a great existence to marry a mortal, simply asking for divine punishment. Charlotte, however, regained her composure, smiled faintly, and comforted. It's all right, you're also doing it for the family. With that, she sighed deeply. Charlotte had already realized, unconsciously, she had become the vortex of this power game in the Board Duchy. The fuse of the vortex was the inheritance of the Castell Count's territory a year later. The core behind it was the conflict of interest between the Duke's family and the vassal nobles. The Duke would definitely have thoughts about the wealthy Castell, the same goes for other nobles. Whether it's framing, assassination, or malicious rumors, everything revolves around the same purpose. First, to destroy the relationship between Castell and Board, to preemptively destroy the possibility of an alliance between the two families, to hinder Board's possible inheritance of the Castell Count's territory, and to prevent the Duke's family from further expanding. Second, to use rumors and survival pressure to pressure Charlotte, forcing Castell to seek alliances among the nobles, and giving their side more opportunities to compete for the inheritance of the Castell Count's territory. However, there was one thing Charlotte hadn't figured out. Was this afternoon's assassination attempt a show, or was it real? This really confused her. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, she was still just an ordinary little girl, and this assassination attempt had a real chance of success. If I die and it's revealed that the Duke's side was the attacker, who benefits the most? The lower nobles of the kingdom, other dukes of the kingdom, the king, or someone else? Charlotte pondered. Unfortunately, there was too little information and she had no clue. Thinking in vain, the girl gave up her contemplation. Onlookers see clearly, and continuing to meddle will only make things worse for her. Instead of that, it's better to jump out of the vortex temporarily, even if it's only temporarily, to observe the situation and discover clues within it. Thinking of this, Charlotte suddenly said, Kasimodo, I've changed my mind. I won't see any nobles for the next few days. Kasimodo was slightly stunned, then hesitated. Is that fine? It's fine. Just say I was attacked at home this afternoon, and I need to rest due to excessive fright. Before the banquet at the Duke's mansion, I'll decline any visits or invitations. Okay. You secretly monitor the situation in the city, especially the movements of various families, and also, rumors. Okay. Also, do the whole act. For the next few days, go to the church hospital to invite some priests to come here for spiritual comfort therapy, and then go to the nearest church to invite some priests to pray with me. Invite priests to the house? That might be difficult. Use the lunch fee for therapy and invitation fees, and people will come. Okay. Also, go to the Western City District's Demon Hunter headquarters and find the squad leader, Chatham. Tell him I want to hire them to protect my safety in the next week. Hire demon hunters? Master, demon hunters belong to the church and generally don't take contracts from nobles. It's fine. This isn't a hire, it's a request between friends. Didn't we become friends yesterday? Of course, friendly tips should be provided. Isn't that still hiring? Nice muttered, then quickly closed his mouth under Charlotte's gentle gaze. Charlotte paused for a moment, then continued. No need for them to follow me all the time, just arrange for people to patrol around the estate. The main purpose is to borrow some momentum. I also want to see the courage of those people in the dark. Understood. If there's not enough money, find some of the least valuable collections in the estate, like paintings and artworks, and sell them off temporarily. We'll have money by the end of the month and can buy them back. Okay. Kasimodo's eyelids twitched, barely holding back from saying that those collections in the estate were the favorite treasures of the former family head. Well, the father can only cry if the son sells his field. In addition, starting tomorrow, I will personally train the new servants in the house. Oka, huh? Kasimodo was dumbfounded. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. He looked up at the girl sitting behind the desk, hesitated for a moment, and said, Master, this old servant can handle it. Your identity is noble, so it's fine. I've also learned noble etiquette. This matter is settled. Charlotte said. She had this idea after stopping the assassin this afternoon because she realized that her proficiency in low-level majesty magic had increased significantly, reaching 24 100s. Since she didn't plan to interact with nobles for the time being, the best way to improve her skill would be to practice with these new servants. It would instill fear in them, increase their loyalty, and quickly master the magic, killing two birds with one stone. Okay. Seeing Charlotte's determination, Kasimodo no longer objected but bowed respectfully. In his eyes, this was a sign that the young master also wanted to grow up quickly. Although it was not in line with etiquette, it was still a good thing. Wait, wrong. Since the lunch fee was reduced, noble etiquette and the like have already been thrown out of the window. After some arrangements, Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. She leaned back and stretched lazily, but suddenly remembered something, and smiled slightly. Actually, what you said makes sense. I am indeed too weak now. Perhaps I really need to find a strong force to deal with these flies in the kingdom. Seeing the slightly mischievous smile on Charlotte's pretty face, Nice's heart moved, and he made some guesses about the girl's thoughts and goals, silently lighting a candle in his heart. Charlotte didn't further explain, but glanced at the deepening sky, and yawned lazily. Well, it's getting late. If there's nothing else, let's end here for today. I need to rest too. Upon hearing this, Nice quickly jumped off the desk, like a sycophant, and brought the thick-soled shoes to the girl. Charlotte's feet under the desk were bare as she had already taken off the uncomfortable thick-soled shoes previously since this thick-soled shoe was so uncomfortable to wear. However, outside the desk, the old servant Kasimodo's expression was hesitant, wanting to speak but holding it. Charlotte's heart moved. Kasimodo, is there anything else? Indeed, master, this afternoon I saw you use extraordinary power to intimidate the assassin. May I ask what kind of bloodline power you awakened? Kasimodo asked eagerly. What kind of power? Does our family's bloodline powers have more than one kind? Charlotte was slightly stunned. Kasimodo thought about it, first shook his head, but soon nodded. How should I put it? If we trace back to the original power, the Castell bloodline power does have only one kind, just like Board and even the Crescent royal family, they are all elemental awakening of the mage category. But as you know, the nobles have been intermarrying for generations. Now, the bloodline powers of the entire Myria nobles have long been mixed. Everyone has intermingled, and besides the most likely original bloodline, other bloodline awakenings are possible. In general, everyone's bloodline powers are no longer singular but have become varied. Anything is possible, so. Seeing Kasimodo's conflicted expression, Charlotte understood. In other words, from an extraordinary perspective, the nobles who have intermarried for generations are all already hybrids. What kind of power could be inherited according to bloodline is random. This was a good thing for her. Because of this, the identity as a bloodborn could be more hidden. I don't know what I awakened, probably something related to the mind or spiritual. Charlotte thought for a moment and said. The bloodborne identity must not be exposed, even to Kasimodo. Kasimodo thought for a moment and said, "If you're not sure, you can go through the family's collection of books on bloodline powers. It records all the bloodline powers of the families that the Castell family has intermarried with throughout history, just to prevent situations like yours now. If you find out what kind of power you awakened, you can then find specific ways to improve it, train it, and enhance your strength." "I understand." Charlotte nodded slightly, planning to look through it later and find a scapegoat. After Kasimodo told her where the books were stored, he left. Watching him leave, Charlotte sighed slightly. Kasimodo was very loyal, extremely loyal, but he was just a mortal after all. Not only that, when considering the problem, he leaned more toward the standpoint of the Castell than from her interest. He was indeed very loyal, but not entirely loyal to Charlotte herself. In addition, this diligent old servant also lacked sufficient political sensitivity. At this moment, Charlotte suddenly understood why the family had previously arranged for such a loyal servant to be a shopkeeper instead of leaving him as the steward of the estate. He was quite qualified as a servant, but as a steward, he was indeed a little lacking. It seems that I need a more loyal and competent steward. It would be best if it were an extraordinary who had risen in rank. Charlotte muttered to herself. After saying that, she quickly shook her head. Even she herself had not yet advanced to the first tier. It was just wishful thinking. Chapter 38, Sebastian's Decision. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. In the following days, Charlotte's life became much calmer. She would sleep until she naturally woke up, then devoutly attend the church service with the priests who came from the church, followed by receiving spiritual therapy from the priests from the church hospital. Her enthusiasm, initiative, and religious fervor impressed the priests who came to earn extra income. Charlotte was indeed very devout. Watching the blood-calling recharge bar rise again, she offered heartfelt blessings and sincere thanks to the great God Herald every day. The only regret was probably not being able to see Miss Lottie. The beautiful priestess not only was pleasing to the eye, smelled good, and kind, but also brought Charlotte a natural intimacy. She was the first person to treat Charlotte kindly after she crossed over. During those days at the hospital, Lottie took care of Charlotte meticulously, and Charlotte could genuinely feel the other's heartfelt concern and gentleness. Charlotte was looking forward to her visit, but instead, the priests who came were all men, one more enthusiastic than the other, but none pleasing to the eye. Later, after some cute gestures and getting friendly, Charlotte chatted with the priests and learned that Lottie had gone to study at the cathedral during these days. Regrettably, after the charging in the morning, it was lunchtime. The new maid who had started working respectfully served the girls' meal, allowing Charlotte to return to the sinful life of having everything served on a silver platter. Lunch was as sumptuous as ever. In the end, Kasimodo successfully persuaded Charlotte to increase her meal fee, ultimately lowering it to 1/5 of the original amount. Lower than the original but still higher than Charlotte demands. According to him, he had already exchanged 80,000 gold tana with the cheapest porcelain in the pawn shop opened by the Yucca people, enough to cover the upcoming expenses. And there were several rooms in the manor with similar collections. Charlotte was truly amazed by her family's heritage. She felt astonished that the manor had not been targeted by thieves during this time. It was truly a miracle. They won't dare, because in the past few days, the Duke's mansion has been sending people to help watch over, and the leader even sent a first-tier extraordinary to patrol the surroundings. Kasimodo explained. Then what about our extraordinaries? Don't tell me that the Castell family, such a prestigious family, doesn't even have one first tier? Charlotte asked the question she had been wanting to ask. Kasimodo sighed. There are indeed first-tier extraordinaries in the family, and there are even 2 viscounts in the second-tier Silver Moon. There used to be at least one who was always by the Lord's side, but over the past few years, all the extraordinary have been sent back to the Count's territory by the previous Countess under various pretexts. Charlotte instantly understood. It wasn't that the Castells didn't have extraordinary personnel, it was that the old witch feared exposure and sent them all back to the territory. This resulted in the Castell manor in the city of Board becoming a mere figurehead. Absurd, she's not even afraid of being attacked. Charlotte muttered. With the church here and the sacred code, who would dare to cause trouble in the capital? Kasimodo shook his head. But now that such a big incident has occurred at the manor, why haven't the extraordinaries in the territory rushed back? Charlotte asked again. Kasimodo fell silent. Obviously, he couldn't answer this question. Perhaps he guessed something but didn't dare to answer. Charlotte quickly returned to her senses. It's not easy being a feudal lord. She sighed helplessly. First-tier extraordinary that loyal to the great nobles were, of course, also considered nobles. Being nobles, they almost all had their own territories. Even if they didn't have territories, it was very easy to obtain a rural estate. And with a territory, there were personal interests. Obviously, the Castell family, which had been managed by the old countess for 10 years, was probably a mess internally. The inheritance of the Castell title had not yet been decided, and everyone eyeing it. Of course, this was not a problem that Charlotte was worrying about now. If she is going to be worried, it would be after she successfully inherited the territory in the future. Now, without officially inheriting the territory, she couldn't even command those lower-ranked nobles. After lunch, habitually drinking a glass of milk, and taking a nap, the afternoon was the time to train the servants. Majesty magic was indeed a good thing. They could intimidate and charm, coupled with Charlotte's understanding of noble etiquette from her memories. Within a few days, she trained the newcomers to be respectful and fearful of her. Charlotte estimated that in a couple of months, she could mold these people to her liking from head to toe. As the days went by, the proficiency of the low-level Majesty magic skyrocketed. She broke through 100 on the 3rd day, advancing from basic to intermediate, and the progress bar became 0 300s. The power didn't increase much, but it became more handy to use. At least the duration became quite long. Before, it would only last for about 15 minutes, but now, she could sustain it for almost an hour. Charlotte estimated that in another week, she should be able to reach maximum proficiency and reach the next level. Evening time was relatively free, and Charlotte usually chose to read to learn, absorbing as much knowledge about this world as possible, especially information about the nobles in her own family. As she delved deeper, she began to understand why the response from her territory was so sluggish. There was nothing special, it was because the Count's territory was originally an enclave of the Board Duchy. The Board Duchy was located on the southwestern coast of the Crescent Kingdom. However, the Count's territory was located on the northern coast, the northern border of the kingdom, originally territory of the Orc tribe that was conquered by the first Count. The area was not small, accounting for 1/3 of the total area of the Board Duchy. The 2 territories were separated, one to the south and one to the north, separated by several duchies, and had strong control over their own. In fact, the Castell family had always been living in their own territory over the years, only leaving once a year to see the Lord. It wasn't until the previous Count became the leader of the duchy's mage corps that they stayed in Board City for a long time. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. As for the source of the family's strong income, in simple terms, the Castell family had mines. And it was a silver mine that contained mithril. In addition, as a territory facing the fallen Star Kingdom across the sea, adjacent to the Northern Territory Grand Duchy, and a land route to the Badlands of Eastern Unit and even the Coria Kingdom in the east, in recent years, the commercial development of the Count's territory had also been thriving. Charlotte finally understood why the nobles were coveting her family's territory. Hundreds of years ago, it was indeed a desolate place, but now it was a land of hope with high potential for future development. In addition to studying family records, the girl also didn't forget to find a scapegoat in the bloodline record. After picking and choosing, Charlotte found that the effect of her Majesty magic was quite similar to the bloodline power of an ancient and declining noble family in the Coria Kingdom. This bloodline had a grandiose name, Heaven's Chosen. The effect was to comprehensively strengthen physical fitness, increase the probability of becoming a knight or a mage, plus an aura release similar to Majesty magic. This bloodline ability was quite good, almost like tailored for her identity, so she directly chose it. Just wondering, as a bloodborne, could she still truly awaken her noble bloodline power? Charlotte still harbored doubts about the half-elf in her bloodline, but asking Kasimodo or consulting literature didn't yield any results. She could only speculate whether the ancestors of the Castell family had intermarriage with elves. In the following days, the internal situation of the estate remained relatively calm. However, things in the city of Bord were somewhat strange. During the days when Charlotte was recuperating, rumors about the Castell family colluding with Blood Demon cult became increasingly rampant. Even the priests who came to the manor every day to earn extra income were interpreted by the public as the Castell family's confession of guilt to cover up their tracks. Some even more maliciously described Charlotte as a bloodborne who borrowed a corpse to return to life or a succubus who bewitched people's hearts. When Charlotte heard the old servant indignantly recounting the information she had inquired about, she couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Because the last rumor, in a sense, was partially true. Obviously, there were still people behind the scenes. They were definitely related to the vassal nobles of the duchy, and maybe even encouraged by the duke in secret. Apart from this, the assassination attempts had stopped. The other parties seemed to be quite wary of the demon hunters. Even though most of them were trainees patrolling, they still stopped. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. The duke's birthday banquet is tomorrow. At the same time, in a luxurious mansion in the outer city area. Lying leisurely on a soft bed, Sebastian, the president of the Rose Society, enjoyed the fruit peeled by the demi-human maids and elegantly held a goblet filled with red wine. Finally, after sorting out the information collected from the search, he saw a parchment on the table, clearly copying the sacrificial array in the basement of the Castell manor that night. Sebastian picked up the parchment, and he slowly sipped his red wine, contemplating. The Countess of Castell possessed cursed pages. She wanted to sacrifice her granddaughter to communicate with the Blood Duke but ultimately died in a mysterious sacrificial ritual. I got the cursed pages from her, and shortly afterward, I was summoned into the dream by Lady of the Night. The Blood Duke is one of the 5 Blood Archdukes, the leader of the Bloodborne's shadows. Lady of the Night is likely a revived Bloodborne. A coincidence? Or is there some deeper connection between the two? Sebastian's gaze gradually deepened. He put down the parchment and picked up a piece of drawing paper underneath. On the drawing paper was a beautiful blonde girl. She was dressed in a holy white gown, kneeling, closing her eyes in prayer in front of the statue of Harold. The holy light shone on her, making her look extremely sacred, like an angel descending. Charlotte de Castell. Sebastian touched the drawing paper, his clear eyes filled with admiration for beauty. It's worthy of being the heir of the Castell family, truly beautiful and moving, even the White Witch is inferior. However, to survive such a sacrifice, this is not something an ordinary person can do. Perhaps, she has experienced something and knows something. Thinking of this, Sebastian fell into contemplation. He continued to flip through the information about the city of Bord, searching for clues. There's such a rumor? He frowned slightly. After casually flipping through a few pages, Sebastian sneered. Hey, these greedy human nobles are really shameless. They don't even feel embarrassed to bully a child. As Sebastian turned to the last page, his eyebrows raised. The Duke's birthday banquet? After pondering for a moment, he felt a slight movement in his heart, coming up with an idea. It's interesting. Perhaps, this is a good opportunity for a personal investigation. He put down the information, finished the red wine in his goblet in one gulp, and then gracefully got up, ordering the demi-human maid who was waiting. Prepare an elegant dress for me and some decent gifts. Tomorrow, I will attend the Duke's birthday banquet at the Duke's mansion. Chapter 39, Towards the Banquet. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Quick, what are you dawdling for? Does it take this long to fetch a basin of water? Who told you to bring the everyday clothes? Go get the formal attire. What, you think this is formal attire? This is everyday clothing. Can't even differentiate between everyday and formal attire as a servant of the Castell family? The formal attire is in a separate wardrobe. Each set is specially tailored in advance for every banquet. Each set can only be worn once. No need to bring them all, just bring the few warm-toned ones. The mistress specifically requested a mature and sunny look. In the Castell manor, Kasimodo directed the busy maids and servants with a stern expression. Although they had been trained by Charlotte for many days, it was evident that the newcomers were still not prepared for a duke's banquet of this caliber, and they were all a bit flustered. Inside the manor, the roar of the old servants could be heard without interruption. As Charlotte looked helplessly at the formal dresses brought by the maids, she sighed, finally selecting a gorgeous evening gown predominantly white in color. Speaking of which, perhaps the existence of extraordinary powers allowed for advanced productivity in the Miria world. The clothing, food, housing, and transportation of the nobility were quite advanced. Overall, although society was still in a feudal era, with commoners in the lower class living lives similar to the Middle Ages on Earth, the upper class had clearly entered a period resembling the Renaissance or even the Industrial Age in terms of material conditions. The wealth gap was enormous. Even tailcoats were being tailored, which initially led Charlotte to believe that she had transmigrated to the 17th or 18th century. It wasn't until she left the manor that she realized how much more backward this world actually was. Through various alterations and additions, the overall estimate was akin to the late Middle Ages of Earth, around the 15th century. Unlike the avant-garde Gothic dresses, the evening gowns were elegant and beautiful in pattern, with a preference for heavy fabric, intricate decorations, a lot of embroidery and cutting, and many places adorned with jewels, overall exuding a rich and luxurious style. Furthermore, the styling was quite exaggerated, with cinching and padding everywhere, making it uncomfortable to wear. Especially the large petticoats, which made Charlotte feel like she was wearing an oversized heavy hula hoop. But there were advantages too. This dress was convenient for hiding small items. While no one was looking, Charlotte decisively tucked her hand crossbow for self-defense inside. After stuffing it, she still felt there was plenty of space, so she casually tucked in a dagger and a few magic scrolls she had obtained from Nice. Grooming, bathing, dressing, hairstyling, makeup, perfume spraying. After a tedious preparation, it was already 40 minutes later. Standing in front of the mercury mirror, Charlotte felt that her reflection in the mirror looked even more beautiful and charming than usual. Underneath her youthful and charming appearance, there was a touch of maturity. She also smelled good, surprising even herself with how fragrant and soft she was. This was all thanks to the formal dress and perfume, as well as Charlotte's natural beauty. Under the cumbersome formal dress, even her chest appeared much larger, and surprisingly, there were even cleavage lines. Although Charlotte always felt that having cleavage somehow made her feel she had lost something precious in her innermost being. After getting ready, she boarded the carriage to the banquet. The chosen carriage was the best one from the Castell manor, adorned with exquisite carvings, decorated with gold edges and gems, and on the side, the black eagle family crest of the Castell family shone brightly, luxurious and grand. The old servant Kasimodo served as the temporary steward, accompanied by 2 maids and 2 male servants. The maids and male servants sat on the second servant carriage, with a religious oil painting selected from the manor's collection, valued around 200,000 gold tana selected as the birthday banquet gifts placed on top. This was the entire entourage for the banquet. Nice, the black cat, lay on the window of the second floor, watching the departing crowd with amber eyes full of pity. Of course, no one truly pitied it, not even the maids in the manor. During this time, this guy didn't dare to act recklessly towards Charlotte, temporarily dispelling Charlotte's idea of giving it a luxurious version of a neutering package. However, it made the maids anxious, and they even had to check if a fat cat was lurking nearby before changing clothes. Although being watched by a cat seemed harmless, being stared at by a speaking cat with such a strange gaze made people uncomfortable, feeling as if they were being peeped at by a pervert. Charlotte felt that this lecherous cat would eventually pay the price sooner or later, and it would eventually be neutered. It was just bullying the maids and other ordinary people. In terms of strength alone, this guy couldn't even beat Charlotte, and its physical quality was also that of an unawakened trash, just slightly stronger than an ordinary cat. But unfortunately, Nice could still perform a series of high-level divine rituals and even magic. It was eerie. Charlotte was sure this cat had its secrets, but it refused to say, and Charlotte didn't force it. After all, who didn't have a secret or two in this world? We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. As long as it didn't betray her, that was enough. Trust and loyalty would gradually change over time. After a brief thought, Charlotte waved at the window on the second floor. After all, this guy had quite a few divine rituals and magic with it, barely considered a master, so she might as well let it accompany her. Seeing the girl's signal, Nice's eyes lit up. It meowed excitedly, and eagerly jumped out onto the carriage on the back, making the maid scream out of surprise. Stay away from me, mind your identity. You can follow me, but as a pet. Charlotte said coldly as she watched the excited black cat. Nice's cat face immediately fell. It forcibly stopped itself from looking at the girl's enticing cleavage, sighed regretfully, and then jumped onto the back servant carriage to harass the maids. The convoy slowly started moving, leaving the Castell Manor. Charlotte leisurely leaned against the window of the carriage, taking out a goblet and the milk bag prepared by the maids in advance, skillfully filling it up for herself. Passing through the spacious and bright streets of the western city area, the convoy headed east, and after about 15 minutes, entered the eastern city area. As the most central area of Board City and also the area with the most nobles, the buildings in the eastern city area were much more magnificent overall. The streets were spacious and bright, clean and tidy, with religious sculptures, fountains, and small gardens everywhere. Even the clothing of pedestrians on the street was much neater and more luxurious. This scene formed a sharp contrast with the dilapidation and backwardness of the outer city area, as if spanning 200 to 300 years. The beautiful scenery made Charlotte, who liked to admire the scenery, brighten up. But as the carriage continued to move forward, she gradually lost interest. Although the scenery of the eastern city area was good, they all were too similar. All the sculptures were about religion, the decorations on the fountains were also patterns of the holy court, and even the greenery in the gardens was pruned into the stiff style of the church. Heavy, oppressive, and full of restraint, this feeling couldn't be experienced without careful consideration, but Charlotte was always sharp. So, religious authority is the most powerful force in this world. Taking a sip of milk, the girl sighed. As the carriage continued to move, similar convoys on both sides of the street became more numerous. Every carriage was also adorned with various badges, and as they moved in the same direction as Charlotte and the others, it was obvious that they were all nobles attending the banquet. Charlotte noticed that when her family's carriage passed by, almost all the convoys slowed down to let them pass. Sometimes, the windows of the carriages would even open, and people would salute towards Charlotte's carriage. Nobles were also ranked. Even though there was a trend of decline and the risk of extinction, the wealthy Castell family was definitely one of the most powerful noble families in the Board Duchy. Perhaps, the one of words could even be removed. After another 15 minutes of travel, Charlotte finally saw a magnificent palace, the Duke's Mansion. The history of the Board Ducal Mansion was quite ancient, tracing back to the founding period of the Unit Empire 1,100 years ago. At that time, it was a fortress used to resist the Orc tribes and also a majestic castle. Now, the Orc tribes on the Crescent Peninsula have long been completely annihilated, and the once active Orcs have all become slaves or migrated to distant places. The historical mission of the Board Castle has long been completed. Therefore, around 700 years ago, during the time of the first head of the Board family, the castle was ordered to be rebuilt into a palace with fortress functions, and the city was built around it. The city of Board also developed from that time on and was expanded several times. At this moment, on the garden square in front of the Duke's mansion, there were already more than 100 carriages from various families parked. The Duke's family servants, dressed in deep blue butler uniforms, stood at the door, guiding various nobles into the palace. When the Castell family carriage arrived, it almost attracted the attention of everyone, whether they were nobles, attendants, or commoners who came from afar to watch the excitement. Their eyes were full of curiosity. Mistress, we have arrived. The carriage door opened, and Casimodo's old and respectful voice came over. Charlotte nodded slightly. Help me down. She took a deep breath, extended her fair little hand, placed it in the palm of the maid attendant, and then, with the careful assistance of the maid, gracefully stepped down from the carriage where the ladder was placed. The bright sunlight shone on her, accompanied by a light breeze, lifting her beautiful golden hair slightly. She appears in her sacred and gorgeous evening gown, with her beautiful and divine face, and her elegant and noble demeanor. At that moment, the entire garden square fell silent. Chapter 40. A Sinful Woman. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. The style of clothing can change a person's appearance. Charlotte is at just the right age, and her development is relatively late, so she looks somewhat young. When she wears children's clothing and acts cute, she appears as an innocent, lovely, and charming child. However, when she puts on a mature and elegant evening gown, her childishness is concealed, and her youthful charm is enhanced. Especially today, she deliberately requested the maids to apply slightly mature makeup for her. This was Charlotte's little idea. Previously, in order to appear cute and reduce others' guard against her, she would deliberately wear clothes that emphasized her youthfulness to enhance her young appeal. But this time at the banquet, she must let everyone know that the heir of the Castell family is not just a child. She has already passed her 15th birthday. She is already grown up and ready to inherit the territory. So, this situation came. When Charlotte stepped down from the carriage, the entire garden square fell silent. Everyone's gaze was focused on her, and for a moment, it was difficult for anyone, male or female, to look away. Ultimately, it was the well-trained servants of the Duke's mansion who reacted the fastest. They were the first to come back to their senses and quickly put on respectful and enthusiastic smiles, rushing to Charlotte's side. However, someone was even faster. Oh, it's Miss Charlotte. Miss Charlotte, you're here. A sharp and enthusiastic voice came over. The chubby nobleman Bruno, dragging his fluffy body, jogged over to Charlotte's side, his small eyes narrowed into slits as he smiled. Having searched for information about the ducal household, Charlotte already knew the exact identity of the other party. He was a second-tier steward of the Duke Board's mansion, with the title of Court Viscount. Court titles specifically refer to those nobles who, although holding titles, do not have territory, commonly found within the courts of duchies, kingdoms, grand duchies, or empires. Good afternoon, Viscount Bruno. Charlotte performed an elegant noblewoman's courtesy. She was already quite proficient in this gesture. Addressed by the young lady, Bruno seemed quite happy. He proudly lifted his chin towards the other stewards who hadn't caught up as fast, then instructed the butlers who followed. What are you standing around for? Hurry up and help Miss Castell get settled from the carriage. The stewards quickly sprang into action, bustling around the Castell family's carriage and leaving other nearby nobles on the sidelines, even though Charlotte didn't really need that many stewards. Meanwhile, Bruno warmly escorted Charlotte towards the Duke's mansion. Nice the black cat also jumped down from the carriage, tail held high, and proudly followed, chest puffed out. It wasn't until the girl's figure gradually disappeared that the others in the garden square began to react. Which noble lady was that? She's really beautiful. Haven't you seen it? The family crest on the carriage was a black eagle. Castell? Ah, is it her? Could it be true what the rumors say, that she's a bewitching succubus? Tisk, have you ever seen a succubus walking in the sunlight? In my opinion, with looks like hers, she must be a witch who practices dark magic. This was the conversation among the commoners watching the excitement. Recently, rumors had been rife in Board City, and those who were just there for entertainment and conspiracy theories were them. There was nothing to be done about it. The masses were the easiest to sway with public opinion, lacking sources of genuine information and being led by the nose by manipulative noble families. Information cocoons existed in every era. However, it was different for the nobles. It's the one from the Castell family. She's really beautiful, and her etiquette is very standard and elegant. She's truly the heiress of the Castell family. It's a pity she's been plagued by rumors recently. It must be quite a headache for her. I wonder which family she'll choose for a marriage alliance. Yes, who will be the lucky one? The dowry from the Castell family is nearly half a duchy. What was the rumor? What was the truth? These self-righteous fellows could distinguish clearly. Those who couldn't were simply not qualified to receive an invitation to the Duke's banquet. Amidst the discussions, the slightly more influential noble families noticeably quickened their pace and joined the girl's entourage. If one were to look closely, they would notice that among the noble families attending the banquet, apart from the heads of the families, there were also young and handsome male family members. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Everyone's gaze moved with the girl's movements, seemingly ready to approach and strike up a conversation at any moment, and the eye contact between them carried a hint of tension. Coupled with the unique magnificent attire and exaggerated styles of the nobles, they looked like a group of peacocks always ready for a duel. Charlotte also noticed. She even curiously glanced at them and politely smiled. But with just that casual glance and a polite smile, a large group of young nobles became excited. She looked at me. She just looked at me. No, she looked at me, and she smiled at me. She was clearly looking at me. Idiot, she was looking at me. Want to duel? Come on, who's afraid of who? Chaos ensued. Charlotte slowly withdrew her gaze, and the corner of her eye couldn't help but twitch slightly. She inwardly cursed herself for being such a sinful woman. Of course, these were the more impulsive young nobles, mostly from medium and small families. The big noble families, who were also competitors for marriage alliances, were much more gentlemanly. They casually approached the girl, courteous and polite, casually bringing up topics and wearing elegant and charming smiles on their faces. Among them were some faces much more handsome than any popular celebrity from her previous life, enough to make any girl scream and make Charlotte feel sour and envious to death. But it had to be said, these guys' social skills were indeed impressive. Even though she knew they had ulterior motives, and she harbored a male-like hostility towards their handsome faces, the topics they brought up often succeeded in piquing Charlotte's interest. But unfortunately, all their flirting was wasted on a blind man. Charlotte was interested in the information they discussed, and the various noble intrigues they revealed, but she felt nothing for them personally. Not only that, seeing these people come up so elegantly and gracefully, enthusiastically displaying themselves, and knowing their true intentions were to lust after her body and her wealth, Charlotte even had the impulse to knock them down with one punch, then mercilessly step on their faces with her foot. Oh, wait, she can't step on their faces herself. Who knows if, among these lustful hyenas, there might be some weirdo who would see that as a reward. Charlotte was quite confident in her beautiful legs and feet. It should be Quasimodo who would step on them fiercely. She thought to herself. Of course, even if she could hear some information, a swarm of flies buzzing around in her ears for too long would be annoying. After a while, Charlotte grew a bit impatient, but someone was even more impatient than her. Why are you all crowding around? I'm taking Miss Charlotte to meet the Duke. Do you all want to tag along? The chubby steward Bruno spoke up. The young nobles instantly wilted, one by one retreating. As one of the few third-tier blazing sun in board, the Duke's name still carried weight. Charlotte's heart stirred. The Duke wants to see me? Yes, Miss Charlotte, the Duke is waiting for you in the study. He said that when you arrived, I should bring you to see him first. Bruno said obsequiously. Charlotte nodded slightly, thoughtful, and then continued to walk with Bruno towards the palace, her mind alert. Being a major noble and with Bruno leading the way, Charlotte naturally bypassed the on-site inspection at the Duke's mansion gate. However, just as she was about to enter the inner palace gate, she heard someone calling her name from behind. Turning around, she saw Nice the black cat being lifted up by the neck by one of the mansion's gatekeepers, as if carrying a little chick. Nice was meowing and struggling while looking at her with a pitiful expression. Beside him stood the somewhat helpless Quasimodo. The mansion rules stipulate that pets are not allowed inside. The knight looked at the old servant, his face serious. Charlotte. Chapter 41, Duke of Board. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Viscount, it seems my servant has encountered some trouble. Please allow me to go and see what happened. Charlotte gracefully bowed to Bruno and then headed towards the gate of the Duke's mansion. There were already quite a few nobles gathered in front of the mansion. Most of them looked at Quasimodo and Nice, who was being held up by the knight, with expressions ranging from curiosity to disdain to schadenfreude. T.N. Pleasure derived from others' misfortune. A few young nobles who wanted to help stepped forward, but they were quickly stopped by their elders and gestured to remain quiet. Ultimately, it was because of the board duchy. When attending a birthday banquet, it was only natural to show enough respect to the host, even if it was just the host's gatekeeper knight. Trying to sneak a pet inside was quite rude behavior. What's going on? Seeing Charlotte approaching, the gathered nobles made way for her. Quasimodo, feeling like he had found his backbone, hurriedly approached and whispered helplessly. Miss, pets are not allowed inside the Duke's mansion. I tried to persuade Lord Nice to wait outside in the pet area, but Lord Nice refused and wanted to sneak in. And then, he was caught by the knight at the door. Pet area? Charlotte was puzzled. Thinking of Nice, who, although cheap, always showed a hint of pride in his character, she could somewhat understand why he didn't want to stay in the pet area with those real cats and dogs. But, Charlotte furrowed her brow slightly and glanced lightly at Nice, who was being grabbed by the back of his neck. Can't you speak? Can't you explain it yourself? Nice looked pitifully innocent, with a hint of grievance in his eyes. Explain what? Explain that I belong to the church. The Lord Nice of the church has actually become someone's pet. Can I still mix in the church circles in the future? Charlotte's gaze swept around, turning cold. Then go obediently to the pet area and don't cause me any trouble. I'll explain the situation to the people in the Duke's mansion later and bring you in. The black cat's eyes instantly widened in panic. No, don't let this cat master stay with those stupid cats and dogs, not even for a minute. Kill Master Cat if you have to, but don't leave it. The communication between the human and the cat through eye contact was unimpeded. It could also be considered an additional ability of a contracted servant. Seeing Nice's pitiful expression, Charlotte sighed in her heart and decided to help him, but she would settle the score with him later. However, just as she was about to explain to the gatekeeper knight, Bruno's sharp voice came. Huh? Isn't this Lord Nice? Osamu, are you crazy? Hurry up and put Lord Nice down. Hearing Bruno's words, the knight looked at the black cat in his hand, somewhat hesitating. But, pets are not allowed. Fool, Lord Nice is an important figure in the church. He has been ordered by the church to protect Miss Charlotte day and night. Hurry up and put him down. Bruno scolded. An important figure in the church? Eh, cat? But isn't there a pet collar around its neck? Wait a minute, I seem to have heard the name Nice in the church. The surrounding nobles discussed, looking at the black cat with surprise and curiosity. Nice. The cat's face instantly collapsed. It was over, it couldn't hide its affiliation with the church. It could almost predict the expressions of those bastards in the church when they found out that it, the cat master, had been treated as the heiress of Castel's pet. Heaven knows, for the past few days in the mansion, it had deliberately avoided those priests every morning. All in vain. Although it was indeed the pet of an ancient evil god, but could the pet of an evil god be the same as the pet of a little girl? But, it couldn't reveal the secret. Nice's cat face was full of complexity. After hearing Bruno's words, the knight still hesitated, but after looking at the black cat in his hand, he finally let it go. Lord Nice, are you okay? The chubby steward fawned, bending down to the black cat. Seeing that the matter had been exposed, Nice stopped pretending and sighed helplessly, then tidied up his mood and arrogantly raised his head. Well, it's okay, this knight is indeed a true knight. Meow, the cat master just wanted to test whether he was diligent or not. It proudly raised its head, like a leader inspecting the lower ranks. A talking cat. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Extraordinary creature. The surrounding nobles' eyes lit up. Seeing more and more nobles gathering around, Nice quickly cleared his throat and shrunk his almost invisible fat neck as much as possible, hiding the collar that Charlotte had deliberately put on him a few days ago to punish him for peeking at the maids while bathing. All right, the misunderstanding is resolved. Let's go in quickly and don't block the door here. Saying that, it hurriedly slipped into the Duke's mansion behind Charlotte, as if afraid of being seen by acquaintances again. Hee, Miss Charlotte, let's continue inside. The Duke might be getting impatient. Bruno said cheerfully. After that, he led the way towards the inner palace. Watching the fluffy back of the other party, Charlotte's gaze slightly condensed, sinking into contemplation. Nice said that only Dean Raoul of the church hospital and Captain Kara of the board demon hunter team knew about its actions. Even the incident of being kidnapped was explained as an accidental encounter with her. How did Bruno, the steward of the Duke's mansion, know that Nice had been with her all this time and that it was arranged by the church? Passing over the seemingly always cheerful fat face of the steward, Charlotte temporarily suppressed her thoughts and smiled as she followed. As for Casimodo and guests from the church, Nice, who were not nobles, they were guided by the servants, with Casimodo being arranged in the area where the servants were located, and Nice being taken directly to the guest area. The scale of the Duke's mansion was much larger than that of the Castel manor. In terms of style, it was less luxurious than the Castel family's mansion, but more solid, reflecting the former fortress identity of the Duke's mansion. After passing through countless corridors, Bruno finally stopped in front of a semicircular door guarded by knights. He took a step forward and respectfully knocked on the door. My Lord Duke, Miss Charlotte is here. Let her in. An old voice came from behind the door. After saying that, the knights reached out and opened the door, while Bruno made a respectful gesture. Miss Charlotte, please. Charlotte took a deep breath and stepped in. Behind the door was a quite spacious study, with tall bookshelves filled with countless books, densely packed like stars. In front of the bookshelves was a carved oak desk. An old man dressed in a black noble robe, wearing a wig, was sitting at the desk, writing something. Feeling Charlotte's entry, he put down the quill in his hand and slowly raised his head. It was a very old face, probably giving the impression of being 60 or 70 years old. Deep wrinkles, a face full of age spots, but a pair of blue-gray eyes were still bright and sharp, and the old face was full of dignity. André de Borde, the current Duke of Borde, one of the 9 dukes of the Crescent Kingdom, a third-tier Blazing Sun Knight, a member of the Crescent Kingdom's cabinet, and also a holder of the military commander title. Although he looked 60 or 70 years old, he was actually only 50. It was just that he had been seriously injured multiple times during the Star Moon War that had lasted more than 80 years between the Crescent Kingdom and the Fallen Star Kingdom. The excessive use of divine magic treatments had drained his body, making him appear so old. Of course, with numerous military exploits, he had also accumulated enough prestige within the kingdom. But unfortunately, a severe injury in his youth had permanently deprived him of his ability to reproduce. Apart from Eleanor, his daughter born in his early years, who had already made a marriage contract with the third prince of the Crescent Kingdom, his only offspring was his illegitimate son Leno. Looking at the old man in front of her, Charlotte quickly recalled the relevant information she had studied. She took a deep breath, pinched the hem of her skirt, and gracefully and correctly performed a vassal etiquette, then respectfully said, "The wise lord, Lion of Borde, Charlotte de Castel extends her highest respect to you. May your glorious divine light forever illuminate the land of Castel." The Duke of Bode calmly watched the girl bowing respectfully, a hint of appreciation flashing in his blue-gray eyes. He nodded slightly and smiled faintly. "You may rise." Charlotte finished her courtesy and stood up, and the Duke pointed to the chair in front of the desk. "Sit." Charlotte picked up her skirt and sat down at the desk, and soon a waiter brought a crystal cup filled with milk and respectfully offered it to her. Seeing the girl's slightly surprised expression, the old Duke smiled and said, "I heard that you particularly liked these during your stay in the church hospital, so I prepared them in advance." After saying that, he carefully examined the girl and couldn't help but sigh. "It's been a few years since we last met, and you've grown up so much. So beautiful, you're already the brightest pearl of the Crescent Kingdom. Looking at your eyes, I can feel that your experiences during this time have matured you a lot." Charlotte remained silent for a moment, then sighed softly. People always have to grow up. This time, she didn't deliberately act cute, because she knew that in front of people like Duke Borde, there was no point in being cute. Yes, people always have to grow up. The old Duke nodded in agreement, and then, his expression became serious. "Charlotte, do you know why I specifically summoned you this time?" Charlotte's heart moved slightly, and she bowed slightly. "Please enlighten me, my lord." Instead of directly explaining, Duke Borde suddenly stood up and looked at the map of the Borde Duchy behind him, saying meaningfully, "As the heir of Castel, how do you view the current situation of Castel?" Chapter 42, Let's Get Married. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. The current situation of Castel? Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. She raised her head and looked at Duke Borde standing in front of the map, pondering the meaning behind his question. The old Duke didn't wait for her to answer. Perhaps the brief silence made him think the girl wasn't clear about the current situation, so he took the initiative to make his own judgment. Count Castel's territory is located at the northernmost part of the kingdom, separated from the capital of the duchy by 3 entire counties and 2 viscount territories. And among these 3 counties, there are those who have always coveted Castel, those who have always sought to defeat the sworn allies of Borde, and the faithful supporters of His Majesty the King, backing His Majesty in weakening the vassals, strengthening authority, and expanding royal lands. It can be said that outside the duchy, the situation is quite difficult, with everyone keeping an eye on wealthy Castel. At this point, the old Duke took a deep breath, his expression turning somewhat grim. Even within the duchy, it's not peaceful. Those families loyal to Borde, each harboring ulterior motives. As he spoke, as if recalling something, a hint of anger flashed across the old Duke's face, and his voice trembled. Especially upon seeing Eleanor betrothed to the third prince. The third prince is ambitious, but Eleanor is weak-willed, and that bastard Anthony is unreliable, idling about spending his days on divination and astrology, not focusing on managing the duchy. The esteemed Borde family all turned out to be a bunch of useless trash. Worthless. The old Duke angrily cursed his own kin, completely unaware that he himself was also a member of the Borde family, a piece of garbage incapable of producing a qualified heir. Meanwhile, Charlotte lowered her head slightly, contemplating the information related to the Borde family. She had already researched the Borde family's information, knowing that what Duke Borde was most irritated about was his only daughter's engagement to the third prince. Initially, the old Duke intended to ingratiate himself with the Crescent royal family. After the engagement was arranged, he even boasted everywhere, but he didn't expect to be pierced by the spears of the enemy's pikemen on the battlefield, rendering him unable to produce an heir. In the end, he inadvertently entangled his only daughter, who was originally intended to marry a suitor, into the mess, leaving him completely dumbfounded. As for the Anthony mentioned by the Duke, his full name is Anthony de Borde, not yet 30 years old. He is the Duke's half-brother, designated heir to the duchy, and titled the Count of Tulip, with his territory also being an enclave adjacent to the Castel domain. This has been an old tradition of the Borde family. Although the Castel domain is an enclave, the Duke's mansion has always had a small indirect jurisdiction adjacent to the Castel domain, serving as the next Duke's territory, to strengthen control over the Castel family. By the way, the Count of Tulip is also Lady Catherine, Charlotte's aunt's only son, making him Charlotte's cousin. The relationship between the two families is quite good. In Charlotte's memory, he even played with her, a very elegant, gentle, and considerate gentleman to be around. However, although he is the heir to the Borde duchy, the Count of Tulip is not interested in inheritance and governance. His interests and skills are all askew. He is obsessed with divination and astrology, with almost zero managerial ability, leaving the tiny Tulip domain in a mess, and even being driven back by the rebellious subjects. Now he has completely let himself go, either holed up in the Duke's mansion studying divination or running to the Mage Association to discuss astrological magic, unwilling to manage anything, much to the old Duke's disappointment. These matters are known to the nobles of the Borde duchy. Clearly, if the old Duke were to die, the Count of Tulip, who is not interested in governing the territory, would be unable to control the duchy. The entire Borde duchy might be taken advantage of by the Crescent royal family, with the third prince, Eleanor's husband, possibly becoming the next Duke of Borde. At that time, the Borde duchy would change its name, and the Count of Tulip, Anthony, that wastrel, might be excited because he got rid of the title of Duke, having more time to study astrological magic. Anyway, astrological magic is different from other magic. It doesn't require much money, it just burns your brain circuit. The old duke continued to grumble, growing angrier as he spoke. These greedy bastards. All think that my board main line is about to die out, that the duchy might change its name, and each one wants to take a big bite out of us. Cough, cough, cough. Towards the end, as if touching on an old wound, he began coughing violently, a flush of abnormal redness appearing on his face. Duke. Charlotte quickly got up, but was stopped by the old duke's raised hand. Cough, it's an old ailment, I'm fine. After taking a deep breath, the old duke calmed down a lot, but his voice remained authoritative, suppressing his anger like a volcano about to erupt. Abductions, assassinations, rumors. HMPH. You see, look at what they've been up to lately. As he spoke, he took out a crossbow from under the table and slammed it angrily on the table. These greedy bastards even dare to slander my board family, thinking that just because I'm old, I can't deal with them anymore. Seeing the crossbow on the table, Charlotte's eyelids twitched. She recognized it as the other crossbow carried by the mercenaries who abducted her that night. Before leaving that night, she specifically asked Nice to find it, but Nice couldn't find it after searching for a long time. Combined with Leno hastily leaving that night, she now understood. Perhaps at that time, Leno had already recognized that it belonged to the Duke's mansion, so he hurriedly took the crossbow back to report. Maybe, he might have thought it was his own doing at the time, so he left in such a hurry. It seems you've recognized it. This is the crossbow used by the mercenaries who abducted you that night. Even now, they don't forget to sow discord between Castell and Board. If I hadn't called them over one by one these days and given them a good beating, the entire Board city would have been turned upside down by them. The old Duke said indignantly. Seemingly tired of speaking, he sat back in his seat, sighed heavily, and rubbed his temples. After a moment, the Duke continued. Castell and Board are of the same root, like brothers. Although one is the main family and the other a branch, the lord and the vassal, as the feudal lord, I have never regarded Castell as an outsider. During the Second Star Moon War, it was I who, along with your grandfather, repelled the invading forces of the fallen Star Kingdom trying to occupy the Castell domain. It was also I who, together with your father, thwarted the Northern Duchy's conspiracy attempt to subvert Castell's authority. At the same time, it was the support of the Castell family for generations of dukes that kept the various nobles in the duchy in check, preventing them from being unruly. And now, difficult times are upon us again, and it's time for us to stand together once more. At this point, the old Duke turned around slowly, his expression dignified and solemn. Without Board, Castell will sooner or later be swallowed by other lords. And without Castell, Board's strength will also be greatly diminished, unable to withstand the pressure from the royal family and other nobles. We are originally one family. Upon hearing the implied implications in Duke Board's words, Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. She slowly raised her head, seeing a pair of resolute blue-gray eyes. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Lady Charlotte. Duke Board's voice became serious. After a series of preludes, he finally expressed his thoughts. Let our two families form an alliance. Castell will eventually choose a marriage partner to consolidate its rule, but I think you also understand that those parasites in the duchy will only consume the declining Castell. Only the Board family has always been the solid support of Castell. Only by uniting can we overcome the current difficulties. Charlotte fell silent. The inevitable would eventually come. Although she knew that the Duke likely wanted to form an alliance with her, when she discovered how determined and inevitable his intentions were, she couldn't help but sigh inwardly. She knew that after this banquet, the Castell family would probably break ties with the Board family. At the same time, she would also completely lose the protection from the Duke's mansion, facing the malice of other nobles. Is it Lord Leno? Charlotte asked. A hint of surprise flashed in the Duke's eyes, seemingly unexpected at the girl's composure. He nodded. Yes. Although Leno is an illegitimate child and has a low background, he has already become a Silver Moon Knight at a young age. He doesn't even use the awakening seed, awakening naturally just like most nobles. I dare guarantee that his potential on the path of the extraordinary surpasses even mine. Although Leno lacks some manners, he is righteous, a true holy knight at heart. With him by your side, you will have nothing to worry about. I believe he will bring you happiness, and with Castell's support, Board will also continue to remain great. This is a win-win situation. The old Duke's expression was sincere. He was indeed sincere, at least from the perspective of Board, because he had already disclosed all the family's difficulties, which was indeed a sincere approach in negotiations. But Charlotte was on the verge of cursing. Win-win my foot, happy my foot. An ordinary girl might believe their nonsense, but she didn't. It sounded nice, but ultimately, wasn't it because the Board family felt they couldn't control the nobles beneath them, so they wanted to strengthen their power with the wealthy Castell? Yes, the situation of the Castell territory is somewhat delicate, but the Duke's mansion's plight is not a secret either. Moreover, the Duke's mansion is not the only choice for Castell, nor is it the best choice. Even if she were to die right away, she would never let a man ride on top of her. Her destiny could only be controlled by herself. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte raised her head, preparing to politely decline with the prepared reasons. But the old Duke suddenly waved his hand to stop her. You don't need to rush to tell me your answer. You can go back and think about it. I know you have concerns, especially about Leno's identity as an illegitimate child. Being an illegitimate child is indeed a stain for the Castell family to accept. But, rest assured, at today's banquet, I will let you see the sincerity of the Duke's mansion first. Charlotte ultimately didn't manage to immediately voice her refusal. It seemed the old Duke had a premonition about her choice and directly blocked her. This made Charlotte speculate about the sincerity the Duke's mansion mentioned. However, the girl didn't care. Regardless of what the Duke's mansion's so-called sincerity was, her answer wouldn't change. Her biggest purpose in attending this banquet was to put an end to the greedy thoughts of these nobles. However, the deep conversation with the Duke made the girl realize how dire the situation of the Castell family really was. It could be said that she was now dancing on a tightrope, with hungry eyes on both sides of the abyss. Back in the main hall of the banquet, which hadn't started yet, the nobles gathered in groups of 3 or 5, chatting quietly. The girl picked up a highball glass filled with milk from the waiter's tray and sat alone in a corner to rest. From the journey from the carriage to entering the Duke's mansion, she couldn't avoid being exposed to the sun, feeling somewhat uncomfortable in her body. The conversation with the Duke also consumed her energy further, and now the girl just wanted to rest. The band from Moon Bay played beautiful music, soothing and melodious. But Charlotte found it noisy, especially when she entered. Those young nobles, excited like animals in heat, gathered around her one after another, showing off their charm like roosters that had taken aphrodisiacs. Smelling the thick perfume intertwined on their bodies, Charlotte felt like she was suffocating. She wasn't in the mood to talk to these peacocks now. Looking at the handsome faces that would immediately light up with excitement when she glanced over, the girl narrowed her eyes slightly, thinking about how to give these energetic guys something to do, to properly trick them, and at the same time, find some fun to relax herself. But at this moment, a graceful and gentle voice suddenly interrupted the young noble's enthusiastic flattery. Gentlemen, continuously disturbing a lady's rest in front of a lady is not gentlemanly behavior. Can't you see the fatigue between the lady's eyebrows? Hearing this voice, Charlotte's heart skipped a beat because she felt the tone and voice of this flirtatious guy were somewhat familiar. The girl raised her head and looked towards the source of the voice, then instantly froze. Behind the young noble stood a man in a black tailcoat, tall and handsome, with extraordinary red hair. He wore a monocle, and in his crimson eyes, there was a faint smile. In the hand adorned with neat white gloves, he held a highball glass filled with red wine. It was none other than the extraordinary person she had seen in the dream world of the blood calling, Sebastian. Chapter 43, Lady of the Night. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Sebastian, how is he here? Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. In that instant, she even had the thought that he might have discovered her true identity and followed her from reality. Of course, she quickly dismissed that thought, because the current her looked and sounded completely different from the Charlotte in the Dark Knight Castle. Not to mention, there was also the shroud of crimson mist back then, making it impossible for him to see her clearly. So, there was only one possibility. He must also reside in Board City. So, do the crimson stars in the blood call represent the distance between me and the real world? Charlotte speculated. Then, she became even more curious about Sebastian's identity in reality. The Duke's Mansion banquet is not a place just anyone can enter. Those who can enter are either nobles recognized in the Board Duchy or distinguished guests, such as some renowned musicians, writers, sculptors, troubadours, wandering knights, or traveling mages. Then, what is Sebastian's identity? Who are you? Looking at the more handsome face than her own, the young nobles around Charlotte showed cautious expressions, like a group of huskies seeing a competitor. However, soon someone noticed the pointed ears hidden in Sebastian's red hair. Pointed ears? Are you an elf? An elf? Charlotte's ears twitched, and she also cast a glance at Sebastian. Elves are a well-known long-lived race in the Miria world, natural extraordinary beings with lifespans nearly 20 times that of humans, usually living close to 1,500 years. They are active in many places on the continent. Almost every mercenary group in Miria has their shadow, and some elves become troubadours honored by nobles. Charlotte had noticed earlier that Sebastian's ears seemed somewhat different, but she didn't expect him to be an elf. Let me introduce myself. I am Sebastian Flameheart, a fire elf from the Moon Goddess Island. Sebastian smiled slightly and gracefully performed an elven courtesy. Sebastian Flameheart, is it you, the president of the Rose Society? A young noble recognized Sebastian's identity instantly. The Rose Society? President? Wait, the underworld boss of the outer city? Charlotte was directly stunned. Then, she witnessed a rather subtle scene. All the young nobles stepped back at once, originally standing in front of Charlotte, but now they were behind her. And their expressions as they looked at Sebastian were either wary or terrified, like a group of cats seeing a husky. What's even more bizarre is that a few young nobles panicked directly and slipped away, running while hunching over, as if covering their groins. Charlotte. What's going on here? What are you doing here, you traitor from the Moon Goddess Island, the scum of the elf clan, dirty rat in the sewer? A son of a count exclaimed harshly. However, Charlotte looked at his trembling voice, feeling that he had somewhat tried to act bravely. Despite being scolded like that, Sebastian didn't get angry at all. Instead, he took a sip of wine, and leaned slightly forward, his handsome face almost touching the terrified face of the Count's son. He leaned slightly to the side, whispered in the other's ear, and then, with a low, mellow voice, said, Count Elton, have you heard that you attended the Drunken Dream Salon in the abandoned city last week? Does the Count know about this, or do you need me to take care of this little problem for you? Sebastian's face wore a gentle smile, his voice slow and soft. However, upon hearing his words, the Count's son shivered directly and plopped down on the ground with a thud. He looked at Sebastian's smiling face in horror as if seeing a terrifying demon, shuffling back a few steps, then covering his lower body and getting up to flee, yelling as he fled. No, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. You, don't come over. Don't come over. The Count's son fled in panic, and Sebastian looked back at the remaining young nobles with a smiling gaze. The remaining nobles all shivered and subconsciously shrunk their bodies under Sebastian's seemingly smiling expression. Miss Charlotte, I suddenly remembered that I have something to do. Let's talk later. I have something too. They stuttered out various excuses, then fled in the face of Sebastian's seemingly smiling expression, leaving no young nobles around the girl in less than a minute. Watching them panic and flee, Sebastian chuckled lightly. They're really unreliable, aren't they? Charlotte. He's here for me. He came specifically for me. Watching Sebastian, who deliberately brought up a conversation topic, Charlotte quickly realized his true intention. What followed was deep vigilance. She knew she had fooled him in the dream world, but that was in the dream. Now it's reality. She was just an ordinary extraordinary person, while the other party had at least reached the second-tier silver moon, and might even be a third-tier blazing sun. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Rumors say that the president of the Rose Society is ruthless and evil. From the reactions of those young nobles just now, it's clear that Sebastian is not a good person. He must have done something to make them so terrified. Charlotte really didn't dare to imagine what would happen if he found out that he had been fooled by her. Why did he come to find me? I shouldn't have been exposed. Or, does he have another purpose in finding me? Thoughts tumbled in Charlotte's mind. However, as an excellent actress, she quickly regained her composure. She tilted her head slightly, revealing a naive and innocent look, her big eyes full of timidity, looking a bit confused, and said, Are you a bad person? Sebastian was directly stunned, apparently not expecting such a question. He turned to look at the girl, seeing a beautiful and tender face. Although she was wearing a mature gown and deliberately wearing various jewelry necklaces to give an older impression, her innocent and pure cheeks could not hide her childish innocence, her pair of deep blue eyes bright and pure, like a starry sky untainted by any pollution. She was still just a naive child. Sebastian almost made this judgment in an instant. At this moment, he even had a hint of doubt about his visit. Would such a childlike person really have anything to do with the resurrected evil god? However, when he thought again that the other party had survived the sacrifice ritual but still remained alive, he quickly suppressed his hesitation. Perhaps ordinary people don't understand, but as a knowledgeable elf, he knew that anyone who could survive such a ritual must be hiding a secret. And from this perspective, the innocent look of the girl made Sebastian suddenly vigilant. As the heir of a major aristocratic family, even if she was well protected, could she still be so naive and innocent after experiencing such things? Thinking like this, Sebastian already had an answer in his heart. He smiled slightly, gracefully took a sip of wine, and said lightly, For those dandies, I should be considered a bad person. Speaking, he looked at the innocent girl again, and his smile gradually became meaningful. As for you, it depends on whether you can answer some questions for me. Oops, I played the role too obviously. Charlotte quickly realized her flaw and felt a bit heavy in her heart. She was about to remedy her answer, but she saw Sebastian suddenly shaking his head. Forget it. I'll come and see for myself. With that, the fire elf suddenly looked serious, and his crimson eyes stared directly at Charlotte. In those ruby-like eyes, it seemed that streams of water were constantly flowing. Spiritual guard, memory, probe. With an emotionless voice, Charlotte felt an immense and irresistible mental force rushing towards her, breaking through her mind in an instant. He wants to probe my memories. Charlotte was shocked and angry. However, just as that terrifying mental force rushed into the girl's consciousness, the gospel of blood in her mind suddenly burst out with crimson light. Charlotte felt her consciousness being pulled back again, returning to the Dark Knight Castle in the dream world. Once again, she became the adult Charlotte, wearing a black divine gown with thorns, sitting high on the blood throne, and looking down at Sebastian in a tailcoat below. This time, there was no crimson mist between them. Under the stairs, Sebastian, holding a glass of red wine, looked confused. He seemed not to have expected that his memory probe would directly bring his consciousness here. And when he raised his head and saw Charlotte, who was almost identical to the Lady of the Night, in his memory, seeing the familiar figure with the mysterious thorn rose pattern on her body, his confusion soon turned into astonishment. The bewildered expression on his face quickly turned into a dumbfounded one. The anger of being impudently probed still lingered in Charlotte's chest, especially when she looked into his eyes. Under the blessing of the gospel, the girl became angry and ashamed, subconsciously blurting out, Get out. Ethereal, melodious, yet with a kind of noble and majestic dignity that cannot be violated. In that instant, Sebastian felt as if thunder had sounded in his mind, and the spiritual guard protecting his soul collapsed in an instant, the whole world collapsed in an instant. Like being hit by a meteorite, he felt his soul suddenly burst, as if countless cracks appeared. The entire spiritual world almost shattered in an instant, and Sebastian was immediately overwhelmed by an irresistible force, kneeling on one knee, unable to help but spit out a mouthful of blood. And when Sebastian raised his head again, his pale face was filled with disbelief, his gaze at the girl full of horror. Lady of the Night. Chapter 44, Lost the Disguise. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Oh no, I lost my disguise. Seeing the shocked expression on Sebastian's face, Charlotte's hand holding the tall cup of milk trembled slightly, and she was in a terrible state. Lady of the Night. She's actually Lady of the Night. On the other side, as Sebastian recalled the mysterious and noble figure and the familiar voice, his wounded soul was almost scared out of its vessel. It all makes sense now. Everything makes sense. In this instant, all of Sebastian's doubts were resolved. The town's guardian bell of the board church is the one that rings for Lady of the Night. The evil god being revived is none other than Lady of the Night. The thorny rose is her holy emblem. And the heir of the Castel family is the sacred vessel she chose to descend upon. Charlotte de Castel isn't someone who caught the attention of a god, she is a divine being walking on the earth. Heavens, what was he just doing? He actually tried to probe Lady of the Night's memories. He actually attempted to pry into God's secrets. Blasphemy, this is blasphemy. Sebastian felt anxious and even had an urge to turn and run. But he knew he couldn't run away because that would only provoke even greater wrath. He forced down his fear, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and with difficulty and slowness, his gaze moved upwards, looking at the young girl sitting on the chair. He didn't meet her gaze directly because he didn't dare, but even so, Sebastian soon noticed more details that he hadn't paid attention to before. The demeanor was similar to Lady of the Night hidden in the crimson mist. The elegance of lifting the tall crystal cup that made him feel like he found an idol. And the rich and transparent red liquid in the crystal cup. Milk. Sebastian froze. Looking at the white liquid in the girl's cup, amidst nervousness, fear, and astonishment, he almost blurted out involuntarily. Do you like drinking milk? And Charlotte, who had just been discovered her identity and was pondering how to respond, almost instinctively replied to this out-of-place question. I'm underage, can't drink alcohol. Sebastian. Charlotte. At that moment, both of them, one feeling guilty for being discovered and the other fearing divine wrath, both fell silent. Under the eerie quiet, no one broke the silence. One didn't know how to approach a topic of conversation as a god, and the other cursed himself for speaking such nonsense. Eventually, it was Sebastian who awkwardly forced out a smile, gracefully and tactfully saying, no wonder it's you. Even though incarnated in an immature vessel, you were still so elegant and wise, emphasizing physical health and the growth of the vessel. Charlotte. She didn't feel physically healthy, she just felt that the tall cup in her hand was a bit awkward. Sebastian's hardcore flattery did not relieve the awkward atmosphere. Until a hoarse and surprised voice came, completely breaking the silence. Sebastian, how did you rascal, manage to sneak in here? Hearing this familiar voice, Charlotte couldn't help but look over and see the black cat Nice, with its tail held high, swaying over. Its cheeks were puffy as if it was still eating something, and behind it was a waiter holding a tray filled with dried fish. Beside it, another acquaintance of Charlotte, the Duke's son Leno. He seemed to be looking for someone, looking somewhat distracted. Upon seeing the beautiful girl in an evening dress, his gaze involuntarily flashed with amazement. But he quickly regained his composure, bowed with a non-standard aristocratic etiquette, and cheerfully said, Miss Charlotte, we meet again. You look truly beautiful today, almost like a descended angel. However, as soon as the greeting ended, the Duke's son shifted his gaze away from Charlotte and began scanning the hall again with an anxious and expectant expression. Clearly, the person he was looking for was not Charlotte, even though she was the undisputed focus of the venue. And his expression just now, perhaps, it seems he was clueless that Duke Board had already arranged a major event that would affect the rest of his life. While Leno was absent-minded, Nice's attention was all focused on Sebastian. Especially noticing Sebastian's kneeling posture, like a submissive knight, its amber eyes almost instantly sharpened. Even Nice itself didn't realize that it almost instantly darted between Charlotte and Sebastian, separating the two. Its fat body didn't affect its speed at all. Swallowing a few mouthfuls of dried fish, Nice raised its tail high, its limbs forming an 8-character stance, appearing vigilant and ready to attack at any moment. What are you doing here? What business do you have with the magnificent, with the beautiful and noble Miss Charlotte? Noticing that it almost let the cat out of the bag, Nice quickly paused and changed its wording. However, when it raised its head, it quickly noticed the crimson bloodstains at the corner of Sebastian's mouth. When did you get injured? Nice was slightly stunned, seemingly bewildered that someone like Sebastian could get injured in a place like Board. Sebastian gracefully stood up, discreetly taking out a neatly folded handkerchief from his pocket, gently wiping away the bloodstains at the corner of his mouth, and casually placing it on the tray carried by a passing waiter, then smiled politely. It's nothing, just a few mouth ulcers lately. Charlotte. Nice. Mouth ulcers my ass. Nice squinted slightly, completely disbelieving Sebastian's words. And when it noticed Sebastian's still respectful demeanor after standing up, and the reverence in his gaze towards the girl sitting behind it, it instantly felt a jump in its heart. Good lord. Did he find out about her identity? Did he just do something disrespectful and get punished by the old monster? Wait a minute, what does this burning gaze mean? Could it be he also wants to join the party? It seemed to realize something. Nice narrowed its eyes, becoming alert in an instant. At the same time, Sebastian, who wiped away the bloodstains, also saw the collar on the neck of the black cat. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Especially the black eagle badge symbolizing the Castel family on the collar. Sebastian's gaze also momentarily focused. A pet collar? From the Castel family? Damn. This lecherous old thing found out Lady of the Night's identity a long time ago? Directly becoming a pet for the Castel family? How shameless. Does it really think it's a real cat? Isn't this too shameless? Clearly, I was the first one summoned by Lady of the Night. Sebastian's smile gradually faded, and he looked at the black cat with a hint of hostility in his eyes. As for whether he really was the first one summoned, he had automatically ignored it. One man and one cat confronted each other, tension rising, unexpectedly igniting a sense of gunpowder in the standoff. Respected lady, this black cat is a complete waste, greedy, lazy, gluttonous, and lecherous, with countless enemies. Please be careful, try to stay away from it, don't be deceived by its appearance. Sebastian smiled slightly at Charlotte, looking down at the black cat with disdain. Meow, Miss Charlotte, this guy is the boss of the gang in the outer city. It's him who sold the materials for the sacrifice to Countess Castel. You can blame him for hanging you on the cross. The black cat Nice showed no fear, coldly retorting. Sebastian. Hearing Nice's words, the smile of this fiery spirit almost froze on his face. Him? Charlotte couldn't help but glance over. Noticing the girl's probing gaze, Sebastian's scalp almost went numb, sweating coldly. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva, forcing out a smile with difficulty. Misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Seeing the other person so cautiously guarded, Charlotte finally felt relieved. Fortunately, although the disguise was lost, the protection and counterattack from Gospel of Blood made the other party completely mistake her for the revived evil god. In that case, she had to continue the act. No problem, it's all in the past. Without that sacrifice, there would be no me today. She took a sip of milk lightly, saying calmly. Hearing the girl's words, Leno sighed slightly, feeling sympathetic and emotional. His gaze toward Charlotte also carried a hint of admiration. Yeah, after experiencing storms, people will eventually grow. The past is gone, Miss Charlotte, the future road is still long. However, the same words heard by Sebastian and Nice had different meanings. The two almost simultaneously had the same thought. Exactly, she successfully descended through that sacrifice. And just at this moment, a commotion suddenly appeared at the entrance of the hall. Almost everyone in the hall stood up almost simultaneously, cheering. Charlotte's heart moved, and she stood up, looking towards the entrance. At the entrance of the hall, several priests and demon hunters followed an old priest with gray hair, dressed in a golden divine robe, entering the venue. Among the team were several acquaintances of Charlotte. Priest Lottie, the dean of the church hospital, Raoul, and the commander of the board demon hunting team, Kara, were among them. Leno's spirits lifted, and his shiny gaze fell directly on the female knight, Kara. Sebastian's expression became serious, taking a step back, seeming not to want to be seen. The high priest is here, Raoul and the others are here too. Knight scratched its chin. Saying that, it looked towards Charlotte, with a slight hesitation. Miss Charlotte. According to the rules, I have to go and pay my respects. Go ahead, no one's stopping you. Charlotte glanced at it. Also, remember what I told you. Don't worry, I promise to deliver the message. Nice patted its chest, then covered the collar on its neck, and rushed towards the priest's team in a flash. However, someone was faster than it. Nobody knew when. The Duke's son Leno had already approached the female knight Kara, enthusiastically greeting her, but he was met with the female knight's expressionless and indifferent face. At this moment, Charlotte's hair stood on end. She seemed to smell the scent of a simp. The feeling was so familiar that it made her heart ache for her past life. The Duke's son Leno and the captain of the demon hunter team, Kara, once served together in a mercenary group, fighting side by side as comrades. Leno has always harbored affection for her. However, Kara has no interest in love matters. She only seeks revenge, wanting to avenge the blood demon cult responsible for the flame demon disaster 10 years ago. For this, she even accepted the invitation of the high priest and joined the demon hunter organization. Sebastian's explanation came from beside her, making Charlotte's heart slightly moved. No wonder every time she saw Kara, Leno always happened to be there. It turns out it was deliberately coincidental. She looked at Sebastian, who was enlightening her, and Sebastian also happened to meet her gaze. Then, this elegant fire elf suddenly, while everyone's attention was focused on the entrance of the hall, directly taking advantage of the misplacement of tables and chairs, kneeling down in a place where no one could see, in front of the girl. He placed one hand on his chest, performing a submissive gesture, his gentle voice filled with reverence and fanaticism. Honorable and beautiful lady. From the moment Sebastian saw you, he knew that you were the only direction in his life. The humble Sebastian is willing to offer you the most fervent loyalty, only hoping to accompany you, follow you forward, and become the most significant strength in your hands. T.N. Don't worry, there is no romance. Chapter 45, Boot Liquor and Green Tea. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. This is a gesture of allegiance? Charlotte, who was very familiar with the etiquette of the Miria world, quickly realized. But what followed was confusion. She knew very well, through the mind reading in the Dark Knight Castle that Sebastian had no intention of participating in the Bloodborne's conflicts. Even if he regarded her as the Bloodborne's evil god, he was only willing to be a temporary servant. But now, seeing the respectful attitude and fervent expression of the other party, it didn't seem like intending to be a temporary servant at all. It looked more like a brainwashed fanatic. What happened in a place she didn't know about? Charlotte was astonished. She couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed the other party's mind, but one thing was clear, the other party must be serious. If not, he could have exposed her on the spot. But Charlotte remained cautious. Even though she believed the other party was serious, she didn't think it was a good time to accept his allegiance. Firstly, there were many people here, and secondly, the blood calling had not yet fully charged. People change for a reason. There is no love without reason, no hate without reason, and no allegiance without reason. There was currently only one slot for blood servant. Although she was already quite interested in Sebastian, she remained calm. She would wait until the blood calling available again, ascertain the other party's true thoughts in the dream world, and then consider his proposal and decide whether to formally sign the blood contract. Being cautious in this world is always a good thing. Of course, Charlotte couldn't blatantly refuse the other party's allegiance. At this time, she had to use the skills she had enjoyed lately. Thinking of this, Charlotte gently raised her tall cup, gracefully took a sip of milk, and glanced lightly at the kneeling Sebastian. Before you pledge your loyalty to me, don't you have anything else to say? Hearing the girl's calm yet suggestive voice, beads of sweat immediately falling on Sebastian's back. The lady of the night is somewhat displeased with me. Indeed, my recent indiscretion probably triggered her displeasure. Sebastian regretted. He was so eager to express his allegiance to make the lady of the night overlook his previous offense, but now, it seemed that what had to come would come. Thinking of this, Sebastian quickly lowered his head and said with a trembling voice. Honorable and beautiful lady, I didn't realize it was you, the great you, so I behaved so rudely. Please forgive Sebastian's recklessness. Regardless of the punishment you give to foolish Sebastian, Sebastian is willing to accept. I only hope that you will leave a corner for Sebastian to serve you under your feet. This guy can really bootlick. Charlotte couldn't help but glance at him, and the tuft of hair on her head twitched slightly. On the surface, she continued to act coldly. Oh, are you implying that it's okay to pry into someone's memories at a birthday party if it's just an ordinary human girl? Sebastian's sweat began to flow again. He swallowed hard, looking fearful, and bowed even lower. No, it's all very rude. It's Sebastian's arrogance, Sebastian's recklessness. Feeling that the timing was about right, Charlotte slowly withdrew her gaze, took a sip of milk, and then said lightly. You were indeed reckless. If I were you, I wouldn't swear allegiance at someone else's birthday party. Hearing this, Sebastian's gaze dimmed. But the girl's tone changed. Seeing how proactive you are, I can give you a chance to prove if you have the qualifications and attitude to be my follower. A follower. Hearing this, Sebastian's eyes almost instantly lit up. Honorable lady, Sebastian is willing to accept any test from you. Please use me as you wish. Charlotte chuckled lightly and said calmly. I've already given you your test. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Sebastian was momentarily stunned. Then, he quickly remembered that the lady of the night was referring to finding the cursed pages. Of course, that's not enough. That's just part of our deal. You have offended me, and I'm not happy about it. As for how to make me happy, it depends on your actions next. Saying this, the girl drank up the milk in her tall cup, elegantly placed it on the nearby table, and then smiled faintly. I allow you to stay by my side temporarily, but you need to fulfill all my needs as much as possible. Some things I won't say on my own, but you need to understand, think, and act on your own. Don't cause any trouble for my identity. I would be very unhappy. After all, I'm just an innocent little girl. She's willing to let me stay by her side. She's willing, although it's only temporary. This is my chance. Sebastian became excited instantly, completely unaware that his pledge of allegiance had turned into an effort to please her to gain her approval. Get up, it's not good to always kneel like this in front of others. Charlotte suddenly reverted to the appearance of an innocent girl, smiling naively. She smiled at me. She told me to get up. She still has me in her heart. I still have a chance. Sebastian's heart was filled with excitement. Yes, honorable and beautiful lady. Call me Charlotte. Yes, honorable and beautiful lady Charlotte. Charlotte. Sebastian stood up, respectfully standing by the girl's side, lagging half a step behind her. And just at this moment, even more enthusiastic noise and cheers came from the entrance of the hall. Duke Board has arrived, under the escort of more than a dozen court nobles. The lord of the duchy, the focus of the banquet, finally arrived at the venue, followed by a young nobleman who seemed absent-minded, the well-known scoundrel in the aristocratic circle, Count Leno. The music of the band became louder, and all the nobles paid their respects to Duke Board. However, the girl noticed that the duke didn't seem too happy, especially when his gaze swept over the empty seats reserved for the kingdom's lords. Obviously, the lords and nobles outside the duchy did not come to this birthday party. The old duke's displeasure was fleeting, quickly replaced by a gentle smile. He first respectfully greeted the high priest surrounded by priests, then turned to the lively nobles on the scene, took a glass of red wine from the steward, drank it in one gulp, and then exclaimed loudly, "For board! For board!" Cheers erupted from the nobles in the hall. The music of the band reached its climax, igniting the atmosphere of the banquet completely. The entire venue was filled with enthusiastic cheers and praise for the duke. It wasn't until Duke Board gently raised his hand and slightly lowered it that the venue gradually quieted down. He smiled slightly and continued, his old voice full of energy. "Honorable High Priest Linus, distinguished guests, thank you very much for attending the old man's birthday banquet. Here, on behalf of the Board family, I express my sincerest gratitude to you all." As soon as he finished speaking, another round of enthusiastic cheers erupted in the venue, with cheers of "For Board" and "Long live Board" echoing one after another. Until the old duke raised his hand again and lowered it slightly, the venue quieted down again. He smiled slightly and continued, "In addition, before the banquet begins, I have an important announcement to make." After saying this, he glanced over the crowd, paused slightly on Charlotte, showing a reassuring look at the girl. Then, he gestured for everyone to quiet down, and with a meaningful look, he said, "Furthermore, I have already communicated with the head of the Castell family. The Castell family will continue to be under Board's protection, as it was in the past and will be in the future. We will share the glory of Board together. I hope everyone understands." Hearing this somewhat ambiguous statement, the entire venue suddenly quieted down. Countless eyes turned to Charlotte, making her instantly the focus of the entire banquet. Charlotte felt a slight sinking in her heart and muttered inwardly, "What an ambiguous statement. He's really a crafty old fox." Chapter 46. My heart already belongs to. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Regarding the legalization of Leno's illegitimate status, although the Duke has never mentioned it, many nobles of the Board Duchy, including Charlotte, already speculated about it. However, legalizing an illegitimate child is one thing, designating them as the heir is another. Even though Count Tulip was once the designated heir of the duchy, and he held that position for over a decade, now, the Duke's words have completely disrupted everyone's plans. Especially towards the end, when he mentioned the Castell family. Though not explicitly stated, the implications were clear, causing a subtle change in the expressions of nobles who had thoughts on the Castell. Could it be, the Castell have already decided to marry into the Duke's family? In an instant, Charlotte once again became the center of attention. All the nobles understand that even with the support of the Holy Court, it's not easy for a legalized illegitimate child to completely control the duchy. The difficulty even surpasses that of Count Tulip. Nobility values bloodline. Under the pressure of divine authority, nobles might not openly oppose, but passive loyalty is their specialty. The best way to destroy a ruler's authority is through passive support, which fundamentally undermines the ruler's power. But if the Castell family's support is obtained, it's different. As the largest and wealthiest noble family in the Board Duchy, once the Castell, who are about to become extinct, completely aligned with the Duke's family, even if the heir changes, the Board family can smoothly navigate through the turbulence of succession. Thus, the choice determining the future of the duchy suddenly fell into Charlotte's hands, or so it seemed. But Charlotte knew it wasn't that simple. The Duke's words, while sounding like he's protecting the Castell, in reality, have pushed Charlotte onto thin ice. As the nominal heir of the Castell family, Charlotte currently has no inheritance of the title, nor any control over the territory and subordinate nobles. At most, she just receives a considerable sum of money from the territory every month. She hasn't even received the money for this month. In this situation, she simply cannot determine the fate of the principality. If she does decide, it can only be after successfully inheriting the title with the support of the duchy. Charlotte knows this is the Duke's way of indirectly telling that he can help her completely control the family estate. At the same time, this is also laying the groundwork for what comes next. His gaze once again fell on the girl, lingering for a long time without shifting, and all the attention of the people also focused on Charlotte. The Duke smiled slightly and continued, "Miss Charlotte, this is my sincerity. The support from the Duke's mansion, and the legalization of Leno's identity, he will become a true noble. On this basis, there is also the entire Board Duchy. How about it? How do you feel about the previous proposal? Once agreed, you will not only be Count Castell but also the future Lady of Board." With these words, all the nobles were stirred up. A marriage proposal. This is a marriage proposal. The Duke of Board unexpectedly proposed a marriage to the Castell at this time. Listening to his father's words, Leno's expression was somewhat unpleasant. He was about to say something, but under the Duke's cold gaze, he held back. The young male nobles were resentful, their gazes towards Leno filled with hostility, while the unmarried noble girls from various families directed their gaze towards Charlotte, their eyes filled with intense envy. In an era of strict hierarchy, for most noble women who cannot choose their marriage partners, nothing is more anticipated than climbing social classes. Despite the wealth of the Castell family, they are only a count, and counts are under the duchy. Not to mention she is not even an inheritor yet, but once she becomes the wife of the future Duke, it not only means the stability of the count title but also signifies becoming the mistress of the duchy, standing on the stage of the entire Crescent Kingdom. For the nobles of the duchy, it is a broader world, signifying entry into the true upper class of the kingdom, truly a great honor. In this situation, what does it matter if there is a legalized illegitimate child? It's more accurate to say that because of the legalized illegitimate child status of the future Duke, he will rely even more on the Castell girl's noble origin to enhance his prestige and suppress other nobles' doubts about his lineage. For the Castell girl, this is a good thing because it means more authority after marriage. Of course, a marriage with the future Duke cannot be a form of joining the wife's family. The Castell family is also destined to become extinct. But so what? Who cares? Does he still want to rely on an underage girl to rejuvenate the family? Sincerity. Such sincerity. From any perspective, the Board family has shown great sincerity in this marriage proposal. Even the most demanding nobles cannot think of any reason for the Castell girl to refuse. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. As for love, the nobles remain very calm. A political alliance is a political alliance, and love is love. If one truly wishes to pursue love, the parties in the marriage alliance can completely turn a blind eye to each other's private lives after producing an heir. From this perspective, within the Board Duchy, no noble can offer better marriage terms than the Duke's family. The young male nobles who had figured everything out looked ashen-faced, filled with regret as if they had already seen their ideal goddess stripped naked and lying on the dirty bed of the illegitimate child. But Charlotte fell into silence. Is that sincerity? That is. But for her, it's worthless. It's even less valuable than marrying into the family. At least with a marital alliance, the initiative lies in her hands. Of course, that's just how she sees it. Marriage? She wouldn't do it even if she died. Charlotte doesn't have time. She'll be 16 in less than a year. Once a marriage contract is formed, after a year when she comes of age, according to the sacred code, the Duke can fully enforce the marriage contract without giving her a chance to delay. Even if she just agrees to the marriage alliance, the Duke's mansion has a reason to intervene in Castell's affairs. The reason is simple. The girl hasn't completely controlled the family. The Duke can entirely use the pretext of helping the girl control the family and cleaning up the parasites. Noble and righteous, without fault. As for Leno's personal feelings during the marriage process, from his recent performance, it's clear that under the authority of the Duke of Board, it's meaningless. It's obvious the Duke has bigger ambitions. He not only wants Leno to successfully inherit the duchy, to glorify the family, but also wants to legitimately and reasonably swallow everything from Castell. At the same time, Charlotte also realizes the Duke's other intention. No, rather it was a threat. Accepting the marriage alliance means accepting sincerity, successfully inheriting the territory, and becoming the mistress of the duchy. But if she doesn't accept, it's a direct slap in the face to the Brady family. If that happens, it also means rejecting the protection of the Board family, and the Duke's mansion will turn a blind eye to the actions of other nobles towards Castell. By then, Castell will probably become the bait that feeds the nobles of the duchy, in order for the nobles to obtain support for Leno's inheritance of the duchy. The fate of the young girl is likely to be quite tragic. And in the division of the Castell family, it is undoubtedly the Duke's mansion, which is the most powerful, that will take the biggest share. Nobles stand under the holy light, accepting the blessings of the gods, draped in splendid attire. But at the same time, nobles also hide the world's most barbaric and primitive darkness under their clothing. Accepting the marriage alliance means accepting blessings, but refusal will bring darkness. This is not only an extremely sincere marriage proposal, at the same time, it's also a threat hiding malice. In such a situation, for the Castell family heir who is difficult to protect, there is no choice. However, is it really so? Under the gaze of everyone, only the girl in the white dress smiled brightly. That innocent smile was like a spring breeze, rushing through the hearts of every noble, making everyone who saw it unable to help but feel happy, unable to move their gaze away from her enchanting appearance. Just as Charlotte pinched her skirt and gracefully bowed towards the Duke of Board, her voice sweetly said, "Your Grace, thank you very much for your kindness." Seeing the obedient girl, the Duke of Board showed a satisfied smile. But Charlotte's tone suddenly changed. Just as she slowly raised her head, she looked past the Duke, towards the Archbishop on the side. More accurately, she looked towards the old dean of the hospital beside the Archbishop, Raoul, and the black cat, Nice, next to Raoul. Meeting Charlotte's gaze, Nice nodded slightly, giving the girl a reassuring look. And Raoul smiled slightly, under the Archbishop's discreet hint, revealing an encouraging smile. At that moment, Charlotte's lips curved up slightly, her pure blue eyes carrying a childlike eagerness and a hint of mischievousness. With her cheeks slightly flushed, appearing shy and timid, her voice was soft and sweet, and her expression seemed to carry innocent joy as she looked at the old Archbishop. But Charlotte's heart has already found its belonging. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's gaze focused entirely on the old Archbishop, who was old enough to be the girl's grandfather, their expression strange. Raoul's face darkened, unable to help but twitch his mouth. The smile on the old Duke's face froze instantly. Chapter 47. I shall dedicate myself to God. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Quiet. A complete silence. As Charlotte looked at the old priest ahead of her and shyly confessed her allegiance, the entire banquet fell into an eerie silence. You, Castell, do you know what you're saying? He's a priest, and an old one at that. Are you out of your mind? A young nobleman widened his eyes and couldn't help but exclaim. Upon hearing his words, the girl also widened her eyes, her azure blue eyes filled with puzzlement and disbelief, her slightly flushed cheeks tinged with embarrassment. Your Grace, what are you saying, Sir Yale? That's quite impolite. After speaking, Charlotte looked ahead again. She clasped her hands together, her expression devout and sincere, her gentle and innocent voice filled with the simplest aspirations and fervor. What I mean is, my heart has long belonged to the great God, to the supreme divine. Seeing the girl glance at him again, Raoul twitched his eye. However, when his peripheral vision swept towards the wall behind him, he suddenly felt a stir in his heart and quickly made way without a sound. Charlotte's gaze, however, remained unchanged. As the nobles followed the girl's gaze and looked carefully, they discovered that she was not looking at the old Archbishop Raoul, but rather at the mural behind Raoul. More accurately, it was a religious mural depicting the god Harold creating a new world after the Great Flood. The young nobleman who had tried to stop the girl was immediately dumbfounded, his face turning red in an instant, wishing he could find a hole to crawl into. Meanwhile, Charlotte made the sign of the cross in front of her chest in a standard manner. With a happy and devout expression, she reminisced. That night, when I encountered such a thing, I was really frightened, and afraid, and desperate. It was the knights of the church who rescued me, bringing light to me in the darkness. When I was in the church hospital, Sir Raoul and Lady Lottie would accompany me and chat with me every day. In the process of communicating with them, in my confusion, I deeply felt the greatness and sanctity of the god. I think, it must be because the Castell family has committed too many unforgivable sins, so as the heir, I have suffered such a terrible calamity. However, even so, God is still willing to forgive me, still willing to accept me, still willing to save me. After being discharged, I would communicate deeply with the priests every day, discussing the teachings of our Lord. And with deeper understanding, I increasingly feel the majesty of our Lord and the vastness of his divine radiance. From that time on, the black and white world had new colors. I saw the light, I saw the future, I saw my true belonging. My heart has long belonged to the great divine. Saying this, the girl bowed slightly towards the god Harold depicted on the mural, her childish voice filled with reverence and sincere gratitude. Praise be to the divine. The light of the crystal chandelier shone on her, making her look dreamy and colorful. The beautiful girl in the white dress appeared devout like a celestial angel bowing to her Lord. Seeing this sacred scene, the priests were also moved, showing expressions of reminiscence, as if recalling their first worship under the divine light, that kind of inner longing and awe, piety, and fervor. The elderly priest sighed slightly, extending his hand as well and drawing the sign of the cross in front of his chest. Praise be to the divine. The other priests also followed suit, drawing the holy emblem and speaking with devout and firm voices. Praise be to the divine. The nobles fell silent. Watching the priest show signs of reminiscence under the girl's influence, seeing the pure and flawless eyes of the girl and her happy and satisfied smile, although feeling extremely absurd, many couldn't help but have one thought. She is serious. And many more nobles, who had been paying attention to the girl who had experienced the bloodborne incident at the Castell Manor, fell into contemplation. After recalling, they did find many details. After being rescued, Charlotte had indeed been quite enthusiastic about various activities of the church, participating fully in worship and various religious ceremonies at the church every day. Even after returning home, she still spent a lot of money inviting priests to the estate. These things were not secrets and could be verified with a little effort. The Duke of Board frowned. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. He glanced at the nobles below, and an old count immediately understood, stepping forward and looking solemnly at the praying girl. Miss Castell, are you serious? Please don't forget, you are the heir of Castell. If you choose to join the church and become a priest, it means becoming an ascetic, unable to marry or inherit the land. That means you will voluntarily relinquish your inheritance. Upon hearing the old count's words, Charlotte smiled slightly, gracefully bowing. Count Gaston, thank you for your reminder. I do intend to join the church and indeed intend to dedicate everything to the divine, but I have not forgotten my duty as a member of the Castell family. The old count frowned. Do you mean you want to become a noble priest who doesn't serve in the church? But forgive me for being blunt, noble priests can still marry, so that's not a reason for you to refuse Duke's proposal. Hearing the count's words, Charlotte looked apologetic. I apologize, Count Gaston, I didn't make myself clear. What I meant was that I intend to dedicate everything to our great lord, not only myself but also the land I am about to inherit. As we all know, although the northern duchy successfully expelled the Orc tribe, the entire country is still in a state of religious confusion and needs the divine to bring light to them. But in the north, our lord has always lacked sufficient power. I want to contribute to our lord. I am a member of the Castell family, so I must shoulder the responsibility of inheriting the family. But equally, in order to dedicate everything to our lord, I will not marry in the future. I will live for the subjects in my limited life, be loyal to the lord, be a loyal subject of Castell, and fulfill the responsibilities and obligations of Castell. At the same time, I will fulfill the responsibility of a devout believer, spreading the radiance of our Lord to the north as much as possible. I promise that when I return to the kingdom of our Lord in the future, I will dedicate everything to the Lord. The divine flag will replace the eagle flag and fly over Castell. Listening to the girl's words, the nobles in the hall all changed their expressions. Are you saying you want to offer Castel's territory to the church? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The king will never agree. This violates the provisions of the sacred code. The old count said angrily. Other nobles also echoed, either rebuking, cursing, or accusing, but they all said the same thing, that what the girl wanted to do was illegal and unacceptable. It wasn't until a solemn voice sounded that everyone quieted down. Why not? It was the high priest who spoke. This old man, always with a kind smile, the highest religious figure in the Board duchy, for the first time, put away his smile. He glanced faintly at the angry nobles and slowly said, the sacred code indeed stipulates that the church cannot encroach on noble land. But it does not stipulate that devout believers cannot dedicate their land to the church. Furthermore, that is a matter for the future. Even if the church obtains land, it is only to establish a theocratic barony, not to annex them and become part of the ecclesiastical state. The theocratic barony still pledges allegiance to the Lord, still belongs to the duchy, and even the kingdom as a whole. Do you all forget? Among the 12 duchies under the Crescent Kingdom, 3 of them are theocratic duchies. The voice of the high priest was gentle and calm. The angry nobles fell into silence collectively. Their eyes fell on the sacred girl, and for a moment, they couldn't be sure whether she had truly become a fervent devotee of the divine, or was just using the church as a shield. All right, let's continue the banquet. These are all matters for the future. Today's protagonists are our Duke and Lord Leno. I haven't performed the sacred ceremony for Lord Leno yet. The High Archbishop smiled faintly and said gently, performing the sacred ceremony is a sacred ritual that every noble must undergo when they come of age, representing the recognition of their status by the divine. For illegitimate children, it also represents the legalization of their status. Seeing the smiling High Archbishop, the old Duke's expression became ugly for the first time. Chapter 48, Being Young is Really Something. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. After hearing the insinuating words of the high priest, a cold gleam flashed in the eyes of Duke Bord. However, he quickly regained his composure and restored his faint smile. Although the smile seemed quite forced. He realized that he had been played by the high priest, but he couldn't react rashly. The legitimization of Leno's illegitimate status still required the church's approval, and he couldn't afford to fall out with the church now, as it would completely disrupt his plans. He knew, perhaps the high priest also understood this, which is why he took the opportunity to support the Castel girl. The high priest's intention was actually quite simple, to exchange Castel's future territory as a religious vassal for the legitimization of the illegitimate child in the support of the church. This was a transaction, an unexpected transaction. This was not the result the old Duke wanted. However, this time he had no choice. The old Duke's gaze shifted subtly between the fervently beautiful girl, the respectful and obedient old priest Raoul, and the always smiling high priest, who seemed like a kind old grandfather. In his heart, he was puzzled. Who exactly, who proposed this despicable and cunning idea? What perfect timing to completely disrupt his plans. The old Duke didn't believe that this plan was proposed by the young Castel girl. After all, there was nothing in it for her. Leaning towards the church wouldn't bring much benefit to the girl, at most just temporary protection, and what the church could offer, he believed he could offer as well, and even more and better. Making such a choice seemed more like the girl didn't trust them, so she sought refuge with the church, or was it truly for faith? Thinking of this, the Duke narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't think a canary long kept in a cage would be capable of such deep scheming. Most likely, she was manipulated. He also believed he was not unkind to the Castel family. If the girl behaved and obeyed, he was truly planning to make her the mistress of Bord. After all, Leno needed a noble wife to raise his stain. But now, everything was out of control. After much thought, the old Duke felt that it was more likely that the girl was deceived by the church's priests. It must be those old foxes taking advantage of the young and ignorant Castel heir, wanting to expand the church's territory through this. With such thoughts, the deep gaze of Duke Bord soon fell on the two priests. He smiled faintly but clenched his fist slightly under his sleeve, taking a deep breath and suppressing his anger. The old Duke's gaze once again fell on Charlotte. But there was much more indifference in his eyes. He smiled slightly and said to the girl, the divine light protects us. Although it's regrettable, since Lady Charlotte has made her decision, as devout believers, we naturally have to respect it. Of course, people's minds always change, especially when they're young. A year's time is full of variables. If Lady Charlotte changes her mind in the future, the doors of the Bord family will still be open to you, and we will always be your strong support. With that, the old Duke looked again at the high priest on the side and nodded slightly. Your Excellency High Priest, can we begin the sacred ceremony for Leno? The response from the Duke pleased the high priest greatly. He smiled and nodded. Of course, Lord Leno is a true holy knight. It is only right for him to return to the embrace of Bord and restore his deserved glory. Thus, the deal was reached, at least on the surface. Next was the agreed upon process. Accompanied by ethereal hymns, and bathed in divine light, the high priest performed the sacred ceremony for Leno, who knelt on one knee. However, the atmosphere was not particularly warm. The protagonist, Leno, didn't seem particularly pleased. He seemed preoccupied and his gaze couldn't help but glance towards the direction of the church several times. The nobles had various expressions, and some had already begun to show signs of distraction. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Although the old Duke was smiling, his smile had never changed, and there was a chill in his eyes. Only the beautiful Castel girl, with a devout expression, silently walked to the front of the nobles, her face full of fervent yearning under the holy light. As the sacred ceremony ended, the high priest declined the nobles' invitations, citing discomfort, and retired to a side hall to rest. The birthday banquet continued. Charlotte's declaration of faith seemed like a little episode, apparently not affecting the progress of the banquet. But even the dullest nobles could sense that the atmosphere of the birthday banquet had worsened. And with this episode, the flies buzzing around Charlotte disappeared as well. Although some young noble males still gazed at her eagerly, eager to try their luck, they were soon stopped by their elders. The Duke might be on equal footing with the high priest, but these nobles are not. Just as the Castel heir finished declaring that she would dedicate everything to the church and never marry, someone came to vie for her affection. It would be a direct challenge to the church. Sebastian, who had infiltrated the birthday party, was itching to come over and flatter the girl with a few words, but he shrunk back under Charlotte's cold glance. He hadn't forgotten Charlotte's words. He couldn't afford to cause trouble for her in her current position. But he was genuinely curious and excited about the girl's choice. The actions of the gods are never without purpose. The great lady of the night decided to join the Holy Court, but why? Madame Anna said that the decline of the Bloodborne is due to the decisive role played by the Holy Court. Could it be, Lady of the Night is laying the groundwork for revenge against the Holy Court in the future? No wonder she's such a great presence returning from ancient times. Just as she's revived, she's already focused on the most powerful church in this world as the start of her far-reaching layout. Returning to the kingdom of the Lord. Hey, I'm afraid when that time comes, it will be the great Lady of the Night who returns to the throne, ruling over Myria. Who returns to whose kingdom? It's really hard to say. Sebastian's gaze was intense, filled with excitement. Ironically, he never wanted to be involved in the struggles between the gods, but now, he was excited to be drawn into the competition among true gods. He could feel that he was about to witness a great history being made. No one disturbed Charlotte, and she enjoyed the delicacies of the banquet leisurely. After receiving the approval of the church, she was quite satisfied, finally resolving a dilemma that had been troubling her for days. In fact, the idea of joining forces with the church had been in Charlotte's mind since the attempt on her life. No force was more suitable for dealing with the scheming duke and the subtle disputes among nobles than the church, which transcended the secular world. Moreover, she had been deeply affected by her conversations with old priest Raoul. The old priest was like a lighthouse in her heart, guiding her toward the direction of faith. Perhaps in the beginning, she was just using the church as a shield, but gradually, her belief became firmer. The truth, it was like a seed planted in her heart, and it was growing silently. As for the young noble males who had their eyes on her, she ignored them completely. She didn't have the time or interest to deal with those foppish and shallow people. The only person she had ever wanted to impress was now gone. Under the watchful eyes of the nobles, the beautiful Castell heir left the banquet hall quietly, leaving behind only an indelible impression on the nobles. She disappeared into the night, heading towards the side hall where the high priest was resting. The banquet continued late into the night, but the dazzling fireworks outside the window couldn't dispel the faint chill that permeated the hall. The high priest's expression remained calm, but his eyes revealed a trace of doubt. His gaze shifted from the door where the Castell girl had left to the side hall where she was headed. He wasn't worried about the girl's safety. After all, she was under the protection of the holy light. What he was worried about was the future. The future was always full of variables, and the girl's choice tonight had opened up too many possibilities. Too many possibilities that made him uneasy. Even with his wisdom and foresight, he couldn't predict what would happen next. And that was what worried him the most. After all, the most terrifying thing in this world was the unknown. Chapter 49, The Accused Thorn Rose. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. After leaving the side hall and returning with the help of the maid to change into another set of backup formal dresses, Charlotte finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although the high priest was very kind, very gentle, and his attitude was very friendly, for some reason, Charlotte always felt uneasy when she was with him. This feeling was completely different from when she was with the old priest, Raoul. Charlotte had spent a lot of time with Raoul at the church hospital, but she never felt this way. Perhaps it was because the high priest was a high-ranking person, which made this puny bloodborne feel intimidated. Or maybe it was because of his invitation for her to drink milk, which subconsciously reminded her of the crazy old lady at home, triggering a bit of PTSD. Anyway, after leaving the side hall, Charlotte felt much more relaxed, and her whole body felt much lighter. The rest of the banquet was not very meaningful. The girl, having tasted various delicacies, was already full, and she used the excuse of feeling unwell to skip the latter part of the dance party. In fact, even if Charlotte had attended, with the declarations made in the first half, it was unlikely that any young noble would dare to invite her to dance for fear of being misunderstood by the church. If anyone dared to invite her, it would probably only be the Duke himself and the high priest. But the old Duke was quite old, and he probably couldn't bear to lose face, and the high priest had also gone to rest. Sebastian, on the other hand, looked on eagerly from a distance, obviously wanting to do something, but after some hesitation, he eventually obediently became invisible in the corner. Charlotte was quite satisfied. This guy was still sensible. Now that no one dared to approach her, if the president of the Rose Society came over, it would be obvious that something was amiss. With no one inviting her, Charlotte was happy to be alone and ran to the outdoor viewing platform to enjoy the breeze. Anyway, she hadn't danced any social dances before. Even in her original memories, due to age and limited outings, she didn't learn much. It was the black cat, Nice, who had somehow come over again. Its attitude was surprisingly enthusiastic, like a clingy cat, bringing milk for the girl and fetching fruit for her. Weren't you chatting and bragging with Dean Raoul and the others? Why did you come to find me again? The girl looked at Nice strangely. Meow, what are you saying? You are my current master. After finishing the church's business, of course, I had to come back to you. Nice said righteously. Charlotte nodded slightly, her gaze sliding over the crowd. Where are Dean Raoul and the others? They've already left. There's another case at the church hospital, and Kara went with them. Nice said. Captain Kara, has something happened again? Charlotte's heart stirred at the thought of Knight Captain Kara's identity. Yeah, just when things quieted down for less than 2 weeks, there's another blood demon cult case. Nice sighed. Blood demon cult case? Where? Charlotte's raised goblet paused in midair. It's a household in the outer city, a fallen noble family. The details aren't very clear, but it's said that almost everyone was wiped out, and 3 daughters went missing. Only one servant survived and is being treated at the church hospital. Nice said solemnly. Wiped out, missing. Charlotte's gaze slightly hardened. She waited for Nice to continue, but found that the other party didn't continue, instead looking at her with a hesitant expression. Charlotte felt somewhat strange, but soon understood, her face darkening. You're not thinking of asking me if this has anything to do with me, are you? Cough, cough, how could that be? You have a grudge against the blood demon cult. It's just. Nice stammered. Charlotte's expression turned cold. Spit it out. Swallowing a gulp of saliva, Nice said. At the scene, there's your symbol. Symbol? Charlotte paused, but soon she reacted. Thorn Rose? Nice nodded. Charlotte frowned. She knew that both Nice and Sebastian regarded her as the resurrected evil god, and they even considered Thorn Rose as her symbol. Although it was just a pattern she casually copied from carved furniture, combined with the personal information in the gospel, the Thorn Rose had indeed become her symbol and established a mysterious connection with her. Charlotte even suspected that if she truly became a god one day, this pattern might actually become a genuine symbol. And now, this symbol appeared at the scene of a bloodborne incident, which was somewhat intriguing. Is it a sacrifice formation? The girl asked. No, it's not. This time, it's different from the incident at Castell Manor. It's more similar to the other blood demon cult cases in the past 6 months. They all involve killing others and the disappearance of underage girls. The church suspects that the blood demon cult has never given up and intends to continue summoning the flame demon. Just that, this time, the symbol left at the scene changed from the blood demon cult's emblem to Thorn Rose. Nice said. After speaking, it hesitated for a moment and looked at the girl. Miss Charlotte, do you think the blood demon cult has also discovered your resurrection and is deliberately testing it? Discovered my resurrection? No, that was just a piece of furniture pattern. However, considering that even Sebastian and Nice regarded her as a god of evil, perhaps the blood demon cult also thought that Borde had resurrected a god related to the bloodborne, so they took action. Thinking of this, Charlotte's expression gradually became serious. The blood demon cult probably did come for her, or rather, they came for the existence symbolized by Thorn Rose. However, she didn't know what the other party's purpose was. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Regardless, considering the strange connection formed by Thorn Rose's symbol with herself, Charlotte had a feeling that she couldn't ignore this matter. Is the incident located in the outer city? Charlotte pondered, thinking of a good candidate to investigate the matter. I see, I'll send someone to investigate this matter. The girl nodded lightly, saying calmly. Nice looked somewhat puzzled. Send someone to investigate? Do you have other manpower in the outer city? But soon, it realized something and almost instantly jumped up. Wait, you don't intend to let Sebastian investigate, do you? Great Miss Charlotte, that guy Sebastian is Borde's most infamous underworld leader. He's full of secrets. This guy, not only betrayed the Loon Island but also offended some major forces in the dark. He's nothing but trouble. T.N. Moon Goddess Island to Loon Island. Moreover, back then, he was the one who was responsible for you to be hung on the cross. Charlotte gave Nice a cold glance, and it shut its mouth, not continuing the second half of its sentence. Meanwhile, the girl took a sip of milk and calmly said. Everyone has secrets. He has his, and I have mine. Saying this, she looked at Nice again, her gaze meaningful. So, do you not hide any secrets? Me? Nice paused for a moment, then its eyes immediately became evasive as it looked elsewhere. Meow, what are you talking about? What secrets could I possibly have? I'm just a little cat who can speak and perform some small tricks. Meow 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 tilde. Oh, small tricks, referring to contract magic and dark summoning magic, perhaps? Charlotte glanced at it. Nice instantly felt guilty. All right, speak up. As a big shot of the church, how did you meet Sebastian? And how long have you known each other? The girl smiled at the black cat. As she looked at the girl's radiant smile, Nice's scalp instantly went numb. Cough, probably, it's been a long time. At first, I think we met at a banquet. Poor Nice completely failed to realize that it had intended to pry into the girl's secrets, ask about the bloodborne incident, and also inquire about how she knew Sebastian. The result was that it found itself being interrogated instead. Forget it, if you don't want to say, then don't. Seeing the stuttering black cat, Charlotte didn't press further. She lightly tapped her high goblet, implying something as she said, "In the future, you can speak when you're ready to. All right, I'm a bit tired now, go find other pretty ladies to cling to." With that, the girl issued her dismissal. Nice. Its expression gradually became awkward. But as it looked at the girl's indifferent expression, it quickly realized something and felt conflicted again. Nice understood Charlotte's implication. Only when it could honestly talk about its own affairs would the girl truly accept it, rather than just treating it as a servant bound by contract. Nice hesitated. After a moment of hesitation, it sighed and respectfully bowed to Charlotte. "Great Mistress Charlotte, as you said, everyone has their own secrets, and Nice also has its own difficulties. However, since we have a contract, Nice naturally cannot betray you. So, Nice will take its leave for now." Watching the black cat's departing figure, Charlotte sighed softly. It seemed that there were more secrets on Nice than she had imagined. To completely subdue this fellow, it seemed she still had a long way to go. The Duke's birthday banquet continued into the late night. After the banquet ended, the Duke's mansion tried to retain the guests, having already prepared guest rooms for those who wished to stay. However, after so much had happened, Charlotte didn't feel like staying at the Duke's mansion any longer. She politely declined the invitation and chose to return to Castell Manor. Upon seeing her master, the old servant, Quasimodo, seemed hesitant, as if he had many questions to ask. Charlotte's heart stirred, guessing that it was probably related to her declaration at the banquet. Presumably, by now, rumors must have already spread throughout the Duke's mansion. However, in the end, the old servant didn't ask anything but instead busied himself with preparing the carriage. Late at night, the bustling and lively Board City became incredibly quiet, devoid of the daytime clamor. The carriage traveled through the darkness, heading towards the western district. Nice lay in the corner of the carriage, sound asleep, occasionally smacking its lips and smiling in its sleep, as if it was having a good dream. Meanwhile, Charlotte leaned against the window, enjoying the moonlight outside. She felt a bit thirsty, perhaps due to the night's influence, and her bloodlust was beginning to rise again. However, at this moment, the carriage suddenly slowed down, and Quasimodo, who was driving, tapped on the window. "What's wrong?" Charlotte's heart stirred. "Master." Quasimodo's expression was serious as he leaned back slightly and whispered through the window. "There's a carriage following us from behind." Chapter 50, Unlucky Stalkers. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Somebody is following? Charlotte felt a stir in her heart. She opened the slit in the curtain of the rear window and looked out. Sure enough, she saw a black carriage trailing behind in the night. Closing her eyes to sense with her bloodborne perception, she opened them again with a light chuckle and shook her head slightly. "No worries, let them follow." Quasimodo hesitated, but after a glance at the composed expression of his master in the carriage, he nodded and urged the carriage to speed up. The carriage continued on its way. After turning the corner and leaving the eastern district, the sounds of fierce fighting came from behind the carriage. There were cries of surprise, screams of pain, and the mournful whinnies of horses. Faintly, one could feel a powerful supernatural presence, like a raging torrent and devastating tsunami. The mere residual magic and pressure made people tremble in fear. Quasimodo shivered slightly, instinctively wanting to turn back, but he heard his master's calm voice. "Don't mind them, keep going." The girl's voice was not loud, but it seemed to carry a reassuring power. Thinking that his master had awakened supernatural powers, Quasimodo nodded understandingly, took a deep breath, and continued to drive the carriage. The sounds of battle gradually faded away and the night returned to tranquility. Quasimodo couldn't help but look back, and there were no more trackers behind the carriage. In the carriage, the beautiful girl lazily leaned against the window, one hand supporting her smooth chin as she admired the moonlight, while the other played with the empty goblet. It seemed she hadn't been bothered by what just happened and had anticipated the outcome. Seeing her calm and composed, as if everything was under control, a sense of indescribable awe gradually rose in Quasimodo's heart. He felt that his young mistress had become more mature and mysterious since that disastrous night. She had her own judgment and her own thoughts, and it was very likely she had her own power in secret. Quasimodo didn't know how his young mistress did it, but nobles who wielded supernatural powers were mysterious and powerful in the eyes of ordinary people. He had wanted to ask the young lady why she had turned to the church, but Quasimodo dismissed the thought. He was a servant, and the young lady was the master. Although she was not yet an adult, the young lady was gradually maturing and had the ability and judgment of a master. He didn't need to ask anything more. He just needed to trust his mistress completely and carry out her orders unconditionally. Quasimodo's expression became more respectful and obedient, and his hunchback gradually straightened. Meanwhile, sitting in the carriage, the girl pondered whether she could prepare a hidden compartment in the carriage for blood bags in the future. She glanced at Quasimodo, the servant driving the carriage, pretending to be calm, and her proficiency in low-level majesty magic inexplicably increased a bit. Wondering if the old servant had imagined something just now, Charlotte scrutinized the inheritance tree in her consciousness and decided to quickly raise her proficiency in low-level majesty magic after returning, trying to advance to the first-tier starry sky as soon as possible. There was no other way. The recent encounter was different from any previous crisis. The people who targeted her this time were truly at the level of starry sky. The church can help me confront the pressure from the Duke and the nobles openly, but privately, I need to have the strength to counter the hidden knives. A promise of the future and the church's protection won't completely deter others from coveting. It will only make their actions more covert, seeking out my weaknesses. I need to quickly raise the proficiency of majesty magic to perfection and start advancing to the level of starry sky. It's best to train the servants to improve proficiency in majesty magic. Using nobles to improve proficiency is not effective. The gains from today are not as good as training the maids in the house for half an hour on a normal day. The young noblemen are a little better. My charm effect is good, but they always surround me, looking at me with such hungry eyes. It's really nauseating. However, the servants at home already respect me enough under the majesty magic, and the training effect is getting worse. With 19 servants, maintaining the normal operation of the manor is barely enough, but to take care of all aspects of the manor, more are needed, especially those with less work experience. At least double the number. Maybe tomorrow I can personally go to the outer city to select some new people. In addition, I can let Sebastian find some reliable first-tier extraordinary to serve as the manor's guards. Sitting in the carriage, Charlotte contemplated. Although Sebastian was still under consideration as a blood servant, she had already begun to consider how to leverage the advantage of being a Rose Society insider. It was strange that even Quasimodo could help improve her proficiency in majesty magic, but Sebastian, who was like a lapdog, couldn't. This puzzled Charlotte considerably. The journey was safe from then on. Nothing unusual happened until she returned to Castell Manor. Under the service of the maids, Charlotte changed out of her gown, washed up, and put on a simple black dress. Instead of going straight to bed, she went to the backyard of the manor and dismissed all the servants. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. In the night, the trees in the garden rustled under the cool breeze. The girl stood in front of the stairs, elegantly holding a goblet, took a sip of the animal blood she had prepared in advance, and looked into the distance with her eyes turning from azure to crimson. Come out, I'm home. As soon as she finished speaking, a blurry figure emerged from the darkness and appeared in front of Charlotte in an instant. Even though she was mentally prepared, Charlotte was still startled and almost dropped the goblet in her hand. Great and beautiful lady of the night, your humble servant Sebastian is always ready to offer his heart and loyalty to you. In front of the girl, Sebastian, the fire elf, dressed in a black tailcoat with a single eyepiece and white gloves, elegantly bowed, his expression reverent and fanatical. Hearing the embarrassing name, Lady of the Night, she casually chose for herself. Charlotte's mouth twitched slightly. Call me Charlotte. Yes, honorable and beautiful Lady Charlotte. Thank you for granting Sebastian the honor of calling you by your true name. Sebastian bowed gracefully once again. Charlotte. Helplessly ignoring Sebastian, who behaved like an overenthusiastic golden retriever, she looked past him. There, 4 unconscious extraordinaries lay twisted and contorted on the ground, stacked together like a pile of bricks. Obviously, Sebastian had done the fighting behind the scenes. He had been following all along, not deliberately avoiding Charlotte, and had even exposed his presence when Charlotte was investigating. So, Charlotte hadn't paid any attention to the stalking at all. She looked at the stalkers Sebastian had caught, and among them, she recognized one swollen face as that of a familiar person, the leader of the demon hunter, Chatham. Charlotte. Noticing the girl's gaze, Sebastian quickly stepped aside, his smile slightly forced. He glanced at the girl with a strange expression, then looked back at the 2 blood cultists lying on the ground, one of whom was groaning and seemed to be waking up. Sebastian instinctively kicked him hard again, knocking him unconscious once more. Cough, it's okay, he can sleep a little longer now. Seeing the girl's corner of the mouth twitching, Sebastian explained somewhat guiltily. Charlotte. Take care of it yourself and don't cause me trouble, including their medical expenses. She said coldly. Understood, understood, I'll send them back right away. Sebastian nodded like a chick pecking rice. After that, he kicked hard each of them again, and in an instant, he met the girl's strange gaze. He quickly chuckled and explained. Let them sleep a bit more deeply, so they won't wake up too early. It's okay, I'll cover the medical expenses. Charlotte. She suddenly felt like she had summoned a weirdo. Apologizing silently to the unlucky Captain Chatham in her heart, Charlotte adjusted her expression. Looking at the other 2 blood cultists lying unconscious on the ground, her expression became serious. I have something for you to do. Chapter 51, The Extravagant Nobleman. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Is it about tracking down the blood demon cult? Those bastards dared to use your holy symbol after committing evil deeds, unforgivable. Watching the slightly stern girl, Sebastian exclaimed indignantly. Charlotte looked at him unexpectedly. You're quite well informed. Sebastian proudly lifted his chin. Honorable Lady Charlotte, in the outer city, no one has more information than us in the Rose Society. Charlotte nodded slightly. The Rose Society had considerable influence in the outer city, so what he said was not wrong. If it weren't for this, she wouldn't have asked him to do this task, nor would she have planned to personally go to the outer city tomorrow. The situation in the outer city was extremely complex. Without the covert cooperation of the Rose Society, going there as a coveted beautiful heiress could easily lead to trouble. All right, take them downstairs, and also investigate the secrets of these 2 blood cultists. Tell me the results tomorrow. Charlotte glanced at the 2 people who had just been kicked several times by Sebastian while he spoke, controlling the urge to twitch her mouth, and said calmly. She hadn't intended to personally investigate these 2 newly embraced free mercenaries. It's not that she didn't want to investigate, but her strength was too weak to handle it. Even if Sebastian or Nice could seal the powers of the 2, Charlotte was worried that the blood demon cult might leave some kind of trap on them. Embraced bloodborn with mediocre strength were generally weaker than their embracing parent, so these 2 mercenaries, who had reached the first tier starry sky, likely had bloodborn behind them with strength reaching the second tier silver moon. Not to mention, if something happened, it would be easy for her to lose face in front of Sebastian and Nice, downgrading her persona. Right now, she was a revived evil god in the eyes of the 2. To maintain her persona, it was better to be cautious. So, Charlotte simply handed it over to Sebastian. It was convenient and also a way to test his abilities. Presumably, the boss of an underground gang should be quite skilled at these things, right? All right, your humble servant Sebastian will do his best to fulfill your test task. Receiving Charlotte's order, Sebastian's eyes lit up, excitedly saying, with a look of eagerness. Obviously, he regarded the girl's arrangement as a test. After all, how could the legendary true ancestor, who could inflict heavy injuries on him, herself not be able to handle these trivial matters? Also, prepare for tomorrow. I want to personally pick some servants in the outer city. Charlotte thought for a moment and continued. Sebastian's eyes instantly lit up, suddenly excited, and quickly stood at attention. Please rest assured, Sebastian will make sure you enjoy a perfect experience of feeling at home in the outer city. Quote ... I mean, keep a low profile and don't cause me trouble. Sebastian. His face instantly fell, like a big dog with drooping ears, making Charlotte's eyelids twitch. Goodness, did this guy really intend to do something weird? Under Charlotte's strange gaze, Sebastian pondered for a moment, then smiled elegantly. Rest assured, Sebastian will prepare well and ensure that you are not troubled while feeling at home. Charlotte. For some reason, seeing Sebastian's confident appearance, she had a somewhat bad premonition. As long as you know. All right, I'm going to rest now, you go back early too. Charlotte finished the blood in her goblet and dismissed him. Honorable and beautiful Lady Charlotte, your humble servant Sebastian wishes you a wonderful night, and your loyal servant hereby takes his leave. Sebastian placed his right hand over his chest, elegantly bowed, and then disappeared into the darkness dragging the 4 extraordinaries like dead dogs. Charlotte shook her head slightly and also turned back indoors. The next day was overcast. The sun hid behind heavy clouds, and the glaring sunlight disappeared. It was just the right weather for someone like Charlotte to go out, and the young girl could even spend more time outdoors. When Charlotte woke up from her sleep again, the maids, whom she had trained to be almost perfect, had been waiting outside her bedroom for a long time. Mistress, please choose your attire for today. Standing by the window, they held various dresses, respectfully asking the still yawning girl sitting in bed. Being the head of the household had its perks. No need to adhere to a fixed waking time or dress in noble gowns full of girly charm. She could sleep as long as she wanted and wear whatever she pleased. However, Charlotte still didn't oversleep. She disciplined herself to get up at the usual time. She overslept on the first day after coming back because she was simply too tired. In the following days, although she still slept until she woke naturally, it was regulated, and she went to bed and woke up early. Even if she didn't sleep early yesterday, Charlotte struggled to get up on time today. To the young girl, self-discipline was a reflection of whether a person could achieve something, because it represented a person's ability to manage and control their desires. Indulging in desires would only lead to a plunge into the abyss of depravity, and over time, one would be ruined. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Just this one. Charlotte casually selected a set of black gothic dress suitable for going out from the wardrobe. It had to be said, gothic dresses match her quite well. The clothing mostly used vertical lines and folds, showing off the slender and elegant figure, and giving a lightness and fluttering impression. The dress also showing a combination of intricate folds and simple lines, bore Coria's dark patterns and embroidery, retaining Unet's corset style, reflecting a noble and mysterious color. Clearly, Charlotte had become quite accustomed to wearing such dresses. Humans were truly adaptable and terrifying creatures. At your command. Receiving the order, the maids quickly bustled around and got to work. Even though Charlotte had simplified the process of grooming and dressing, it still took half an hour after everything was done. Mistress, everything is ready. The maids wheeled in a crystal full-length mirror. Looking into the mirror, the golden-haired, blue-eyed beautiful girl was extremely charming. Today, she was still noble and beautiful. Breakfast was arranged by Casimodo, a cup of sweet milk, a single-sided fried egg, a piece of chocolate and raisin-filled sweet bread. Charlotte habitually glanced at Casimodo, who quickly introduced. The milk is from a membership contract signed with the Royal Ranch some time ago, at a discounted price. This cup costs around 3 gold tana. The fried egg was just made. It's from the red-winged thunderbirds in the northern forest, costing around 5 gold tana each, imbued with magic and rich in nutrients. The sweet bread is special, slightly more expensive. The chocolate comes from Loon Island, the most traditional elven flavor, also imbued with magic, and the raisins are imported from Coria. The total price is 8 gold tanna. Charlotte. All right, a breakfast costs 16 gold tanna, which is equivalent to the monthly allowance of a novice priest. She had already become numb to the extravagance of the big nobles. This was still Kasimodo's attempt to reduce the dining expenses. Perhaps I should find a reliable chef too, always eating these special foods, most of which are teleportation delivered by mages. It would be suspicious if the price is cheap. Charlotte thought to herself. Of course, although she complained in her heart, the young girl still enjoyed the meal, savoring it with relish. You get what you pay for, especially the fried egg and sweetbread. After eating them, Charlotte felt warm all over as if charged with energy. Watching the young mistress start her meal, Kasimodo also secretly breathed a sigh of relief, thinking thankfully that the mistress didn't delve into the issue of the milk too deeply. After breakfast, the maids cleared the table. Kasimodo respectfully handed the silk napkin to the young girl, then asked, Mistress, do you have any plans for today? Today, I'm going to the outer city. Arrange for a carriage for me. Charlotte replied. What, mistress, you're going to the outer city? Kasimodo widened his eyes. After hesitating for a while, he gritted his teeth and reminded. Mistress, the outer city is too dangerous, really too dangerous. I heard that another blood demon cult incident happened there yesterday, and the scene was exactly the same as the night at the mansion, filled with evil thorny roses symbol. Going there now is really too dangerous. Charlotte. Evil, symbols, ridiculous. How is this news spreading so quickly? Seeing the not so good expression on the girl's face, Kasimodo obviously misunderstood and immediately lowered his head. Forgive me, mistress, Kasimodo overstepped. Since you've made your decision, I'm sure you're prepared. Kasimodo just wanted to remind you. No worries, I'm well aware. Go prepare the carriage. Charlotte didn't mind. Kasimodo hesitated for a moment and respectfully took his leave. In the hall, he called a male servant. Go prepare the carriage. Mistress is going to the outer city today. Also, go to the Demon Hunter Bureau and invite Captain Chatham to come along. Kasimodo didn't know yet that a certain captain was destined to lie in bed for a few days. However, upon hearing the butler's words, the male servant froze, wearing a puzzled expression. Master Kasimodo, the carriage. Isn't it already prepared at the gate of the estate? Prepared? Kasimodo also froze. And while they were talking, there was suddenly a commotion outside the door. Kasimodo looked over and saw several young girls in Castel-maid uniforms walking elegantly to the door, laying out a long red carpet in front of the door. Kasimodo. Chapter 52. Rose Society is our ally. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Master, good morning Tilda, in unison. Looking at the figures standing at the entrance of the hall, lined up on both sides, each dressed in their own maid outfit, adorable and charming in appearance, their postures respectful and obedient, their tone of voice professionally standard, Charlotte's eyes twitched. On the side, the old butler Kasimodo and more than 10 male and female servants stood dumbfounded, their mouths wide open enough to fit a duck egg. Charlotte's inquiring gaze swept past them, instantly met with Kasimodo's wry smile. It's not arranged by me. After saying that, he looked somewhat puzzled. Isn't it arranged by Master? They seem to be. They are all extraordinary beings. In her heart, Charlotte spoke the words that the old butler didn't say aloud. These beautiful elf maids did not deliberately conceal their aura. With her sensitive perception, Charlotte could feel the faint magical fluctuations emanating from them. The two leaders are probably even at the first tier. No wonder Kasimodo didn't stop them from coming in. In the face of extraordinaries, he couldn't stop them either. At the same time, the fact that these elf maids could swagger into the mansion also meant one thing. That is, since the blood magic incident at the mansion, the Duke's covert protection of the Castel Manor has been completely withdrawn. Watching the respectful bows of the elf maids, and the red carpet that stretched all the way to the gate, covered with rose petals, Charlotte realized who the instigator was. Don't be nervous, they should be on our side. Sighing inwardly, she said. Should be? Kasimodo was stunned. The girl didn't explain but walked towards the outside of the hall. Outside, the red carpet extended all the way to the gate of the mansion, with elf maids standing on both sides, probably 70 or 80 of them. And all of them are extraordinaries. Although except for the two leaders, none of them have reached first tier, and their aura is much weaker than Charlotte's. But they are still extraordinaries, each one probably comparable to an experienced city guard. Master, good morning. At the sight of Charlotte, the elf maids outside also bowed and greeted her, their delicate voices sounding in unison, attracting the attention of countless passersby outside the mansion. Charlotte. Wrong. It should be said that countless passersby had already been attracted. When the girl looked towards the gate of the mansion, her expression quickly stiffened. At the gate, at the end of the carpet, an incredibly luxurious elongated carriage was parked there. Unlike the low-key luxury carriage of the Castel Manor, this carriage was extremely high profile, with exaggerated styling, predominantly black in color, and decorated with various exquisite and elaborate elf-style patterns. Even the horses pulling the carriage were not common carriage horses, they were actually 4 rare black-haired unicorns. On the side of the carriage, the large and shiny black eagle emblem of the Castel family was eye-catching, so new that it seemed to have been set overnight. And in front and behind the carriage, there were 8 or 9 slightly smaller carriages, each with a shiny new Castel family emblem, guarding the front and rear like escorts. On both sides of the road, there were also sturdy men wearing the Castel family's male servant uniforms, looking fierce and imposing, with extremely sharp auras. Each one of them was tall and muscular. More and more onlookers gathered around. In fact, if it weren't for the imposing aura of those strong men, this street would probably have been crowded. Charlotte. She took a deep breath, calmed her turbulent emotions, and clenched and then loosened her fist. With a composed face, the girl walked up to the carriage. A figure appeared in front of her in an instant, a mysterious man wearing the Castel family's steward black uniform, with a gentleman's hat and a crow mask, elegantly and respectfully bowed to her. Oh, what a beautiful day it is. Noble master, your humble servant, Stian, is at your service. Charlotte. Sebastian? Noble master, you've mistaken me, I am your humble servant, Stian. Sebastian. Stian. Sebastian. Street, Stian? Listening to the girl's emotionless repetition, the man's voice sounded a bit guilty. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Charlotte glanced at his slightly exposed ears and red hair that hadn't been completely concealed. Has anyone ever told you? When you're in disguise, you should also cover your pointed ears and red hair. The man's body stiffened instantly. He awkwardly smiled, elegantly snapped his fingers, and his red hair instantly turned black, and his pointed ears became the same as a human's. Then, he once again respectfully bowed. Noble master, thank you for your wise reminder. Your humble servant, Stian, is at your service. Charlotte. She saw through him. This guy did it on purpose. He showed a flaw in front of the leader, pretended to be stupid, let the leader point it out personally, and then patted himself on the back, winning the leader's favor. She was too familiar with this in her past life. So familiar that she felt sorry for herself. On the other side, Kasimodo, who was following Charlotte, was already completely stunned. As the owner of the former Castel family shop in the Outer City District, who frequently operated in the Outer City District, he was more familiar with a certain legendary figure in the Outer City District than anyone else. Although people from a distance might not see clearly, he also saw the pointed ears and red hair that flashed by under the girl's reminder. Combined with the master's address to the other party, and some news he heard at the banquet last night, he quickly recognized the identity of the mysterious person. Sebastian. He is Sebastian Flameheart, the president of the Rose Society, the true master of the underworld in the Outer City District. Oh my god. He actually called himself a servant in front of the master? Is it himself who's gone crazy, or is this world gone crazy? Wait a minute. Could this guy be trying to curry favor with the young master in this way? It is said that at the banquet last night, he approached the master and even drove away the heirs of other families. Thinking of something, Kasimoto's expression changed slightly. No, he must not let the master be deceived by him. After thinking about it, Kasimoto gritted his teeth and stepped forward, leaning close to the girl's ear, and earnestly advised. Master, the Castell family is a long-standing, prestigious noble family, while the Rose Society is an underground gang. Be careful when you're with such a person. Be careful of his intentions. Looking at the old servant's worried expression, Charlotte gave him a reassuring look. Don't worry, I have a sense of measure. He, like you, also serves the family. After hearing the girl's words, Kasimoto was stunned. The Rose Society? Serve the family? What on earth is going on? He couldn't help but look at Sebastian wearing the mask, and Sebastian smiled gracefully, giving him a bow. Sir Kasimoto. The master is right. I, like you, also serve the Castell family, just that you are in the sunlight, while I am in the shadow. Remove the extra people, get on the carriage, don't be so ostentatious. Charlotte didn't dwell on this issue any longer but looked at Sebastian coldly. Obey your orders. Sebastian elegantly bowed and began to arrange things. After dismissing the maids and servants, he knelt gracefully in front of the carriage. Noble master, the ground is too dirty, and the carriage is too high. Please step on Stian's back and shoulders to get on the carriage. Charlotte. She looked at Sebastian coldly, and gently uttered a word. Get lost. Ignoring the excited fire elf who was almost going crazy, Charlotte gracefully jumped onto the carriage by herself. On the other side, Kasimoto was completely dumbfounded. The Rose Society turns out to be the family's hidden force. Chapter 53, Effect of Extraordinary Blood. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Acting weird is just an acting. When Charlotte's expression became a bit impatient, Sebastian immediately became serious. He stood up gracefully, brushed off the dust elegantly, bowed to the still dumbfounded Kasimoto, and smiled slightly, saying, Lord Kasimoto, we are setting off now, and the glorious task of guarding the manor is entrusted to you. With that, Sebastian laughed heartily, gracefully jumped, and also boarded the elongated carriage. The door closed, and the stout butler driving the carriage exclaimed, "Yaw," and the carriage slowly started moving. It wasn't until the carriage was far away that Kasimoto reacted, his expression changing slightly. He quickly commanded the servants beside him. Quick, prepare the carriage, we must catch up. And only at this moment, lazy meowing came from upstairs. The black cat niece, twisting its fluffy body cutely, lazily descended the stairs, yawning. Meow, the Duke's dried fish is really good. The maid's long legs are also very beautiful. The wine is also great. This night, this cat slept so comfortably. Beautiful Miss Charlotte, how was your rest last night? After speaking, it looked around, trying to find a familiar petite figure. But it only saw the busy servants and Kasimoto, who was hurriedly preparing to board the hastily prepared carriage. The familiar figure was not inside the carriage. Meow, where's Miss Charlotte? Nice tilted its head. Lord Nice, the master was taken away by Sebastian from the Rose Society. I must hurry to catch up. Kasimoto quickly said. With that, he exclaimed, yaw, and drove away, raising a cloud of dust. Meow cough cough. Nice was choked by a noseful of dust, coughing several times. Its brain, just awakened, finally reacted, and its cat eyes widened instantly. Meow? Meow meow meow? What? Sebastian took away the great Miss Charlotte? Damn it, this shameless guy, he actually stole from me when I wasn't paying attention. How insidious. After speaking, it lifted its short legs and hurriedly chased after the carriage, even remembering to cast a quickening spell on itself while running, panting, and shouting. Kasimoto, wait for me, I'm going too, meow. Meanwhile, inside the Rose Society's exclusive customized elongated luxury carriage, Charlotte sat on the soft silk velvet cushion, facing Sebastian, who had removed his mask and had a respectful expression. This carriage was much larger than the Castell family's carriage, equally luxurious inside, with decorations in elven style visible everywhere. There was also soft and soothing music flowing slowly, a magical echo formation humming ethereal elven songs installed in the corner. On the side shelf of the carriage, there were exquisite and elegant varieties of red wine, milk, blood vials, and goblets. One can imagine how much the owner of this carriage must enjoy in daily life. Great master, would you like some milk or fresh blood? Sebastian elegantly picked up the most delicate bottle of milk and a small bottle emitting a faint magical wave, smiling in a courteous and respectful manner. The milk is from the celestial cows in the moon forest of Loon Island, with a mellow taste and rich nutrition, beneficial for the growth of your sacred body. The blood is from the second-tier magical creature, the bipedal wyvern, containing a hint of dragon power, with special magic formation preserving the most prime vitality. With that, Sebastian slightly lifted the red bottle, respectfully saying, Sebastian recommends you to taste the blood of the bipedal wyvern. Last night, I found out that you were drinking the most ordinary animal blood, and it was only preserved crudely with ice cubes, so I prepared this specially. Considering that your body is still that of a newly transformed bloodborn, merely drinking ordinary blood might not fully satisfy your body's craving for blood and could only delay the onset of the blood curse. Although I know that for someone like you, you don't care about the blood curse in your body, and drinking blood has already become a pleasure for you. But considering that your strength has just recovered, drinking the blood of extraordinary creatures or intelligent beings might be more helpful for your strength recovery. Blood curse? Charlotte's heart moved slightly. This was a new term she had heard about bloodborne. She wondered if it was synonymous with blood addiction. She hadn't felt any side effects from drinking horse blood these days, at least each time it only satisfied her blood craving. However, looking at the red bottle Sebastian picked up, looking at the viscous, crystal clear red liquid inside, she couldn't help but feel a strong desire in her body. However, Charlotte quickly suppressed this desire. Instead of directly answering Sebastian's question, she leaned back against the window, calmly looking at him. Those beautiful, deep blue eyes carried a calm and mature demeanor as well as a kind of lofty aura that didn't match her youthful appearance. Being stared at by such eyes, Sebastian inexplicably felt a little guilty, awkwardly shifting his gaze. You're competent in your work, but don't play such tricks in the future. The girl said calmly. With that, she glanced meaningfully at Sebastian. I dislike being tested. Although her tone remained calm, there was a hint of displeasure in her words. Cold sweat instantly dripped down from Sebastian's forehead. He slightly paled, swallowed hard, and then respectfully and nervously bowed his head. Sebastian understands, it was Sebastian's rashness. Indeed, it was a test. Seeing the other's performance, Charlotte couldn't help but sigh inwardly. She felt that Sebastian's state today wasn't quite right. Although he was trying to present himself, many aspects were too exaggerated, so much so that sometimes it seemed like he was trying to provoke her. This gave her a somewhat familiar feeling. It was like her past self, constantly testing the limits of her crush, trying to grasp the true personality and boundaries of her crush in order to get closer to her as much as possible without causing displeasure. This was a necessary way for a bootlicker to actively understand the other person. Because of inner humility and reluctance to ask directly, it was necessary to actively understand and admire the other party in this awkward way. This way of obtaining information was not the best, and sometimes it might backfire. But if handled properly, it could be the most effective. It was obvious that Sebastian handled it quite well. Charlotte instantly understood. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. This was because Sebastian still had no idea about her various thoughts, so he repeatedly jumped around on the dangerous edge in this way. At the same time, he was probably trying to further understand her character. And a person, only when truly wanting to submit to the other, would choose to do so. Thinking about it, she said. I don't like overly exaggerated people. Doing things down to earth will catch my eye. Sebastian's heart stirred, respectfully lowering his head, like an obedient golden retriever. Sebastian understands. After reprimanding the other person around a bit, Charlotte leaned back, relying on the window, lazily extending her hand. Bring it over, let me see how the dragon's blood you prepared tastes. Sebastian's eyes instantly lit up, and it seemed like there was a tail wagging behind him, as if he were an acknowledged big dog. He suddenly smiled, his eyebrows raised, and eagerly said, "Please taste it." Charlotte took it, and gracefully took a sip, feeling a sweet and warm power flowing down her throat and quickly spreading throughout her body. In that instant, she was surprised to find that the bloodborne power, which hadn't improved much since awakening, had subtly increased a bit. So, drinking the blood of extraordinary creatures could help bloodborns enhance their power. Charlotte was shaken. Wait, just now Sebastian also mentioned blood from intelligent beings. Could drinking the blood of intelligent beings also have some special effects on bloodborns? So, the reason why vampires in the church records like human blood so much, especially the blood of extraordinary individuals, was because of this. Charlotte pondered. She had always been thinking about how to strengthen herself after the mastery of majesty magic, but now, it seemed like she had seen another path. However, it's not right. The church's records state that bloodborne ranks are strict, and even specifically mention that, without the support of elders, it is generally difficult for bloodborns to advance in ranks. If just drinking the blood of extraordinary beings can continuously increase strength, then bloodborns would be too abnormal, and they definitely wouldn't have recorded it like that. In that case, this method of enhancing strength through blood drinking should have limitations, probably unable to truly advance, but only allowing vampires to infinitely approach a peak of the same rank. But for me, this is what I need most. It can allow me to infinitely enhance my strength to nearly the first tier starry sky before advancing. With that in mind, Charlotte's gaze toward the wyvern blood in her hand changed. She took a deep breath and drank the blood in the goblet in one gulp. After drinking a cup of wyvern blood, Charlotte felt instantly full. It wasn't the ordinary sense of fullness, but more like the feeling of overflowing energy after being charged. This energy might be the remaining life force in the blood. She could feel a slight increase in her strength, just a slight. After this slight increase, it gradually stopped, as if it had reached the limit of this digestion. And the overflowing energy within her body had nowhere to go, beginning to dissipate slowly through the girl's breathing. It may not be possible to enhance strength quickly by drinking large amounts of blood. Instead, it is likely necessary to slowly savor to fully absorb it. Charlotte made a new judgment. How is it? Does it suit your taste? Sebastian looked at the girl expectantly. Charlotte slowly put down the goblet, suppressing the excitement in her heart, and said calmly, "Not bad." Sebastian's eyes instantly lit up. "Please taste the milk next." He handed over a cup of milk next, as eager as a wagging big dog. Although she was already full, seeing his enthusiastic and expectant appearance, like a big dog wagging its tail nonstop, Charlotte couldn't bear to refuse. She took it and took a sip. And with this sip, Charlotte's eyes lit up once again. Silky, mellow, with a warm energy. It even faintly tasted better than the milk prepared at home. Obviously, even though the Rose Society's financial resources couldn't match Castell's, their connection in the extraordinary realm far surpassed Kasimodo, who is a mere mortal. These things couldn't even be obtained with all the gold Tana. How about it, great master? Sebastian looked at the girl with anticipation. Charlotte fell silent. Her gaze fell on him, pondering for a long time. She finally made a decision. Suddenly, the girl smiled, her beautiful and innocent face blooming like a flower, with a brilliant smile full of innocent purity, like a little girl who had found a beloved toy. "Sebastian, you, not bad, stay by my side as a steward in the future." Seeing the enchanting smile, Sebastian was momentarily stunned, then quickly bowed respectfully. But soon, he realized what the girl had said, and his gaze almost lit up instantly, excitedly saying, "Great master, your humble servant Sebastian will not disappoint you. Of course, it's just a probationary period. If I'm not satisfied, you'll have to pack up and go back to being the boss of your gang." Charlotte changed the subject. She leaned against the window, lazily extending a verdant finger to spin the goblet, smiling. "No problem, great master, rest assured, the entire Rose Society is also your power. From today onwards, the Rose Society will be surnamed Castell." Sebastian exclaimed excitedly. "Charlotte, hide your identity well, at least for now. Don't give me any trouble." She changed her tone instantly, coldly. "All right, great master, from now on, by your side, I'm Stian. From top to bottom of the Rose Society, I will not cause you any trouble." Sebastian hastily assured. Having obtained Charlotte's approval, he was quite excited. If it weren't for the low carriage compartment, the girl even suspected that he might jump up excitedly. Charlotte shook her head and returned to the main topic. "Okay, calm down. How did the investigation I asked you to do yesterday go?" Upon hearing the girl's words, Sebastian's expression also instantly became serious. Chapter 54, Hierarchy and Blood Demon Cult. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. "Great master, I have interrogated them thoroughly. Those two bloodborns were indeed targeting you. Their goal was to assassinate you and then blame everything on the Duke." Sebastian said solemnly. "Assassinate me? Blame the Duke?" Charlotte's hand holding the goblet paused slightly. "Yes." Sebastian nodded respectfully. "Who gave them the order?" Charlotte's expression grew more serious as she continued to inquire. Sebastian looked somewhat embarrassed. Charlotte understood instantly. "Dead?" Sebastian sighed. "Yes, they are already dead. Just as I intended to continue questioning them about the mastermind behind them, they died, consumed by the ignition of their blood, leaving no trace of their souls. They were not just bloodborns, but blood servants, slaves of higher-ranking bloodborns, bound by contracts that lead to instant death upon betrayal. They are the forbidden blood servants of the Dark Clan." Forbidden blood servants. Charlotte pondered. After obtaining the Gospel of Blood, she gained some understanding of the titles and ranks of bloodborns. The hierarchy of bloodborns was complex, divided into 7 tiers: blood attendant, blood baron, blood viscount, blood count, blood marquis or duke, blood archduke or prince, and true ancestor. Corresponding to that hierarchy were the ranks of non-awakened, 1st tier starry sky, 2nd tier silver moon, 3rd tier blazing sun, 4th tier legendary, demigod, and lastly true god. Among them, the titles of marquis and duke, as well as archduke or prince, depended entirely on the bloodborn's identity and status within the race group, with no distinction in strength. Outside the 7 tiers, there was another special tier called blood servants. Blood servants typically referred to those who had been initially embraced by bloodborns but had not been fully endowed with bloodborne powers. They were generally unawakened individuals with only partial bloodborne powers and were not recognized by bloodborns as their kin. The most significant difference between them and the lowest-ranking blood attendants was that they could not embrace others. Each blood servant had the most stringent blood contract with their masters, comparable in severity to the final oath of the god of contract. The master could terminate the blood servant's life at any moment within a certain distance. They were the most basic servants of bloodborns. But there was also an exception. Some bloodborns would apply the contracts originally intended for blood servants to other bloodborns, turning other lower-ranking bloodborns into their slaves. Or, they would simply elevate the power of blood servants to the level of bloodborns. Thus, blood servants with bloodborne powers emerged. They were called forbidden blood servants. Charlotte learned from the church's records that such practices were also prohibited among bloodborns. Because to most bloodborns, this behavior, which led to hierarchical confusion, was a great insult to their noble identity and posed a significant risk to the stability of bloodborne society. Most bloodborne clans vehemently opposed it and strictly prohibited it. Except for one clan. The Dark Clan, Shedite. And the one who ruled the Dark Clan was Charlotte's old acquaintance, the bloodborne Archduke Abaddon. Obviously, the blood demon cult had set its sights on Charlotte, intending her demise. Charlotte was not particularly surprised by this, considering that the old witch had already wanted her dead once, and the old hag was a member of the blood demon cult. However, since the old witch's actions were for blood sacrifices, and she had possessed cursed pages for a long time, her mind might not have been clear, or her actions might have been completely contrary to the goal of blood demon cult. But now that the blood demon cult had taken action again, it meant that they also did not want Charlotte to live. So the question was, what benefit would they gain if she died? And why would they frame the Duke? After some thought, Charlotte asked. I heard that Rose Society has had dealings with the blood demon cult. How much do you know about the blood demon cult? Sebastian thought for a moment before respectfully replying. The blood demon cult is an underground secret society that worships the bloodborne archduke, active mainly in the region adjacent to Western Unet, especially in the Crescent Kingdom. Their core members are almost all bloodborns, but they also recruit some humans as peripheral members. They are also the bloodborne cult that has historically overturned the Crescent Kingdom. Bloodborns are called bloodkin in the Crescent Kingdom because of them. Oh, by the way, Great Master, these lunatics also like to collect cursed pages. I think you might be interested in them. Fragments of the Gospel. Charlotte's interest was piqued. She had indeed become interested. Seeing the girl becoming more serious, Sebastian continued. The blood demon cult's active purpose, legend said, is to find a way to bring the bloodborne archduke descended into the world. The flame demon disaster 10 years ago was a disaster planned by the blood demon cult. It is said that they seduced Count Royce at the time, aiming to summon the flame demon Valroka as incarnation vessel of the bloodborne archduke, and thus allow him to descend as a divine being. Of course, they failed in the end. Even the half-descended flame demon Valroka was sealed. But in the past 6 months, the disappearance of people and the sharp increase in murder cases in Board, especially in the outer city area, are always signified by bloodborns, and traces of shadow magic and necromancy are commonly found. So, we have always suspected that the blood demon cult is stirring up trouble again. That's why we have been making deals with people who may be members of the blood demon cult. Of course, more accurately, we are making deals with bloodborns of the Dark Clan because we are not sure which bloodborn is a member of the blood demon cult. As you know, even if they are from the same clan, it doesn't mean they will definitely be loyal to their prince or archduke, let alone join the corresponding cult. In fact, what we have done with the bloodborns of the Dark Clan is only some ordinary intelligence business or legitimate goods trading. Our real purpose is to penetrate into the blood demon cult and figure out their motives. After all, in a sense, they are also enemies of the Rose Society. Charlotte was somewhat surprised. Enemies of the Rose Society? Yes. Sebastian nodded. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. The Rose Society is the underground ruler of Board, and maintaining the underground order of Board is one of the Rose Society's responsibilities. We don't intervene in vendettas or duels among the extraordinary, and we don't intervene in conflicts among the extraordinary. But if someone stretches their hands from the darkness to the surface, using extraordinary powers to harm innocent civilians, then we will intervene. Obviously, the blood demon cult has crossed the line. 10 years ago, when the Rose Society had not yet been established, their activities were unrelated to me. But now it's different. Hearing this, Charlotte was somewhat astonished. I didn't expect your Rose Society to have such a side. Aren't you a gang? Sebastian chuckled. Of course, we are a gang, but gangs have their rules. We take money, so naturally, we provide protection. Even if it's only beggars who come to us every month with free copper tanna, as long as they pay, we will provide protection within our Rose Society's territory. Of course, our protection is aimed against extraordinary powers. We won't interfere if other beggars bully them, but if someone with extraordinary powers acts, then we will step in. The flame demon Valroka has been sealed, and the blood demon cult shouldn't be planning a summoning like 10 years ago. They must have another purpose. To investigate the blood demon cult's purpose and maintain order in the outer city area, we have also conducted relevant investigations. But in the end, all the clues were cut midway, just like this time. The blood demon cult is obviously much more cautious than before, making it difficult to find their tracks. And besides, we are often interfered with by nobles or the church during the investigation, each time seemingly coincidental, but too many coincidences are no longer coincidences. So, I have always suspected that the blood demon cult also has a lot of connections with nobles or the church. Hearing Sebastian's words, Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Are you suggesting that there are members of the blood demon cult in the nobility in the church? Not necessarily, it may also be a cooperative relationship, and it is a very thorough cooperation. Sebastian thought for a moment and said. Hearing Sebastian's words, Charlotte's expression became serious. Do you have any evidence? Sebastian thought for a moment and shook his head. No, just intuition. In other words, you suspect that the blood demon cult's attack on me is related to the nobility or the church? You are openly leaning towards the church, and they have sent out protectors, so it is more likely to be the nobility. The nobility. Charlotte pondered. She thought for a moment and suddenly asked. If I die now, who do you think would benefit the most? A lot. Sebastian said. First of all, the church will definitely suffer because the promise between you and the church can only be fulfilled when you inherit the territory. Before you formally inherit the territory, if something happens, the duke and the noble of the duchy can completely deny your proposal to the church by claiming that you have not formally inherited the territory. Of course, this also means a deteriorating relationship with the church. So, the mastermind obviously does not fear a deteriorating relationship with the church, or more accurately, does not fear a deteriorating relationship with the high priest. The duke will also suffer, especially since this framing is very clever, because the duke really had the motive to assassinate you. After all, even if you lean towards the church, you have not formally inherited the territory. Of course, this is definitely not done by the duke, not to mention that the target of the framing is the duke. The high priest also has the right to revoke Leno's sacred blessing at any time, because it is not truly legal, but it is on the blind spot of the sacred code. All in all, the biggest beneficiaries are the nobles of the duchy, and just like the duke, they also have a motive to assassinate you. Once you are in trouble because of this, although the duke's mansion is the first inheritor of the castle, it will definitely be interfered with by the church, and in the end, the ones who benefit are still the nobles of the duchy, especially the big nobles. In addition to your current identity, there are 6 vassal viscounts of the Board duchy, and each of these 6 big nobles has suspicions. Listening to Sebastian's words, Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. I leaned towards the church, but they dare to take action openly? Sebastian shook his head. Perhaps not necessarily in the past, but the timing now is very delicate. Master, do you know that your resurrection was observed by the church's divine spell, but the news was suppressed? Charlotte nodded. I have heard something about it. She had heard this from Nice. Then do you know why the church suppressed the news? Sebastian asked again. Charlotte subconsciously replied. Of course, because the high priest is preparing for promotion, and he doesn't want any extra trouble at this critical moment. As she said this, she suddenly paused. A light flashed in her mind, vaguely understanding why the blood demon cult left the thorn rose symbol at the crime scene. So, they are forging the scene to threaten the high priest with the news of evil god's resurrection? Charlotte narrowed her eyes slightly. Yes, once the high priest's suppression of the evil god's resurrection news is broken out, even if he has made great contributions, his dream of promotion will not come true, because this is a matter of principle. Sebastian said. Charlotte immediately understood. She had given the high priest a big gift. But some nobles, who had a connection with the blood demon cult, or were simply members of the blood demon cult, also held the high priest's secret of suppressing the news of evil god's resurrection. After discovering that Charlotte had leaned toward the church, the other party acted decisively, setting up a case with a thorn rose symbol at the scene, intending to warn the high priest. Who knows about the thorn rose symbol? Charlotte narrowed her eyes. You have to ask your pet cat about this. Not many people know about the resurrection of the evil god. Even fewer people know about the symbol. Even the source of information for Rose Society is from the cat that sold it to the black market half a month ago. Sebastian smirked triumphantly. Charlotte. Meanwhile, next to Casimodo, the black cat, Nice, who was catching his breath, suddenly shivered coldly. Chapter 55, High Priest's Wrath. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. At the junction of the abandoned and western districts of the city, stood a magnificent residence. A rushing carriage arrived from afar and entered the residence, finally stopping in front of the villa. The side door of the carriage opened, and a figure hidden in a cloak stepped out. He declined the service of the servant and strode into the hall. As soon as he entered the hall, he began to roar, his aged voice full of anger. Jordan, you little rascal, come out here. The angry roar echoed through the hall, frightening the maids inside. Moments later, accompanied by hurried footsteps, a slender and handsome figure descended the stairs. If Charlotte were here, she would have recognized him as none other than Jordan de Gaston, the young nobleman who had embarrassed himself in front of her at the Duke's banquet. Seeing the cloaked figure, Jordan's expression changed slightly, becoming nervous. Waving his hand, he instructed the maids to withdraw, then put on a respectful and pleasing face. Sir High Priest, why have you come? The visitor snorted and removed his cloak. He was none other than the High Priest of the Board Duchy, Leonard de Con. The High Priest looked coldly at the young nobleman, his aged voice suppressing his anger. Why have I come? You should know. Tell me, did you little rascal, disclose the Thorn Rose matter to that fellow? Upon hearing the High Priest's words, Jordan's eyes evaded, his face filled with fear. Sir High Priest, please let me explain. I had no choice. Nonsense, I have sheltered you so many times, is this how you repay me? Aren't you afraid I'll expose those things you were involved in to your father? The High Priest exclaimed angrily. Jordan turned pale and almost collapsed to the ground. Just then, with a distant sigh, a gentle and calm voice came from the stairs. Lord Leonard, please calm down. Getting too angry is not good for your health, especially for someone of your age. With steady footsteps, a man dressed in mage robes slowly descended. Seeing the man, the High Priest's gaze narrowed slightly. He squinted his eyes, his expression turning cold. It's you? You're here too? HMPH, perfect. About yesterday's blood magic incident, don't you owe me an explanation? The man smiled faintly. He gestured for Jordan to step aside, then said calmly. Explanation? I wonder what kind of explanation Lord Leonard wanted. Do you want to ask about those missing girls, or about the thorn rose I left at the scene? The High Priest's expression immediately darkened. I must remind you, you've crossed the line. Don't forget our agreement. Agreement? Wasn't it Lord Leonard who broke the agreement first? The man said indifferently. What do you mean? The High Priest's expression turned grim. What do I mean? It's exactly what I said. Without my consent, you made a deal with the Castel family's young lady behind my back. Where does that leave me? The man said leisurely, his voice also turned cold. Don't forget, we agreed from the beginning. The Castel family's young lady can belong to you, but the Castel domain must belong to me. The High Priest narrowed his eyes and said. That was just a temporary agreement, an empty promise. I didn't sign any contract with her. After I successfully ascend to the position of Archbishop in 6 months, you can do whatever you want with her, and I can even cooperate from the side. Oh, is that so? I'm afraid that by then, you'll happily take her away from this place of turmoil and forget about me, won't you? Besides, the Holy Court is not solely under your authority. The man chuckled lightly. The High Priest fell silent. He narrowed his eyes slightly. What exactly do you mean? Nothing special. I just wanted to remind you not to forget our agreement. I know you're eager to make achievements and increase your own bargaining chips, which is normal, but please don't interfere with my plans. The man said coldly. Upon hearing the man's words, a flash of anger appeared in the High Priest's eyes, but it quickly turned into fear. He took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, and said, What do you want? I want the church to stop protecting Charlotte de Castel and to stop the theocracy from making demands over the Castel domain. That's impossible. The High Priest objected decisively. Then don't blame me for hindering you. The man said leisurely. You, asking for death. The High Priest immediately became furious. He grabbed the man, and the terrifying pressure of the third-tier blazing sun was unleashed. The man's face turned slightly pale, but he managed to smile albeit with difficulty. You better calm down. If you kill me, the matter of you hiding the resurrection of the evil god, and those things you did before, will spread throughout the streets of Bourg tomorrow. The High Priest's expression changed slightly. His hands trembled, his eyes turned red, and his gaze at the man was full of anger, but he eventually relented and let go. That's better, Lord High Priest. The man said leisurely. The High Priest closed his eyes slowly, grinding his teeth. I regret it now, I shouldn't have listened to your nonsense. I was deceived by you. Hey, there are always regrets in life, but drowning in regret is not acceptable. We must move forward. The man said with a smile. After speaking, he hinted meaningfully. Don't be too angry, perhaps, helping me get hold of the Castel domain as soon as possible would also be beneficial to you. The High Priest's interest was piqued. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. What do you mean? The man paused for a moment, then said leisurely. I heard that the great Duke of Bourd's old injury has recurred, and he may not have many days left. If you were hoping he could lend you a hand, I'm afraid your hopes will be extinguished. His body has been overtaxed by years of war and can no longer tolerate divine treatment. Upon hearing the man's words, the High Priest's expression changed slightly. Is that so? Hey, otherwise, why do you think he's so eager to appoint his illegitimate son Leno as his heir? The man chuckled lightly. The High Priest fell silent. His expression kept changing. Looking at the High Priest lost in thought, the man chuckled. It seems you thought about it. Bourg is about to descend into chaos. At this time, whoever can get hold of the Castel domain first might be able to assist you. The Castel family is wealthy enough to support a small country. It's not that we lack means, but we lack enough funds. The man said coldly. The High Priest looked at him coldly. Your purpose is not just the Castel, is it? The man chuckled twice but didn't answer. The High Priest looked at him silently for a few seconds, then said coldly. The church's words that have been spoken will not be retracted. The church will still protect the Castel on the surface. Of course, for your actions, I will turn a blind eye. The High Priest continued. That's enough. Rest assured, I'm a man of my word. I won't kill her. Instead, I'll train her well and send her to you. Of course, for outsiders, she is already dead. The man said with a smirk. The High Priest snorted coldly, his expression easing slightly. He paused and said, No need for training. I want her as she is. Besides, don't be overconfident. Even without the church's protection, Castel still has hidden power. Last night, 2 of the church's demon hunter knights sent to protect her were mistaken for stalkers and taken down. Not even a trace of the attackers was found. You don't need to worry about that. I have my own plans. The man said with a smile. And about the resurrection of the evil god. You don't need to worry about that either. As everyone knows, the diligent High Priest has never hidden news of the evil god's resurrection. It's all rumors. HMPH, remember what you said. The Grand High Priest said fiercely, glaring at him and then leaving without a farewell. You don't need to remind me. The man called out loudly. Only after the High Priest's carriage left did he laugh lightly and turn back upstairs. Entering the study, he sat down at the desk, and a dark shadow slowly emerged behind him, eventually taking human form, becoming a stooped figure draped in a black hood. Seeing the stooped figure beside him, the man smiled faintly. You're back? How did your investigation go? It's the Rose Society. The one secretly protecting her should be the Rose Society. My blood servant died inside Rose Society's territory, and this morning, a suspected Rose Society subhuman maid appeared in the Castel Manor. The stooped figure said hoarsely. Rose Society? They're a bunch of stubborn ghosts. They've been messing around for so many years, and I never even bother them for once, and yet they come sticking to me like annoying flies. The man frowned. So, how do you want to deal with these annoying flies? The stooped figure asked with interest. The man snorted lightly and pulled out a stack of parchment from under the desk. I was planning to deal with them later, but it seems I'll have to do it early. The president of Rose Society is quite a troublemaker. I must eliminate him early. Being able to get support from Rose Society, it seems the Castel's background is quite enormous. The stooped figure said noncommittally, engrossed in reading the parchment. Hey, protecting wanted heretics, smuggling contraband, involvement in bloodborne cases, ties to the Adam cult, and cooperating with the evil god. Tisk tisk, where did you find all these good things? Some of them must be forged, right? You don't need to worry about that. Just give these to the Inquisition, and those guys will be damned. The man said coldly. Rose Society, from top to bottom, I want them, all dead. The man said coldly. Hey, the problem is, who are you going to send? The Inquisition always takes sources of information seriously. Don't tell me you plan to report anonymously, that won't work. The Inquisition is surrounded by watchful gaze. Even birds can trace the source back to you. The stooped figure said. I have my scapegoat candidate. The man said indifferently. After speaking, he lightly pressed the bell on the table. After a moment, the door of the study was gently knocked. Come in. The man said majestically. With a creak, the door was pushed open, and a gentle and beautiful priestess walked in. She bowed respectfully to the man. My lord. Get up, the high priest has left. You don't need to hide anymore. The man nodded slightly. Speaking, he supported his chin with both hands, looked at the beautiful priestess, and smiled faintly. How many years have you been with me? The priestess respectfully replied. It's been 7 years. 7 years. The man sighed lightly. In 7 years, you have become a first-tier priest. The church trusts you, the demon hunter trusts you, and even the usually strict Inquisition has many judgment knights who have received your treatment and owe you favors. He said with a slight smile. Lottie, now I have 2 things for you to do. Chapter 56, Castell Family Old Acquaintances. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte didn't expect that Nice, this handful cat, would actually engage in information sale. If you calculate the time, it should have been when she was still hospitalized at the church hospital half a month ago. This guy is really bold. As a cat of the church, he actually dares to profit from the church, not afraid of provoking the wrath of the high priest. She decided to wait until she returned home to interrogate the other party properly and give it a good beating, so she wouldn't be sold one day. The carriage continued to move and entered the outer city area. This was Charlotte's first time coming to the outer city area during the day, feeling as if she had entered another era. Dirty streets and rows of cheap houses, although better than the dilapidated and desolate old city area, most pedestrians were dressed plainly and looked impoverished, giving the feeling that time had suddenly regressed by 100 or 200 years. Clearly, it was separated by only one wall from the inner city, yet it felt like another world. It felt like riding a bus in previous life through an underpass spanning the city, suddenly moving from a brand new, beautiful, skyscraper-filled new city district to an old city district full of makeshift and rundown buildings. If it weren't for the occasional luxurious carriage passing by on the street, Charlotte would almost believe she had transmigrated again. Master, do you want to visit your store? I heard that the servants would come back happily after hearing the news of you leaning towards the church. They should be working hard now. Sebastian said with a smile. Charlotte. She didn't believe those who ran away would come back on their own, let alone that the news of her leaning towards the church wouldn't spread so quickly in the outer city area. She leaned more towards believing that those servants had been lured back by some influential and favored figure. No need, leave it to Casimodo. Let's go directly to the best servant market. Charlotte glanced at the sky, which seemed to be clearing up, and spoke. All right. Sebastian nodded respectfully. The carriage continued to drive, and after about 20 minutes, it stopped in front